Marine Headquarters, Marine Fort. Inside the wide training square, countless Marine recruits ran under the blazing sun. Their footsteps struck the ground in rhythm, their shouts echoing across the headquarters like waves crashing against stone. Among them, one group of elite recruits had already pulled far ahead. Behind them, a young man struggled to keep pace. His name was Ryūja. He had a handsome face, but right now that face was pale with exhaustion. Sweat rolled down his forehead, his breathing was rough, and every step felt heavier than the last. Looking at the recruits ahead of him, Ryūja's mouth twitched. How am I supposed to catch up to monsters like that? He forced himself to keep running, but the distance only grew wider. Even ordinary marine recruits are faster than me. What kind of joke is this? A month ago, Ryūja had suddenly found himself in the world of One Piece. Not only that, he had become the nephew of marine hero Monkey D. Garp. In other words, he was also connected to Monkey D. Dragon and Monkey D. Luffy. At first, Ryūja thought this was an amazing start. After all, this was the world of One Piece. A world filled with devil fruits, legendary swords, terrifying pirates, and people who could split mountains with a single slash. And he had become Garp's nephew. With such a background, shouldn't he have been destined for greatness? But reality slapped him in the face. Only 2 days after arriving in this world, Garp threw him directly into Marinefort's training camp. At first, Ryūja didn't think much of it. He believed that most recruits here probably didn't even know Rokushiki yet. Since he knew the world's future events, he thought he had some advantage. But soon, he realized something painful. Knowing things was useless if his body could not keep up. These recruits may not understand the future like him, but every single one of them was stronger, faster, and tougher. They had already trained here for a month, and even though Ryūja worked hard every day, he was still near the bottom. That fact made him feel helpless. This is Marine Headquarters. Almost every recruit here is an elite. Even future monsters like Kizaru and Akainu probably started from this kind of place. Thinking about that, Ryūja felt even more pressure. If he could not stand out in Marinefort's training camp, then what would happen once he entered the sea? A random pirate might slap him to death. He was Garp's nephew, Dragon's cousin, and Luffy's uncle. His family background was terrifying. Garp had chased the Pirate King. Dragon would become the world's most dangerous criminal. Luffy would become the protagonist of this era. Compared to them, Ryūja felt painfully ordinary. Why didn't I get the constitution of the D-clan? Is it because I'm not a direct blood relative? The more he thought about it, the more wronged he felt. The Marines, the pirates, the Revolutionary Army, the world government, the future wars. This world was dangerous from every direction. Even Marine Headquarters was not completely safe. If he stayed weak, one wrong step could lead to death. Ryūja shook his head and forced those thoughts away. Forget it. Those things are still in the future. For now, I just need to train and become stronger. When the day's training finally ended, Ryūja sat down heavily and closed his eyes. His body was tired, but his mind slowly entered a strange space. It was a hazy world inside his consciousness. At the center of that space floated a sword. The sword was suspended in the air, silent and still. It had existed inside Ryūja's mind ever since his soul fused with this body. Ryūja called it the soul system. But if one looked carefully, the sword was covered in cracks. It looked like it could shatter at any moment. With a thought, a transparent status panel appeared before him. First stage, broken sword of the soul plus 10. Condition for strengthening not met. Attributes, attack power plus 30. Enhanced energy, 10/10. Ryūja stared at the panel and frowned. Why did the energy stop increasing? Is 10 the limit? The system did not answer. There was no system spirit. No gentle system sister. No explanation. From the beginning, this system had never spoken to him even once. Everything Ryūja knew about it, he had discovered by himself. At first, the sword had been at broken sword of the soul plus 0. Later, he found that training and fighting could increase energy points. Once the energy reached a certain amount, the sword could be strengthened. From plus 0 to plus 1. Then plus 2, plus 3, and so on. At first, he did not feel much difference. But when the sword reached plus 5, Ryūja clearly felt his strength improve. By the time it reached plus 10, although he was still near the bottom of the camp, he no longer felt like someone who had just entered training. He had thought he could rely on this system to strengthen himself endlessly. One day, he imagined himself standing above the 4 emperors and the 3 admirals. But now, the strengthening had stopped. The system said the condition was not met. What condition? What exactly do I need? Ryūja stared at the words and fell into deep thought. But before he could figure anything out, the rest period ended. The instructor's voice rang across the training ground. Ryūja opened his eyes and returned to practice. Soon, another day of exhausting training passed. After training ended, Ryūja left the square. Marine Headquarters was massive. Its harbor could hold countless warships, and its training grounds could fit tens of thousands of soldiers. There were even living areas for marine families inside the fortress below. But Ryūja did not live in the recruit dormitory. Garp had personally brought him to Marineford, so Ryūja now stayed at Garp's home. When he returned, Garp was not there. That was normal. His uncle had disappeared for nearly a week, and Ryūja had no idea where he had gone. Not that he cared too much. After taking a shower, Ryūja planned to continue studying the sword in his mind. But the moment he walked out of the bathroom, he saw someone sitting on the sofa. It was Garp. The old man had returned without warning. Ryūja froze for a moment, then sighed helplessly. This guy disappeared for a whole week without saying anything. If Ryūja did not know Garp was the hero of the Marines, he would have considered reporting him as a missing person. Garp was sitting on the sofa, casually playing with something in his hands. When he noticed Ryūja, he grinned. Ha ha ha. Brat, how have you been these last few days? Ryūja's mouth twitched. You only ask because you want to poke at my pain, right? Then Luoya immediately put on a warm smile. Uncle Garp, I didn't see you for a whole week. I was so worried. I'm glad you're still alive. Garp's expression instantly stiffened. For a second, it looked like blood almost sprayed from his mouth. The sentence sounded caring at first, but with Luoya's smiling face, it became a perfect hidden insult. Garp's forehead darkened. He raised his huge fist. Luoya, you smelly brat. Do you want to taste this old man's iron fist? You should keep that for yourself. Luoya shrugged and turned to leave for his room. But at that moment, Garp suddenly moved. Come here and kiss my fist. Luoya's body tensed. This old man really wants to hit me. He had already experienced Garp's fist of love several times, and he had no desire to feel it again. But when Luoya turned around, what appeared before him was not Garp's fist. It was a sword. A simple yet elegant sword. It had no scabbard, and even while resting in Garp's hand, it released a sharp aura. This was clearly not an ordinary blade. Luoya stared at it in surprise. This is. Garp grinned and handed the sword to him. One of the 21 great-grade swords, Hanno no Suki. Luoya's eyes widened slightly. Garp continued casually, I remembered you saying you wanted a sword. While I was destroying a pirate group, I found this, so I brought it back. Luoya fell silent. Legendary swords in this world were divided into famous grades. Among them, the highest-ranked swords were extremely rare. Even the swords below that level were treasures that countless swordsmen dreamed of owning. A sword like this could never be obtained casually. Garp said he found it while destroying a pirate group. But Luoya did not believe it was that simple. Garp had disappeared for a week. Most likely, he had gone out of his way to search for information about this sword, then personally retrieved it. So that was why he had been missing. Luoya looked down at the sword in his hands. For the first time since arriving in this world, he felt a real sense of belonging. No matter how unreliable Garp seemed, this old man truly cared about him. Luoya gripped the sword and said seriously, thank you. Garp blinked, then laughed loudly. Ha ha ha. You smelly brat, why are you suddenly being polite? There was warmth in Garp's eyes. But in the next second, that warmth turned into a dangerous grin. By the way, I heard you've been at the bottom of the training camp this whole month. Before Luoya could react, Garp's fist landed on his head. Bang. Luoya clutched his forehead and almost cried. A huge bump rose instantly. Uncle Garp. Why did you hit me? No reason. Garp crossed his arms like it was perfectly normal. Luoya nearly spat blood. Then Garp glanced at him and said, I already gave you 1 month of leave from the camp. Starting tomorrow, I'll train you personally. He raised his fist again. You better be serious, or else. Luoya immediately pretended not to understand. What? Garp's eyes narrowed. What? You don't want to? No. I mean, do we start tomorrow? Luoya would never refuse this chance. He had been waiting for this. With Garp personally training him, his strength would definitely improve quickly. Of course, the training would probably be brutal. But compared to dying in this dangerous world, a little suffering was nothing. Seeing that Luoya was willing, Garp nodded with satisfaction. Good. The official training starts tomorrow. For tonight, rest properly. Luoya returned to his room and lay on the bed. He knew tomorrow would be hell, so he needed to sleep. But before closing his eyes, he decided to check the soul system one more time. With a thought, the status panel appeared. First stage, Broken Sword of the Soul plus 10. Condition for strengthening has been met. Attributes, attack power plus 30. Enhanced energy, 10/10. At first glance, it looked the same. Luoya yawned and almost turned over to sleep. But the next instant, his eyes snapped open. All sleepiness vanished. The condition has been met. His heart jumped. Before, that line had always said the strengthening condition was not fulfilled. But now, it had changed. Luoya forced himself to calm down and quickly thought through everything that had happened. After returning home, he had not done anything special. The only major change was that Garp had given him Hanno no Suki. His thoughts stopped there. That's it. There was no other explanation. The soul sword's condition had been fulfilled because he had obtained a real sword. So the next stage needs an actual sword. Luoya's eyes shone with understanding. He still did not know whether any sword would work or whether it had to be a famous sword like Hanno no Suki. But that was not important right now. What mattered was that he could continue strengthening the soul sword. Luoya entered the hazy space in his mind again. The cracked sword floated silently before him. He took a deep breath. Then, without hesitation, he chose to strengthen it. A low humming sound spread through the space. The next moment, golden energy appeared from nowhere. It flowed like a bright river, rushing toward the broken sword. The golden energy entered the cracks on the blade, filling them one by one. Brilliant light wrapped around the sword. This strengthening was completely different from the previous ones. Before, the changes had been quiet and simple. This time, the entire space trembled. Golden light shone everywhere. Tiny stars appeared around the blade, sparkling like fragments of a night sky. Luoya stared at the scene, unable to calm his heart. As expected, this strengthening is different. This is a real transformation. The cracks on the sword slowly disappeared. The broken blade healed. The golden light gradually faded. Finally, the sword no longer looked shattered. It had become an ancient sword, calm and powerful, floating quietly in the center of the space. Luoya immediately opened the status panel. Second stage, Ancient Sword of the Soul plus 0. Attributes, attack power plus 40, power plus 10. Additional attribute extraction available. Enhanced energy, 0/20. Luoya's eyes lit up. Other than attack power, there was now a new attribute. Power plus 10. Unlike the white attack power text, this new attribute was green. Clearly, it was a higher level attribute. When attack power increased before, Ryūjin could not feel a direct change in his body. It probably improved his damage or offensive ability. But this time was different. The moment power plus 10 appeared, Ryūjin felt his physical strength rise clearly. His muscles felt stronger. His body felt lighter. Even his breathing became smoother. Only 10 points increased my strength by nearly 30%. Ryūjin was shocked. Then he thought of something and muttered, does that mean my original body strength was only around 30 points? His mouth twitched. If that's the case, how much power does Garp have? 10,000? 20,000? Maybe even more. Ryūjin immediately pushed that terrifying thought away. Comparing himself to Garp right now was just asking for despair. His gaze returned to the panel. Enhanced energy had become 0/20. That meant the next strengthening required 20 points. The difficulty had clearly increased. Before, every strengthening only needed a little more energy than the last. But now, after reaching the second stage, the requirement had jumped sharply. Still, Ryūjin was not disappointed. Instead, he became even more excited. Because there was something new on the panel. Additional attribute extraction available. Ryūjin stared at those words. Extra attribute. Interesting. With a thought, he selected it. A new line appeared above the status panel. Begin extraction. The words on the panel vanished. Then, different colors began flashing in front of Ryūjin's eyes. Green. Blue. Purple. And then, for a brief instant, gold. The colors changed rapidly. Green and blue appeared most often. Purple appeared less. Gold flashed only once before disappearing. Ryūjin watched carefully, his heart beating faster. Although I don't fully understand it yet, gold should be the highest grade. Purple is probably rare. Green and blue are more common. He did not know what kind of attribute he would obtain. But one thing was certain. The soul system was far more powerful than he had imagined. And with Garp's personal training starting tomorrow, Ryūjin finally saw a path forward. A path that could lead him from the bottom of Marineford's training camp to the peak of this dangerous world.
Today's story is one you won't want to pause, and if stories like this are how you unwind, you can request the next one I narrate. Your pick, your novel, your audiobook. Try Patreon free for 7 days, then just $3 a month. Links in the description. Now, let's begin.
Soon the blinking of the various colors started to slow down. Roja finally could see the word in those flashing properties. Generally, they all were green physical enhancement, they were all mediocre, so they didn't attract him at all. The slashing gradually becomes slower and slower, seeing that it will stop on a green attribute, Roja felt disappointed. However, Roja didn't expect that what seemed to stop on a green attribute suddenly flashed again, then it turned into a purple attribute. Then before he could see what was it, this purple attribute turned into countless stars circled in the air, then disappeared into the property bar. He got a rare attribute. Roja was really excited after seeing this scene. He thought that in the end, he would only get a normal green attribute, but he didn't expect it to turn directly to purple, which made his heart pound with delight. At the next moment, the property bar reappeared. The second stage, the ancient sword of the soul plus 0. Attribute, attack power plus 40, power plus 10. Special attribute, all things of this world, turn to ashes. Note, Japanese name is Bansho Isai Kaijin Tenace. If you know what this means, laughing face, bleach lovers, didn't meet the condition for evolution. Energy, 0/20. Roja's eyes almost popped out when he saw that. He stared at the property bar for a while. Isn't this? Looking at the sentence in the special attribute. Roja thought that he heard it somewhere before. Then he suddenly remembered. At this time Roja still wasn't sure if what he thought about was really it, so he focused on the special attribute. After some time, more description popped up. Special attribute, all things of this world, turn to ashes. Initial stage, sword attacks get additional damage. The first stage, active skill, Shurikai, Ryūjin Jakka, not activated. The second stage, active skill, Benkai, Zenka no Tachi, not activated. This is. Almost directly after seeing this his mind stirred. No wonder he felt so familiar with those words. All things of this world, turn to ashes. Isn't this the Soul Society's first captain, the Captain Commander Genryusai Shigekuni Yamamoto, who has the strongest Zanpakuto? The Shurikai, Ryūjin Jakka, when used the temperature will rise to 6,000 degrees. It is as hot as the surface of the sun. The Benkai, Zenka no Tachi, when used the temperature will rise to 15 million degrees. This is the temperature of the core of the sun. This will dry all the water in the world and burn the world. Such a power is worthy to be called the strongest in the world, and such sword is worthy to be called the strongest Zanpakuto. In contrast, this world's Admiral Akainu Magma Devil Fruit ability is like child play against Yamamoto. How could magma compare to the core of the sun? Just looking at those properties, Roja's mind was on fire. He could imagine a sea of flame swallowing the whole world. Roja couldn't restrain his heart and wanted to look at how to activate the Shurikai, Ryūjin Jakka. The first stage, Shurikai, Ryūjin Jakka. Activation requirements, the fifth phase of the soul of the sword. The second stage, Benkai, Zenka no Tachi. Activation requirements, get the Shurikai to see the activation condition for the Benkai. After seeing those two lines, Roja's heart calmed down a little. Really not easy. I have to reach the fifth stage in order to use the Shurikai. In other words, I need to quickly strengthen myself to the fifth level or even higher. Early next morning. A ray of dawn rising from the horizon as it filled the world with vitality. Roja excitement surged. He wanted to begin training as fast as possible so he can strengthen the sword of the soul. So, he got up early in a state of excitement. There wasn't any sense of fatigue. It seems that because of the Sword of the Soul, Roja's recovery is stronger than normal people. It was really magical. As long as he gets a night of sleep, the next day no matter how tired he will look anew. That made Roja best suited to training. The problem is Garp. He said that today he will start training Roja, but now he is still sleeping. Roja was too lazy to wake him up. Well, even if he calls him he will not wake up. Roja just walked out and began simple punching practice. This is the Marines' headquarter camp training method. Not anyone can learn the Rokushiki even in the Marineford camp. Well, he will need a strong physique to use it anyway. He was interested in Soru, the high-speed movement technique in the Rokushiki. It will help him greatly when fighting with a sword. As for a gun, he won't need one since he decided to use the sword. So he won't need to learn gun tricks and so on. These two weapons will make those who learn how to use them stronger. But Roja will train with Garp. As long as his strength isn't lacking, it won't matter. For the present Roja, he doesn't lack any practical method. So as long as he wants something he probably will get it from Garp. Then all he needs now is focus on training and get stronger as fast as possible and strengthen the Sword of the Soul. Ha! After exercising for about an hour, Roja's body was sweating all over. His shirt was soaked. So he stopped and breathed a sigh of relief. Even now, Garp still didn't wake up. Roja's was helpless. For him to be able to sleep until now, with all this noise. Well, it's probably impossible for him to wake Garp, so Roja thought about the property bar again and the bar appeared before him. The second stage, the Ancient Sword of the Soul +0. Attribute, attack power +40, power +10. Special attribute, all things of this world, turn to ashes, sword attack has additional fire damage, evolution condition isn't met. Energy, 1/20th. In addition to the single point in energy, there isn't another change. Isn't the energy rising slower than before? It only added 1 point. After an hour of practice, the energy increased just by 1. Well, Roja wasn't that surprised, it seemed that he expected this. Then after thinking a little, Roja picked the sword on the table. One of the Nidai Kaitisu, Hano no Suki. It's because this sword that he met the strengthening condition for the first stage, and also because of it Roja got the purple rare attribute. Screech. A friction between the scabbard and the blade sounded. This is the first time he pulled the Hano no Suki out of its scabbard. Hano no Suki was slender and long. While the sunlight reflected on its surface, it emitted a bright luster. The blade is slightly red. It looked that there are flames raging in the sword. Seems that with it he would be able to use Ryūjin Jakka. Isn't this sword related to that attribute? This thought flashed in Roja's mind suddenly. He stood up and went to the center of the courtyard. Although Roja isn't a swordsman, but looking at the sun reflected on his edge, it made it exudes a hot aura. Thinking about the special attribute. Before the Bankai and the Shirkai, there was the initial stage. That passive skill will let every attack have additional fire damage. Roja's eye slightly flashed with a trace of light. Let's see the attached fire damage effect. Roja looked at the sword in his hand, whispered this sentence and gently lifted Hano no Suki. The next moment, the sword in his hand suddenly come down. In the process, Roja could feel some kind of power suddenly seeped out of his soul. HAA. Roja suddenly yells. When Roja's sword completed the swing motion. In the air suddenly there was a golden flame toward the direction Roja swung the sword. Then a bunch of debris from the courtyard fell down. The debris was instantly ignited. Raging flames rose to the sky which turned the debris into black dust and gradually extinguished. Looking at this scene, Roja felt satisfaction. If this is just a normal flame, what will the flame of Ryūjin Jakka do, or even Zenka no Tachi do? This thought made Roja extremely happy. After his first try, Roja continued testing his strength. He only stopped after grasping this new power. But the whole courtyard was a mess right now. It was like a sea of flame swept everything. While testing, Roja found that he could choose to release the flame or just use a normal sword strike. So the addition of the fire damage is controlled by him. Secondly, Roja could release the flame, then with a thought it will be extinguished. So the existence of the flame is also controlled by him. In addition, this force can be classified with the flame devil fruit, but although Roja is immune to fire right now, it isn't as natural as the devil fruit users who could directly turn into flames. And while Roja continued playing with the sword and tested his strength, Garp finally woke up. What is this smell? The nose of the half-asleep Garp twitched a few times. Then he walked to the courtyard and saw Roja practicing the sword. Well, Roja, that brat woke up. This thought suddenly flashed in Garp's mind. Then in the next moment, all of Garp's sleep disappeared without a trace. His eyes and his mouth wide open while looking at the burnt courtyard. This is... What is going on? Garp stared for a few seconds. Roja. The sound reverberated through the Marineford, almost making chicken fly and dog jump. Even the fleet admiral of the Marines heard it. Although he couldn't make out what Garp was saying. When he thought of Garp, black line appeared over his head. Then he shook his head. He was too lazy to care. Garp's voice was earth-shattering. Fortunately, there was nothing outside other than some debris. And while knowing Garp, Roja didn't talk and didn't explain because Garp didn't care much about the courtyard, so he soon calmed down. Roja and Garp began restoring the courtyard, and after they finished there was still some burned smell appearing from time to time. Standing in the courtyard, Garp fiercely stared at Roja and Roja made a hee-hee smile. Well, you brat, for the next month I will personally take care of your training. But my teaching is very strict, and if you dare to be lazy, be ready to be loved by this old man's iron fist. I will never show mercy. Garp looked strictly at Roja. This rise of momentum will scare the bravest man directly. But Roja wasn't scared even a bit. Garp may seem strict and all, but that won't make Roja retreat, rather it helps stimulate him more. Let's start. Roja answered simply, but he was showing a strong will, a will to get strong. Garp could clearly feel this will. He was surprised but mostly pleased. He was afraid that Roja didn't have any fighting spirit. But now it seems that his worries were for nothing. At the same time in the Marineford camp, Roja didn't show up to the training where all the recruits were practicing now. In a short break, those who heard about his leave were talking together. Just a month of training and he's taking a leave already. He is on the bottom compared to anyone in this camp in his willingness to leave. This guy probably lost hope. How could someone like this, the nephew of Vice Admiral Garp? Several recruits said one by one while showing a face full of contempt. And at this time someone shouted, "Shut up." From the direction of that sound, you could see a tall beauty from the new recruits coming over and directly said, "So you people could now talk about Vice Admiral Garp behind his back." All the people present gave each other a glance and looked afraid. Then someone looked at that female recruit and said, "Please Hina, it is our fault, so do not tell the instructor, okay?" Apparently this beautiful lady is very strong and has the power of a graduate but still didn't graduate, and also she teamed with Roja before. Tina then snorted and said, "Even if the performance of Roja is not very good, he's still the nephew of our Vice Admiral Garp. So if you dare say that again you will see." Yes. Although many people present didn't agree, they still admire Garp and they didn't want to disagree with Hina words. Moreover, Hina is very strong. Her results are at the top of the recruits, and in this world, the strength is stronger than status. Hina saw that they agreed. She grunted and continued with her training, so the others also resumed their training. In the courtyard, golden sunlight spilled down, filled the world with vitality. At this point Roja's body was covered with sweat. He was breathing heavily as if he reached the limit of what his body can do. He was doing the most simple, most basic squat training. His sweat made the ground wet. He was breathing heavily but still saying a number every time he squats down. 2201. 2202. His legs turned numb. He almost couldn't feel them, but he still gritted his teeth and continued. He wants to break past his limit. While Roja's upgrade, the Sword of the Soul, wasn't small, but his own strengthening is more frightening. If we were to compare him to the rest of the recruits, he won't be at the bottom anymore. 2353. 2354. Once again he tried to stand up but only got halfway up there, then he fell down again, no longer being able to stand, and could only try to restore his breath. Is 2354 is my limit? Although his body is extremely tired, his spirit wasn't exhausted at all since he has his soul coupled with the sword in it. He was able to reach his limits again. This was precisely possible because of his abnormally strong soul, which made him exceed his physical limit. Although it was painful, he could do it. He could bear this kind of pain. Roja couldn't feel his legs anymore. They turned completely numb. So for a short time, he won't be able to stand up. Then in the next moment, Roja's face was covered with black lines as his mouth twitched. Garp was standing there while he was sleeping. Roja sighed. He was too lazy to wake Garp up. He estimated that he won't be able to wake him up even if he tried. Then with a thought, the property bar appeared before him. He could see that the energy increased by 1. Roja slightly nodded, then the property bar dissipated and he began his rest. After a while, Roja seems to regain the feeling in his legs. And tried to stand up, and finally, Garp woke up. When he woke up he wasn't embarrassed but directly turned to see Roja. At first glance, Roja was sitting on the ground. Garp stared at him and thought he was sleeping like him, but the next moment he noticed the sweaty clothes and the wet ground under him and Roja, who was trying to stand up with shaky legs. At first, Garp prepared to directly raise a roar like last time, but it got stuck in his throat while his eyes flashing with a strange light. Did he just reach his limit? This state of his shaking legs made Garp surprised. If it continues like this he will bring all of his potentials out. Garp can naturally recognize such a state. It's the state after breaking the limit. Breaking the limit isn't easy as it doesn't have anything to do with physical power. It's all about the willpower. Garp didn't think that Roja's willpower is this strong, it surpassed his imagination. Garp made a satisfied smile, then in the next moment returned to his strict state, and after Roja restored his strength they resumed training. Nearly a month passed. This month Roja almost every day was breaking his limit while he continued to develop. Every day Roja's physical strength increased more than the previous day. Seeing because his soul is stronger, breaking his physical limit was easy for him, and he could bear the pain. In this month Roja's body changed a lot. Although he didn't reach the extent of Garp, still his body became more perfect, unlike his previous thin body. Roja was very satisfied with himself. Of course, while this change changed his appearance, his strength upgraded far more. In this month, besides physical enhancement, the Sword of the Soul strengthened several times. If a month ago his strength was just 30 points, then now he reached 100 points. His strength tripled in just a month. This is the result of his training. And the only after effect to breaking his limit is his appetite will grow. Roja now could guess why the original protagonist eats so much. In addition, even if the sword level didn't increase as much as his physical strength, but it still upgraded a few times. In front of his eyes, the property bar suddenly appeared. The second stage, the Ancient Sword of the Soul plus 6. Attribute, attack power plus 75, power plus 20. Special attributes, all things in the world, burn to ashes, all sword attack have increased fire damage, evolution condition not fulfilled. Energy, 14/70. After the first stage, the required energy for each strengthening increased by 10. Even so in this month, Roja reached plus 6 and the third evolution didn't seem to be that far. Simultaneously, the flames that could only reach 1 meter before now can extend to 56 meters. Although he doesn't know that much sword techniques, this flame could cover that for now. In this month Roja's strength promoted greatly. Even Roja himself didn't know how strong he was because all this time he was always with Garp and the latter's is too much for him to see his power up. Roja shook his head. A month ago he was ranked last and now he has so much strength. He couldn't help revealing a smile. Edited. In the month that Roja trained with Garp, the recruits completely forgot about him. And in this month a message spread like wildfire in the entire camp. Have you heard about it? The combat assessment is about to begin. Of course I heard all the training from before is for this combat assessment, and it said if you get first or if your performance is good you'd be able to get in the elite camp and be trained by Admiral Z. Recruits talked about and admired former Admiral Z. They couldn't help but show worship and respect for him. The Marine is not a nursing home, it's where they fight the pirates and especially the elite in the headquarters. And so, the Marine would organize an assessment. An actual combat assessment, and all recruits have to participate in it. The camp is divided into an ordinary camp and an elite one. There is about 10 group for the ordinary camp led by 10 instructors, and the elite camp had only one group. And the highest rank after graduation for the elite camp is captain and the lowest is lieutenant commander. And the most important thing is that the elite camp's instructor is former Admiral Z. Entering into the elite camp is like a dream for all recruits because all the Marine current admirals were trained under Z in the elite camp. Everyone was excited thinking about this. There are some people who already know that they don't have a chance, so they discussed who from the recruits will enter the elite camp. I estimate that Drake from the 5th group will be first. Drake? Yes, no one can win against him. This is far too strong. I heard that he killed the 8th group strongest in a spar. Talking to here the man couldn't help but feel fear. Even if all of them are recruits, the strongest in each group can easily beat other recruits. And even the strongest from the 8th group perished under X Drake Spike. There is no doubt he is the strongest this year. Yes, Drake is the strongest, but can he still be in the elite camp? Hearing this, someone from the crowd couldn't help but laugh. Strongest? Didn't you know that all those in the elite camp are monsters? People next to each other looked left and right. Most of them shook their head, apparently they didn't know anything about the elite camp. So everyone's eyes directed at the one who spoke. That recruit, seeing that many eyes are looking at him, took a deep breath and turned serious and said, "It is said that the current elite camp strongest is someone called Smoker and he got the Moku Moku no Mi. Do you know what that means?" After a moment of silence. Suddenly, after understanding his meaning, everyone's eye shined. Isn't that the strongest type of devil fruit? The Logia? Is there anyone who can win against him? This is awesome. If this is true, then I think no one can win against him. In the courtyard. The sun was hanging up in the middle of the day. At this time Roja wielding his Hano no Suki and swinging it down. His arms were going numb but he still tirelessly continued. Practicing to the limit of his body. Normal training won't, so he got to bread through his limit again and again. Roja's body was getting stronger and breaking the limit become harder and harder. That's okay. This is Garp teaching. Although it becomes difficult he still can go on. He has the sword of the soul. So Roja was more interested in swordsmanship, and sometimes even consult Garp about it. And Garp answers were beyond Roja's expectations. Garp said to him that everyone has his own way in the sword, there is no fixed path. The final road is always different. To practice your swordsmanship you need physical strength, arm strength and movement speed. As for the so-called Rokushiki, it can augment your strength to a certain extent, but it's not good to rely only on it. Although Garp is not strong at fencing as he is one of the strongest in the world, he already saw many strong sword masters. Even so, getting such an answer from Garp wasn't expected. Roja's current training is to strengthen his core. Something essential for sword users. And that is by just swinging the sword in a motion that seems like haking. Suddenly Garp came to the courtyard and waved his hand. "Roja, you can take a break." "Okay." Roja stopped his and looked at Garp strangely. This month, even if Roja was so into the training and drained all his strength when practicing, Garp didn't say go rest even once. So how come he's telling him now? Looking at Roja's face, Garp put his finger into his nose and said, "The combat assessment that requires all the recruits to attend will begin tomorrow." Although Garp can easily get Roja out of the assessment, he didn't want to. Even if Roja's talent and will are strong, he still needs actual combat experience. He has to experience real blood, if not he won't become strong. What is that? Hearing Garp's words, Roja's eyes flashed and stroked his mouth that was slightly raised with a smile. A long time ago Roja found that the energy in the soul system will increase faster in a real battle. Not to mention that for a long time Roja wanted to test his strength in a real battle, so he will certainly not refuse a challenge. Now that his sword of the soul strengthened to +6, although the distance is still far away from the Shukai in the 5th stage, he's not that far from the 3rd stage, and most likely in the 3rd stage he will experience another transformation. So for this Roja was looking forward to get that level up. Edited. The next day. In front of the huge harbor in the Marine Force, large warships were docked there and the groups of recruits were boarding them. A total of 10 large warships each was filled with one group from the ordinary camp, and in addition to recruits there were 5 vice admirals boarding with them. Although they are only from the ordinary camp, they still got the chance to join the elite camp in the future. So when they are gone to the sea to carry out the assessment, the headquarters sent 5 vice admirals to ensure their safety. Soon warships started leaving the harbor and headed to the sea. But the strange thing is that only 9 out of 10 ships left and the last one was still there docked on the shore with no sign of leaving. The recruits in that warship were quiet, but after some time they began to get restless. Usually the ships would leave at the same time, but what happened now? Some people frowned and muttered. "When do we start?" Other teams started, "What about us?" Many of the recruits were dissatisfied. Although things didn't become chaotic, they still began talking. And at this time, a person comes from a distance and directly boarded the ship. The man boarded was Roja. "Sorry, I am late," said Roja while moving, then found a place in the corner and sat down. He didn't even explain why was he late. He wasn't talkative. And he also didn't talk much with the recruit anyway. Although Roja in this month was not small anymore, most people still recognized him. After all, he was in the camp for a month. The voice of all the recruits stopped with the arrival of Roja. Watching this, a few had a stunned look on their face. Did the warship stay behind waiting for Roja? After a brief silence, a large noise broke out. "What is this? Did we wait so long for him? Didn't he already quit? Even if he's the nephew of Vice Admiral Garp, this is still too much." Most of the recruit looked at him with disgust and were very dissatisfied with him. Originally they were restless because of the assessment. So even with a little thing like this, they exposed a strong dissatisfaction. A few of the recruit remained calm. One of them was the person known as strongest in the ordinary camp Drake, but when he saw Roja his eye flashed. This guy, he became stronger. Before Drake wasn't concerned about Roja, but once he saw him now he felt the change that happened to him. As if he was a different person. However, although it seems that Roja become a lot stronger, but Drake did not particularly care. Originally he was the worst in all the camp. Even if he experienced some kind of change this month, how much can someone change in a month? After all, Drake's goal is being first in the camp, not first in the group. After looking for a moment he turned his eye from Roja and didn't care anymore. And the recruits become noisier. The Vice Admiral directed a cold look and said, "Quiet down." With this, the warship once again quieted down. Most people closed their mouths, but in their face, a dissatisfied look still remained, when looking at Roja. In the next moment, all the faces with dissatisfaction instantly disappeared. Because all the officers in the warship were saluting, including the Vice Admiral, and over there 2 men dressed in marine attire were walking slowly side by side, and in the eyes of the crowd countless look of worship and reverence appeared. One of them is Garp. While the other walking step by step, rising a majestic momentum with every step. All respected him. He is the Marineford new elite camp instructor, but also former Marine Admiral. No wonder they will wait here. They were originally waiting for Admiral Z and Vice Admiral Garp. Why would they even wait for that guy? When recruits saw Garp and Z, their dissatisfied face disappeared. Looking at Garp and Z, many revealed looks of respect. At this time no one paid any attention to Roja. All the crowd saw now is Garp and Z. While Garp boarded the ship he swept his gaze, finally reaching Roja's body, then he grinned and then directly moved into the upper cabin with Z. To have Z and Garp watching, the Vice Admiral looked at the recruits and said, "Vice Admiral Garp and the Chief Instructor Z will personally watch, so give them a good performance." Yes. The recruits were in rows. They saw Z and Garp boarding. The recruit become excited because Garp and Z will personally watch the assessment. Only Roja sitting in the corner didn't have any excitement and even lazily sitting between 2 cannons. He only glanced a little at the recruits. Then he glanced down. Drake noted Roja's gaze. In fact, from the time he got here Roja paid attention at Drake. Not because he is the 5th group strongest or because he's the ordinary camp strongest, but because he is one of the supernova from Luffy's era. One of the 11 supernova, but now he's just a recruit. Originally, Drake became a rear admiral and for some reason, he rebelled against the marine and became a pirate. I don't know if he already got the ancient Zoan devil fruit or not. Roja slightly shook his head and he no longer looked and cared. The warship finally left at full speed and soon there was only the sea, nothing else. This is where many sea kings live. From time to time you could see those huge kings come out from a distance and then return back into the water. This large ship had a turbo power. So it can easily sail without wind, and even if they didn't have the turbo they still have Garp and Z. After a while, they arrived at a small island. There were many small islands that formed an archipelago. Those islands had various plants and from time to time there will sound a roar from deep within one of the islands. It was breathtaking. The other 9 warships were docked in different places and soon the warship that Roja was riding stopped in the edge of the archipelago in a small island. This is where you will have your assessment. After docking the Vice Admiral spoke to all recruits. While Garp and Z didn't show up. In this island. Is there pirates? The recruit looked at the island while hearing the roars coming from it and felt some fear. The Vice General sneered, "Fight pirates. You're too tender. Pirates are extremely cruel. This place is more suitable for this examination. Your mission isn't to fight and kill every monster in here. There is no limit to weapon except for heavy weapons. So firearms are okay. Hunting each creature will give you some points. The strong monster will more point than weaker ones. You can hunt as a team, but the point will be divided equally among all the members," said the Vice Admiral. When he suddenly became more serious, everyone quieted down. Although they are recruits, they weren't some random people. Even so, they felt the chills run through their backs. Only a handful of people looked the same, such as Drake. In Roja's face, there was some surprise, so the examination wasn't about fighting pirates, but it was fighting monsters. This was something Garp should have known, but Roja didn't ask and the former didn't tell. It's not that he forgot about it, but he probably didn't say it deliberately. The Vice Admiral was mostly satisfied with that reaction and after some time continued, "This island is full of surveillance equipment including the sky. These monitoring devices will serve as a recording to everything you kill. Also, if someone faces a crisis, we will send someone for his rescue, but he will be disqualified. But," the Vice Admiral said solemnly, "this still guarantee the safety of everyone. If one of you were to encounter the strongest monster here, he will be crushed before help could get to him. Check for the time so we can regroup after 3 days from now. I wish you good luck." Ordinary Marine courses didn't carry such practical assessment. But the recruits in the Marineford as the elite of the Marine have to go through this baptism. As they say, without going through blood and fire, elites won't be born. Soon all recruits were on the island. Most of them were carrying guns. The other carried swords or other types of weapons like Roja and Drake. Drake only took a sword and an axe and Roja only had Hanu no Suki. Few people didn't have firearms, so they had too much attention and most people will look at them with envy and awe, like when Drake got down from the warship. Drake's strength was known to all and in their eyes, he is very strong and didn't need firearms because ordinary firearms are useless to him. At this time Roja also got down. Many people looked at him unintentionally. They were surprised as Roja also didn't have firearms and only carried a sword. While looking they felt that Drake was confident in his strength. As for Roja, he was only being arrogant. Didn't he know that this examination is very dangerous? He will probably die. Many recruits seemed to look at him as he as an idiot. Then someone said, "Hey, did you come only to die?" Hina also looked at this scene. She couldn't stay still, so she reminded him, "I suggest that you bring a gun with you. This examination will be very dangerous. Hina suddenly said, but Roja looked at her and felt that she was familiar. The next moment he remembered her. Isn't this Hina that had the devil fruit Ori no Mi? But it seems that she still didn't eat it. Sorry, but I really can't use guns. Roja looked at Hina and shrugged his shoulders. Although in this world there are some strong people that used firearms, but Roja chose the road of the sword, not firearms. Moreover, as he is now, ordinary guns can't harm him at all. You. Although Roja was telling the truth, when Hina heard it she thought that he is fooling her. She didn't say any more and just run into the forest. Roja also rolled his eyes at Hina's attitude. He felt really helpless. She got angry at him while he only said the truth. He shook his head and also headed to the depth of the forest. Inside the warships. In a wide room that was full of projected images. The screens displayed all of the archipelagos. In this room, all instructors were present and watching the display. They were recording scores for each of their group and preparing to rescue any of them if there was any danger. As for Instructor Z, the former admiral, he crossed his arms while scanning the monitoring screen. As for Garp, he was eating his rice crackers by Z's side. That's your nephew Roja? Z asked Garp while pointing at one of the screens. Yes. Garp gave a vague response, seemingly uninterested. In fact, he should be the most one concerned here. I heard that he trained under you for a month. But before that, he was lat ranked among all the recruits. Although you want him to enter the elite camp, I think it will still be difficult. Z looked at the screen that displayed Roja moving through the forest while shaking his head. A month in Z's eyes seemed too short, as Roja was really bad, so even with Garp's special training, he estimated that he wasn't that strong now. However, since it's Garp nephew, Z didn't mind accepting him in the elite camp and teach him whatever his results were. After all, he had been Garp's friend for decades now. Ha ha ha, Z, I think that this kid is stronger than you think he is. Garp listened to Z and then took a bite on the rice cracker and swallowed after laughing. Oh. Let's wait and see. Z listened to Garp's words and said. He didn't continue to argue with him. He just continued to watch the screen. Edited. In the dense forest. Roja moved forward while carrying his sword. This island is quite small if we look at all the archipelago, but still it was as big as the camp. Except for the beginning, Roja didn't encounter any of the recruits after going into the forest. Roja tried to find the monitoring devices. But he didn't find any video den mushi. Maybe they used other equipment. This archipelago could be man-made. I think this place is specially made for this examination. Roja walked through the forest and found artificial traces. It seems that this forest was moved here. So this means that the creature in this island was specially selected for the examination. Roja arrived at a silent place. Dead silence. Suddenly a pair of eyes appeared behind Roja. This is a creature got two huge fangs. It was a giant wild boar. Whiz. The next moment the wild boar that was staring with blood-red eyes at Roja suddenly rushed in his direction. It seemed like Roja would be pierced. But the next moment Roja leaped and kicked the boar's head. It was like Roja grew a pair of eyes behind his back. Bang. The original powerful red boar under the pressure of Roja's kick suddenly collapsed and couldn't resist the huge power behind the kick. Roja was shocked and stepped back a little. This wild boar did not think that the thin and frail creature in front of him had so much power. While looking between his leg and the boar in shock, Roja's mouth slightly smiled. My first prey come to me by itself. My luck is not bad and I even use my legs while I practice using my hand essentially. The boar roared. The giant wild boar wasn't dead after Roja's kick, but it still was shocked. It didn't have any idea for retreat. It shook its head and then once again rushed at Roja. This time Roja also moved toward the boar while holding his Hano no Suki hilt, and suddenly he drew it. This is the most basic sword draw that Roja practiced countless times. The sword was a red line flashed suddenly. Aya. The next moment the Hano no Suki was back in the scabbard. And in front of Roja, the wild boar stood still. Silence. A bloody line appeared between the boar's eyebrows and blood splashed out. The boar was cut in two and each half fell to different sides. In its eyes, you could see its panic. Even while dying it couldn't understand how. Worthy of being one of the 21 Owazumono swords. While looking at the boar that was halved by his sword he was surprised a little. He looked at the Hano no Suki and smiled. This is the first time he used it in cutting a living creature. He didn't think he could split it with just one swing of his sword. He didn't even expect that he has so much power. Monkey D. Roja killed level 3 monster, the giant wild boar. The monster on the island was classified by 5 levels. The strongest being level 5, and a monster of the 5th level would be stronger than the elite recruits, maybe even stronger than the vice admirals. Each level has a different score. The highest level giving 5 points. While looking at the screen, Z could see the whole process of Roja cutting the boar with a single sword strike. His power is good. Maybe better than most of the camp recruits. It seems this month he really becomes a lot stronger. And another thing. Isn't that sword one of the Owazumono swords, Garp? Z looked at Garp by his side. Even if those weren't the best, but they were extremely good and rare, so having this kind of sword wasn't that easy. Garp understood his meaning. Ha ha ha, Roja, that kid prefer using swords, so. Garp trained Roja for a month, so seeing him killing a level 3 monster by slitting it with a single strike made him feel satisfied. Z shook his head and said his swordplay is too rough, he will only use arm strength without techniques. Relying on Hano no Suki won't be useful against stronger monsters as it's difficult to break the defenses of such monsters. So I am afraid he will encounter a bitter fight. Although Roja's performance was good, Z was used to talented people and even taught the 3 current admirals himself. So his evaluation was accurate. As they finished talking his face changed. At the same time, Garp's face also changed. Not good. Roar. Across the screen, they could hear a shocking roar. They saw on the screen that just as Roja killed the giant wild boar there seemed a giant shadow double the size of boar appeared before him. This shadow was big. It was one of a few monsters this big in the island. A brownback ape. Z and Garp weren't concerned before because it was a level 3 monster but the ape was a level 5 monster so they noticed faster than anyone. If it was Garp or Z they could win with one finger but, for the recruit of the ordinary camp, it is the most difficult to deal with one alone. A level 1 monster. Even if one of the elite recruits were to encounter a normal he wouldn't necessarily win not to mention the toughest brownback ape. Z and Garp were in a brief silence. With his strength, a level 4 monster is his limit and fighting a level 5 and a brownback ape at that would be. Z looked at the screen and stopped talking but his meaning is evident. As for sending rescue or not Roja was after all Garp's nephew so Garp taking the decision will be better. At this time Garp watching the screen without a word and was really tense. The ape is extremely flexible and moves really fast so escape is probably impossible, if he encountered any other level 5 monster he could escape with the result of his month of training without any injuries. But this is the agilest creature in the entire island. Why is his luck so bad? Garp looking at the screen with the brown ape and it gritted his teeth and decided to wait a minute if he rushed from here to Roja's location he would probably reach there instantaneously. If Roja couldn't do a thing Garp will rush there with his fastest speed. At this time in the forest. With the sudden appearance of the level 5 monster, the brownback ape, Roja could only confront it. It comes out after he beheaded the level 3 monster giant wild boar and put his sword away. The level 5 monster was about 3 times higher than Roja. It was standing like a hill in front of him. The ape got sturdy arms. It looked very powerful to the extent that it could tear apart the wild boar. This brownback ape is obviously many times more powerful than the giant wild boar. After looking at this monster Roja had a solemn expression. Really now? This island had such monster. Even 10 recruits won't be able to take it down. Roar. The ape appeared to be chasing the wild boar to eat it. But it didn't expect that Roja this tiny little creature to kill it. The prey was taken away so the ape is apparently very angry. It felt offended because its prey was stolen. So it looked at Roja patted its chest and exposed its killing intent. In the next instant, the ape rushed at Roja. It was very fast that you just couldn't compare it to the giant wild boar. The ape waved its fist at Roja and smashed it down. Seeing this Roja took out his Hano no Suki and directly waved it at the first coming at him. He wanted to cut its hand. Blood splashed in an instant and bloodstains appear. Against such a sharp weapon even the brownback ape couldn't resist. Even so, its defense is stronger than the giant wild boar as the sword could only cut the flesh and couldn't cut its tough bones. Roar. The ape thought that one punch could solve this small insect in front of it. It simply couldn't think that Roja had the power to hurt it. And it was finally enraged. In this forest except for a small number of monsters this ape is the strongest and even those exception wouldn't dare to offend it. And now even this little insect could injure it, it was completely angered and ready to tear this insect apart. I can cut the skin and muscle but the bones are tough, no, it should be that my strength is too small. Roja after finishing his attack backed out about 10 meters and stopped. Just after coming here I get to fight a strong monster. Roja raised his head, there wasn't even a shred of fear on his face. Rather he showed a slight smile. So is this fortunate? Or is it unfortunate? Smiled Roja and slowly raised his sword above his chest. Roja pointed his sword at the ape. The brownback ape understood that Roja wanted to fight. So it roared and rushed at him again. Roja just raised his sword and brought it down again. The ape directly used a finger to pinch the sword. A huge force pressed into the sword. The ape revealed a look of contempt and was ready to pull the sword out of Roja's hands then it could take good care of this little insect that dared to injure it. But the ape didn't notice the flames in Roja's eyes. Almost as the ape punched the sword before it could pull, a really hot golden flame erupted suddenly and from the body of Hano no Suki flames burst out. Seeing the flame the brownback ape instantly froze for a moment. Boom! The moment the ape was in a daze the hot golden flames burst out directly in the face of the ape. The ape came back to its sense and its pair of huge eyes showing terror and wanted to escape. But it was too late. Although the ape is fast, the flames were faster almost instantly the flame covered his entire body. Surging flames rose to the sky like a mass of red clouds and the ape being in the center of it turned into a huge fire ape. In the next instant from that direction come out a bursting sound and the smell of barbecue. Roar! The brownback ape roared this time the scream was earth-shaking. Suddenly it got out of the flames. The ape's eyes were burned to a crisp while the flames still burning it up and down. With such pain, the ape rolled around to put down the fire while crushing into thick trees and screaming loudly. Rolling like crazy all the bushes lit up and that ape that tried to put down the flame got into them again. And it continued to wail. What? This is impossible. As the flames suddenly erupted almost all of the people in the warship's monitoring room exclaimed. A sword of flames? You gotta be kidding me. All the people here were wide-eyed. Watching Roja all of them had incredible looks. Because Roja was the first to encounter a level 1 monster all the marines in the room had their attention on the screen that showed him. When they saw Roja forced back by the ape and then the ape pinched Roja's sword they all thought he will be torn apart. But the ape suddenly caught up flames that were shot from a sword. In particular, the former Admiral Z while looking at the scene of Roja beheading the boar, he was surprised at the result of 1 month of practice. But now Roja's sword shot out flames after the swing this made their eyes almost fall out. What a joke. Roja wasn't a devil fruit user or Garp should have said so not to mention the previous performance of Roja wasn't like someone who had any devil fruit. Moreover, the flames were projected from the body of the sword, not from Roja's body. So there was only 2 possibilities. First Roja swung his sword extremely fast that made friction with the air which generated those flames or a sword of flames. With the speed that let him produce fire. There is no need for any flame with just that speed he could split 10 brownback apes in half. And when Roja just chopped, his speed wasn't so fast and the power is obviously not strong, but it can burst out flames. So there is only one possibility. The sword produces the flame. There are many who can produce things when they use the sword. Like the flower sword Vista of the Whitebeard pirates who can produce petals. Roja's swordplay is very rough. He wasn't a swordmaster, so this wasn't the power of Roja. This is obviously the power from the sword. Garp, who was ready to rush to where Roja was to save him, stopped with his mouth wide open that his fist could fit in. He was clear about Roja's strength, but this smelly brat, when did he achieve such level in his swordsmanship? Garp stared foolishly. Even the former Admiral Z couldn't hide his shock. He only recovered after a while. A sword that produces flames. This can't be wrong, this is the only possibility, but his swordsmanship is so rough. It's obvious that he's just a beginner. This old man has heard of such talent but never saw it myself. To think the world really had such a genius. Born with the power to produce flames when wielding a sword. This is more than just a genius. Born for the sword. Such a talent even for Z, it was the first time he saw it. Garp, this is Roja, right? This is truly your nephew, right? Z turned to look at Garp with a touch of doubt in his tone. Garp was also shocked for a while. When he recovered, he heard Z flower sword Vist and grinned. Ha ha ha, Z, you are unwilling to admit it. That's not it. It's just hard to believe. Z grunted while saying in his heart, who can believe such a talent? Who can believe that someone was born with swordmaster skill? Moreover, there is no doubt that this is the power to produce flames with his swordplay, like how Vista produced petals. The dialogue between Garp and Z reverberated in the control room, which made all the people there to recover from the shock. This type of talent only appeared in legend, but it was in front of them today. Monkey D. Roja, Vice Admiral Garp is really an abnormal guy. I think the sea will know another legend with that boy's power. Many other Marines there couldn't help but think about this idea. In the forest. The brown-back ape continued to roll all around the bushes, which were ignited in the process and turned into a sea of flames. And the fire still spread. Gradually the brown ape's screams began to stop and the struggling actions slowed down and finally stopped. After this, Roja looked at the sea of flame and swept his sword. Just like how the flames burst out, burning everything. All the flames extinguished with a thought from Roja. Sword fire off. This scene made Z and Garp and all the other in the control room more certain that the flames were produced by his swordsmanship. The thing produced by the swordplay is special. They were real but also not. They were between reality and illusion. So those things produced by the sword could be retracted at will by the user. At this time Roja didn't know that the power he displayed was misunderstood as a power of his swordsmanship. Of course, there is no big difference between that and Roja's power. But for ordinary swordsmen this power is from their comprehension of the sword, as for him it's a power from his soul. After extinguishing the flames, Roja directly went to the ape's body. When he reached it, he found out that the ape still has some vitality. It wasn't dead yet. This thing sure is stubborn. This world not only has human with tenacious vitality but also monster are the same. This is really not scientific. However, he wasn't a scientist. His not Vegapunk, the master leading the world for 500 years in the path of technologies. Watching the dying ape, Roja whispered while beheading it. Come to think of it, my ability to wield flames should have been seen. After beheading the ape, Roja put the Hano no Suki back into its scabbard and started walking. Roja didn't care even if they knew. Sooner or later he will need to display his ability. And this time it was a dangerous situation. He couldn't conceal his ability or he would have just died there. The thing Roja is concerned about is that fighting increases his energy. So with a thought from Roja, the property bar appeared. The second stage, the ancient sword of the soul +6. Attribute, attack power +75, power +20. Special attributes, all thing in the world, turn to ashes, sword attack has additional fire damage, the evolutionary conditions is not met. Energy, 22/70. Before the start of the battle Roja energy value was 18 and now 22. In other words, in this fight, Roja energy increased by 4. If he wanted to increase those 4 points, Roja had to practice desperately for half a day. But he just got them after this short fight. Why would fighting increase the energy so much while training doesn't? Roja had a guess. The practice is to bring out the potential of the body, but fighting will bring the potential of the soul. The more dangerous a fight is, the more energy will increase. The more life and death battles, the more his soul will transform. Of course, this is only his guess and he couldn't test it. He didn't want to get into a life and death battle just to test this. Edited. With a thought from Roja, the property bar disappeared. Although this is just a test, Roja could experience real battles and could measure his strength. Roja put away his sword and was ready to leave and look for other praise. Without waiting, Roja took his first 2 steps. He heard a sound from the bushes by the side. Come out. Roja stopped. He was surprised. After all, even if this island is full of living creatures, it's not concentrated to that degree. Did he encounter 3 monsters in the same place? To Roja's surprise, when the bushes separated, it wasn't a monster that appeared but a beautiful pink-haired girl instead. This is the same person who reminded him to take guns with him and he didn't listen, which resulted in that person being angry at him, Hina. Hina wasn't far away, and when she heard the sound made by a battle she directly came over. Her hands were on the gun. She looked vigilant while coming out of the bushes just to see a barbecued brown ape. She froze for a moment, then looked extremely shocked. Isn't this one of the strongest monsters in the island? Hina was different than Roja. She not only had an early understanding of the combat assessment but also at the monster that may appear from the island. Maybe she won't remember the weak monster, but she wouldn't mistake the strong ones. Although the ape was burned to a crisp, Hina only took a glance to recognize it. There is no doubt this is one of the strongest monsters on this island. And such a strong monster was burned to crisp. And looking around, the area also burned with the same flame. Hina was shocked. For a long time, Hina stayed still. Because she focused on the brown back ape she didn't pay attention to Roja until she recovered from the shock. When she recovered she looked Roja and asked while showing her surprise. Why are you here? Roja had black lines from what Hina said. She stood there for half a day and only now did she notice him. Is his presence really that low? His mouth twitched then Roja snappily gave Hina a look, why can't I be here? When she heard Roja's word she grunted, you really have good luck. This is a brown back ape. One of the strongest monster in this island. I don't know how it burned to this degree but if you encountered it alive do you think you'd be alive? Hina thought to herself that even if she encountered a level 4 monster she could only retreat not to mention this level 1 brown back ape. In her view, Roja is very lucky for not encountering this ape alive. However, listening to Hina in Roja's heart was filled with black lines. But it didn't show up on his face and he didn't justify either. But exposed a symbolic harmless smile and said. You just said that he's a level 5 monster. What does that mean? You don't even know this. Hearing his voice Hina suddenly looked strangely at him but still replied, the creature on this island is divided into 5 grades. 1 is the weakest. 5 is strongest. And this should be the level 5 brown back ape. So this means that I just killed a level 5 monster so my score should have increased by a large margin. Roja said while thinking about the strength of the ape. Well, this is an assessment. If there is a stronger monster then this will be a massacre and most the recruit will die. Hina who was observing the body of the ape heard Roja's word and subconsciously nodded. Yes. You killed the brown ape so the score would of course. The sound stopped suddenly. Speaking to here. Hina stopped and stared at Roja, what did you say? Looking at Hina Roja nodded and said, nothing. Since I killed this ape and it's the strongest creature here. So I will be assured. With his flame, he could behead this ape so in this island, there shouldn't be any monster who could threaten him. However, hearing Roja's word Hina was silent. After a while, Hina went to Roja's side and stretched out her white hand and put it on Roja's forehead. What are you doing? This action suddenly made Roja lose his calm. Hina revealed a look of care as if she is looking at a mentally retarded person and said, that is. I think if you have a fever you can call the instructor and leave. Puff. This sentence almost made Roja spat blood. Fortunately, in his past life some of his friends made fun of him so he learned how to keep calm even in a situation like this. I won't leave and also I will continue to look for praise. Goodbye, he said to Hina and directly turned to leave. Hina looked at Roja's decisive look. Her mouth twitched and a burst of helplessness invaded her heart. If Roja wasn't the nephew of Garp she would be lazy to care about him. However, Hina was about to leave, she found out that Roja came back. Hina watched him and said to Roja, why did you come back? Roja exposed a serious expression and said, there will be other praise here. Roja just thought about it. This ape is burned and smells like a barbecue so he estimated that a large number of monsters will be attracted to the smell. With Roja's additional fire damage ability he wasn't afraid of group fight. They all shall become barbecue. Unless the creature has a fire resistance all the other won't be able to stand in front of him. Since this place will attract many monsters why bother looking for them? Wait for the praise here. Are you crazy? Hina wasn't stupid so hearing Roja's words she knew what he meant and stared at him with her mouth wide open. With this smell, most monster will be here in no time. And I am afraid that they definitely aren't just 2. Roja wanted to use this ape as a bait. If we were surrounded by a large number of monsters, only death will await us. Hina didn't know how mentally disabled was he to come with such a deadly idea. Puff. This made Hina almost spurt blood. She almost left without him, but after gritting her teeth and thinking this was Garp, nephew, she calmed down. But she still looked at Roja with eyes that wanted to murder him. Roja shrugged and directly ignored Hina's murderous eyes. His patience almost ran out, just when she thought that he's sick. He was humiliated for the first time in this world. Hina who saw Roja directly ignoring her was helpless. Looking around for a bit Hina stayed calm at first but with every second passing, she began to panic little by little. Because, they waited and no monster came out. The more they wait, the more she panics. She felt danger and thought that at any moment monsters will rush out from around them. Perhaps because there is a large number of monsters, they were fighting each other or they were afraid of other monsters that's why they didn't come yet. Hey, you really don't want to go? You can stay then. Hina took a breath and looked at the serious Roja. She couldn't stay in this place anymore. She felt like she was waiting for death. Hearing Hina's words Roja turned and looked at her like he was saying to her leave already. Hina bit her teeth and turned away. Her nature is not bad. She didn't want Roja to be killed by countless monsters, but she was ready to call the monitoring team to come and rescue him. Roja wanted to do something ridiculous, even now there wasn't any way to stop him. Maybe all the monitoring devices were burned. After a while, Hina was determined to leave this area. But, without her entering the bushes, a bloody roar suddenly come out from there. A strong sense of crisis invaded her heart. Almost without looking Hina just somersaulted backward instinctively. Biting, SFX. At the time Hina looked at where she was, there was a big mouth that bit a piece of her clothes. Damn it's too late. Hina looked at the bushes, a giant wolf 3 or 4 times larger than a normal one. Her face became extremely ugly. Level 4 monster, giant green wolf. Her hand was holding the gun for a while but she didn't dare to shoot because she didn't know if this is the only one or there is more monster hiding. She wasn't afraid of a level 4 giant green wolf but she's worried about other monster coming out. After biting nothing the giant green wolf didn't rush directly at Hina but it just stared at her at the same time it moved a little bit toward her. This wolf is wise, from just that bite it knew that its opponent isn't something it just can directly eat so it didn't rush to attack but it exerted pressure on Hina. It was waiting for Hina to expose an opening and then attack. The heavy pressure continued to fall and Hina's forehead gradually became full of sweat. If this was another place she had more than 1,000 ways to kill this wolf. After all, she was one of the best in the ordinary camp and fully qualified to enter the elite camp. But in this kind of situation, Hina didn't want to act rashly. Most of her attention was on the bushes so she won't have to face another sneak attack. This time in the forest Hina could feel many other powerful presence. Every presence may be a strong monster. Because of the smell of the barbecued ape. All the monster didn't fight between each other but were approaching by the side quietly. This area has long been surrounded. This is really terrible. I am really gonna die because of that idiot. In this situation, Hina could feel her heart turn cold. Her pair of small hands gradually began to lose their temperature. At this time Roja was quietly watching by the side. Didn't want to embarrass Hina but he was calmly observing the forest and the shadows lurking in it and coming up with a plan to fight them. That, he didn't to consider how to fight anymore. For him, this place is a favorable terrain. With his ability to release flames he could stand in the face of any monster or even groups of them, it didn't make any difference. At this moment Roja was standing by the side holding his sword in his hands. Finally, he stood straightly, his mouth showed a little smile and excitement flashing in his eyes. Roja may seem easily calm but he was a little bit afraid of blood cause in his past life he was afraid of blood and he also died once, even thought he crossed worlds. That fear didn't disappear. This is another world, why would I be afraid? Surrounded by a large number of monster, that fear gradually disappeared from Roja's heart. Roja's face showed an excited smile, one hand holding the Hano no Suki, the other is the scabbard. He slowly raised it to his chest and pulled it out slowly. Sword out of scabbard, SFX. The next moment the sword was out. Hina, who was focusing on the wolf in front of her, suddenly heard that sound and couldn't help but be distracted. Almost at the same time she was distracted, the wolf rushed with his eyes flashing with murderous light and wanted to slice her throat. Oops. Hina reacted and prepared to dodge but she saw a shadow above her and looked that she saw Roja's figure above her. Almost the next instant, Hina was shocked watching him getting by her side like a lightning flash. This time she couldn't know who started running first, the wolf or Roja, but she was certain about something. Roja is way faster. Hano no Suki formed a red bloody arc in the air. Like a setting sun, it was beautiful but also contained a touch of murder. Roar. The giant green wolf is a level 4 monster so it reacted fast. The wolf felt that if it continued to try biting and didn't retreat it will die by Roja's sword. If this was any ordinary wolf it won't have any way out. But this is after all a level 4 monster, so naturally, they weren't the same. But despite that, it couldn't avoid Roja's strike completely and a part of its flesh was cut and instantly blood spilled through the air. Red blood died on the ground like a blooming flower. Roja didn't stop his attack after the wolf avoided his strike and the next moment swept his sword over its head. Roar. The injured wolf hare stood seeing Roja's sword coming down at it. It directly opened its mouth to stop the strike and to force the sword out of Roja's hands. However, seeing his, Roja laughed. There was a trace of helplessness in his laugh and also a trace of mercy. Watching the wolf he shook his head slightly. Why bite my sword? Almost at the next moment, a flame burst from the sword directly into the wolf's mouth directly to its belly. The next moment the wolf, like it just received an electric shock, directly released the sword and couldn't even scream. Its whole body shook twice and the wolf directly puffed down to the ground, his mouth let out weak flames. Looking at this scene Hina revealed an incredible look. Dead. It died. From the beginning to the end, from where he first attacked to where the wolf died, almost all of that happened in the blink of an eye. Hina couldn't even understand how that giant wolf died. Although she could go one-on-one with the wolf. If she attacked like Roja she would be killed in an instant. This is simple. Impossible. You. Hina looked at Roja in disbelief. Her impression of him was, he can't beat anyone, his physical strength is the weakest, every time running he will come last. It's like the person changed completely. I don't know, is this considered as joint kill or a single one? Roja had a hee-hee smile and his mouth made an evil arc and his eyes were burning with excitement. Hina still looked at Roja in shock with a pair of crystal clear eyes. Showing how shocked she was by the fact that Roja just killed the wolf. And at this time, countless monsters came surging from all directions like crazy, which made Hina awake from her shock. In the forest, many shadows appeared with bloody red eyes, emitting a freezing killing intent that made Hina feel as if she fell into an ice basin. When Roja beheaded the wolf the smell of blood made all those monsters violent. If the smell of barbecue attracted the monsters then the smell of blood will make them violent. Although Hina believed Roja now about him killing the ape, but even so against so many monsters what will he do? She thought they were unfortunate this time. Hina's heart was cold while she was thinking about a way for her and Roja to go out of this place, but all the monster turned completely violent. Roar. At least dozen of ferocious creatures issued a roar that reverberated through the entire forest. Although many recruits heard this they didn't come over to look as they were afraid. Even if the assessment is for them to kill monsters they wouldn't go to a place full of them as they weren't looking to die this early. They thought that the monster is hunting, not the other way around. Almost in a blink of an eye, the entire forest turned into chaos. The monster began to fight each other for the ape and other monsters saw Hina and Roja as food. The monsters already blocked all directions so Hina suddenly went pale from fright. We're finished. Hyan said in her heart. However, standing by her side Roja, who didn't reveal even a trace of panic but rather his mouth revealed a little evil smile. Roja's sword in his right hand as he brought it to the left and suddenly waved from the left to the right. It didn't seem special, it seemed as a normal wave of a sword, but a ray of hot-looking flames suddenly burst out from where the sword passed. Sword flow, torch. Hum. Roja's Hano no Suki turned red, coaxed by flames from left to right until it connected together into a circle wrapping Roja and Hina in it like a ring of fire. This flame was somewhat weak, but after it connected and formed this fire ring, a hot burst of flame come crushing into the surrounding area and spread out for several meters. The monsters rushing almost all were hit by the flame wall. Suddenly you could hear roars of pain from all the surrounding monsters. Most the monster that touched the flames for a moment stopped, then started rolling on the ground in pain. And some continued and rushed into the flame to find Roja waiting for them with his sword, and all of them were cut by him. The flame ring continued to stretch from 10 meters in range as the flame continued surging. The monsters looking at that ring, many stopped fighting and stared at it with fear and panic. Most of them feared the fire. At this moment Hina was standing inside the circle while disbelief showing on her face. Flames. Roja could make flames with his sword. Hina stared at Roja, who was holding his sword in awe. Roja can control flames. Hina suddenly thought about the level 1 ape that was burned. Before she suspected that Roja came here after it died, but it seems that Roja really was the one to kill it. Finally, Hina woke up while staring at Roja's eyes. Still finding this hard to believe. Just in 1 month, Roja had this much change. While her eyes were still fixed on Roja, the latter already rushed out of the ring of fire and continued to behead all the monsters. Many monsters were on the ground roaring painfully, but soon they will be cut one by one. Flames wrapped around Hano no Suki, and even after all that killing there wasn't a drop of blood on it. All the blood was evaporated and even the surrounding area didn't have any blood. Golden flames flying up and down while Roja was like a fire wizard and like a beautiful golden flower swept away everything. Roja rushed to the last 10 monsters and killed them. After that, the flame on the sword gradually began to disappear. At this time Hina, who was watching, slowly woke up. She didn't believe what happened, so she slowly asked, Are you really Roja? Who might I be then? Roja directed his eyes at Hina and thought this sister finally come to understand. At this time the fire was still burning. Because it was in the forest, I would be hard to stop it from spreading, and if not contained I will very likely burn the entire island. If the flames spread further they will stop it themselves. But if it's only a little it shouldn't be a problem. Then, let's resume the hunting. Roja's eyes flashed with excitement. They will just have to let the flame continue temporarily and hunt the monster that wanted to escape. At this time the monster in the surrounding was suppressed by the fire and their natural fear of it began to appear. While Roja was like a fire general, all the monster didn't dare to approach him and started to escape. Fly. Seeing this scene, Roja had sand in his mouth, revealed an evil smile as he grabbed his sword and swept out. Hano no Suki body suddenly wrapped in flames and was swept by Roja, and the fire suddenly flew out of the sword and separated into 5 parts toward the 5 monsters that escaped like fireballs. Those monsters were unfortunate because even if they avoided a direct hit they were lit up the next moment. When they tit up, all of them began to roll on the ground, but that still didn't put the fire out. The few monsters that were rolling caused all the bushes in the surrounding area to get caught flames. The stronger monsters directly began to retreat with their tail between their leg and tried to go into the depths of the forest. But how could Roja let his prey escape? Now want to run. Too late now. Roja smiled, and if anyone looked at this smile they will think that who smiled like this will harm neither human nor animals, but that's unfortunate. He still swing his sword. Whiz. Fire projection SFX. The next moment fire projected again from his sword and directly swept in all direction. This time the field was completely in chaos. All the monsters started to flee from the fire. Some were hit by the fire and some even crushed into trees out of panic. The flames burned the forest. Roja was behind the flames. Almost no monster dared to fight him. Even a level 5 monster would also be scared and try to escape. Roja was now holding his sword, slaying every monster who escaped and already killed a large number of them. And Hina, who was with Roja all this time, was looking at Roja with confusion in her eyes and her heart was beating like a drum. Is he really Roja? If it wasn't for the temperature of the flame that could be felt, she would think that this is just a dream. The flames were everywhere as this area seemed to turn into a monstrous sea of flame. Everywhere Roja go, that place will catch fire. Inside the forest, the flame almost dominated over everything. Roja was invincible. Even if a stronger monster appeared it wouldn't have any idea to face him. All it will think about is how will it flee. With the fire sweeping all direction. 2. 5. 10. All monster on his way was killed by Roja and the number kept increasing. Many level 4 monster died. Even if the sword can't cut them, the fire will do. Even a level 5 monster couldn't resist it, so how could a level 4 one resist? Under his sword monsters were beheaded as nothing. This was the island prepared by the marine for the assessment. But Roja is about to turn it into ashes. Wherever he went everything will burn. With Roja raged, killing the fire become bigger and bigger until it caught the attention of other recruits. In another place in the forest, Drake was fighting with a level 5 monster. His clothes were slightly torn in some places while the monster was full of scars. Take this. The next moment Drake's eyes flashed fiercely as he waved his weapons. Bang. Drake flew out after the exchange, but his weapons made another scar in the body of that monster. It was slightly difficult for Drake to behead a level 5 monster. After a breath, he went beside the dead corpse and said, I killed this level 5 monster without using that. It seems that this assessment isn't difficult for me. Drake nodded his head and was ready to continue his hunting. Suddenly the look on his face changed and turned to look at the other direction. You can see that the forest in that direction seems to turn red gradually. Is this fire? Drake's eyes showed a trace of surprise. When he saw such a large piece of the forest was burning and there wasn't any sign of it being suppressed, Drake's face gradually became ugly. It seemed that all the forest will be swallowed by the fire. Such a big fire. I think this isn't just simple to resist and probably even affected the assessment. How did this huge forest suddenly caught fire? Another place in the forest. A few people teamed to attack a level 4 monster. After struggling for a while they finally beheaded it. It's indeed a level 4 monster. That was really dangerous. Can we still kill more? One person with blood and scars tried to smile, but in the next moment, the shock was drawn on his face. When the other saw that, they also had strange looks on their faces and turned around to see what was there, only to see the whole forest in that direction turned red. Did this forest catch fire? Several recruits had the same reaction and looked at each other in shock. Is this part of the test? It's a joke, right? No, it should be an accident. I estimate that the higher-ups will put it down in no time or we can't continue this assessment. Is really strange. How was it lit in the first place? Several recruits wanted to find that out but they didn't dare to go there. They weren't stupid. If they did go they will surely die. Most of the recruit had the same reaction. They all turned to the opposite direction of the fire and left while being scared of the possibility of it catching up to them. The fire spread more and more to the extent that all recruits on the island could see it. Some even couldn't help the feeling of fear invading their heart. If this continued, the assessment probably couldn't continue. The monsters and animals in the forest all started to flee from that area. And the risk to encounter a strong monster doubled for those recruits. So if the marine waited for the fire to envelope the entire forest, then the recruit will receive heavy casualties. In fact, in the monitoring room on the warship, the marines were having a headache. At first, when they saw Roja's power to wield flames they were surprised, and the more he used it the more that surprise turned into shock. And then later when they saw him lit the entire forest the shock turned to disbelief. Roja's fire can be released unlimitedly. Is this a joke? Was this fire really produced with the sword, or was he using a devil fruit ability? Seeing the forest almost turn to ashes, they thought that if this continued then the test will have to forcefully stop. The reason would be because that one of the recruits had more power than this assessment can handle. This would be ridiculous. For the meantime, all the people who were in the monitoring room had a headache. They didn't know how to deal with this. According to reason they had to stop Roja. But the assessment had no restrictions and they didn't say that he couldn't destroy the forest. There is already 5 monitoring equipment burned out. Is this a combat assessment or a setting fire one? At this time all marine they were watching as Roja swept his sword and flames continued to spread all over the place, which made them have an incomparable headache. This assessment was held many times before, but this situation was a first. And now they couldn't even keep up with Roja and didn't know how many points he got already. At this time Z smiled a little and said, "Garp, if this continued for a while longer then you have to stop him. This smelly brat really know how to mess things." After seeing Roja killing a dozen of monsters, Garp was back in his seat eating his rice crackers. Z had black lines on his head. Come to think of it, Garp always caused a mess and his son created even a bigger mess as he created the revolutionary army. As for his nephew, he already made a mess here. I am afraid that if he joined the marine the future will hold many problems. And almost when Z was ready to stop Roja so the test could continue, Roja stopped his killing spree and the fire stopped expanding. Under the control of Roja, the fire that covered 1/10 of the island began to gradually weaken and extinguish. With this scene, all marine in the warship felt relieved. At the same time, they looked at each other. Roja was in the ordinary camp. Is this a joke? He almost destroyed a combat battalion in the assessment and made all the higher-ups here have a headache. And such a monster was still in the ordinary camp. This is simply a joke. This kind of talent should have already been in the elite camp. In the sea of flame. The fire suddenly split apart as if it met the flame's king. Roja hand held his Hanu no Suki. He held his chin with the other hand and said to himself, I estimate that right now those who are watching couldn't stand it anymore and were about to interfere. Thinking to hear Roja mouth formed a smile while the flame wrapping the sword he touched it with his index finger and middle finger gently. Silence. The flames gradually began to dissipate. And the flames around the sword gradually dissipated too. All the sea of flames behind Roja suddenly lagged a bit, then gradually all the flame began to go out. Finally, all the flames were extinguished as if they burned everything and there wasn't something that still could be burned. After that, all you could see is charred earth while there wasn't even a speck with green color. The flames, extinguished. Behind Roja, Hina, who was looking at this scene, couldn't help but murmur while she was shocked. Hina was behind Roja the entire time. Because from the beginning Roja made the ring of fire around the two of them so she couldn't go out even if she wanted to. Roja didn't mind Hina following him. After all, she didn't just follow behind as she attacked from time to time. She used firearms so her range is wider than Roja's. Even if Roja can make the flames fly, they won't fly that far. At this time, even Roja was shocked when the flames covered everything. He wanted to know just how much damage. He didn't expect it to be this bad. Soon he recovered and ignored the shocked Hina. With a thought, the property bar appeared in front of him. The second stage, the ancient sword of the soul +6. Attribute, attack power +75, power +20. Special attributes, all thing in this world, turn to ashes, sword attack have additional fire damage, condition for evolution isn't met. Energy, 70/70ths. I didn't expect that such an easy battle would increase so much energy. Seeing that the energy was full now and he could strengthen again, Roja was excited and didn't hesitate to choose to strengthen now. Only Roja could see the golden light flashing around him. After that once again the property bar appeared before him. The second stage, the ancient sword of the soul +7. Attribute, attack power +80, power +22. Special attributes, all thing in this world, turn to ashes, sword attack have additional fire damage, condition for evolution isn't met. Energy, 0/80ths. I reached +7 already, am not that far from the third stage. Roja looked at the property bar and murmured in his heart. Before when he was still in +6 there was some distance, but now that he hit the +7 he felt that the evolution to the third stage is already in sight. 3 days passed fast. The time for the assessment is finally over. The marine siren resounded all over the island. So all recruits stopped their actions and walked out of the forest. In fact, the number of monsters in the forest was significantly reduced. In the last day, almost all low-leveled monsters disappeared and the other more powerful monsters were hunted by teams of recruits and killed together. Leaving the forest, the recruit could see a hell like an area all burned black. They couldn't help but feel fear. Fortunately it didn't continue ahead. That fire was indeed scary, but how did it lit in the first place? Who knows? Recruits were looking at that burned area and talked while passing by. In fact, although no one was involved in the fire, it still made the difficulty of the assessment increase greatly as all monster feared that fire. They tried to escape from it, so they were like tides of monster everywhere. At this time outside the forest, Roja was the first out of the forest. The second day he occasionally hunted a few monsters and the third day he almost couldn't find any, so he came early to the edge of the forest waiting. Hina wasn't with Roja as she left when Roja extinguished the fire. Her character was strong, she didn't like to rely on others. Outside the forest, Garp was waiting there early. When he saw Roja come out, Garp directly went in front of him and grabbed his shoulder with a grin. Brett, that was quite the mess you made there, but great job. Although Roja made a big mess and affected the whole forest, but Garp himself didn't mind it. He didn't want to be bound by the rules. Roja was strong and even reminded him of his early days. While surrounded by many instructors who looked at Roja with different light. Born to wield the sword and can produce flames with it, so as long as Roja trained a little he will surpass them in no time and most likely would be a vice admiral. So their attitude toward Roja turned 180 degrees. Garp hit Roja on his back and Roja could feel his heart want to go out. Roja's mouth was twitching and looked helplessly at Garp. It hurts. Ha ha ha. Garp was looking embarrassed, but he was long accustomed to Roja's way of talking. Garp lifted his hand and put it on Roja's shoulder and continued to laugh dryly. Roja sighed helplessly. Gradually the recruits began to gradually come out of the forest. Most people had their clothes torn apart. This island made especially for the assessment of the recruits, and there is also a rescue team, but not everyone can return here. After all, this is a forest and being lost or dying is a normal thing, but thanks to the monitoring device those who are lost can be retrieved and the forest will be cleaned thoroughly in half a daytime. This time there is still casualties, but most of them are only injured. There are only 2 cases of death. This is far better than fighting against the pirates. If they really did fight with pirates in this combat assessment, then probably there will be double the casualties. In addition to the heavily injured recruit, the slightly injured one and the injury-free ones have half a day to rest and return to the warship. Soon half a day passed and the warships finally returned to the headquarters. In the square of the Marineford, in addition to some heavily injured recruits and Roja who was taken by Garp, all the other recruits were gathered here. Seeing that the announcement of the results still didn't appear, all the recruits started whispering. How many did you hunt? I killed at least 3 level 3 monsters. As for level 2 and 1, I killed too much, I don't know. I hunted a level 4 monster. Another recruit said in disdain, as each level between monster mean that its strength is many times stronger and many times the score too. This sentence made many of the surrounding recruits surprised and many revealed a trace of envy as they didn't meet any level 2 monster, and even if they did they could only escape. Hey, who do you think will come first? It must be Drake. I heard that he killed a level 5 monster. Hearing this, most recruits breathed cold air. Drake was too strong. Even in the elite camp in a one-on-one situation against a level 5 monster, whining is not necessary. And Drake could kill a level 1 monster alone. His strength is definitively above others. He is absolutely getting into the elite camp. Many people looked at Drake and couldn't help revealing an expression of awe. And at this time footstep could be heard, so all the recruits quieted down and all of them looked up. Scores has been counted. Your actual assessment result will be published now. Led by a Marine's Rear Admiral, and the Marines behind him will pull up the curtain, while the projection phone snail will project the results. All the recruits stared fixedly at the curtain fist to see their own name and see their achievement. Some people were relieved and some weren't willing to look. And after seeing their own result, the recruits started to look up and they still didn't find the name they want to find. Those recruits were surprised. Suddenly a voice came. I will read the top 10 names of the recruits. Standing there, the Rear Admiral said in a serious tone, and then he signaled to the Marines behind him to put down the curtain and the snail and took out a list. The recruits began to hear familiar names. 10th, Saul. 9th, Hugh. Continuously reading names. The recruits didn't seem surprised. Apparently, they expected almost the positions of those names. 4th, Hughes. With the ranking getting higher and higher, the tone of the Rear Admiral started to slow down too, and after he finishes saying a name he paused. Hearing the name Hughes. The recruits seemed to be surprised as they didn't expect him to be 4th. Hughes is strong and should have been able to enter the first 3. It might be a little strange. The Rear Admiral ignored their discussion and his eyes swept in front of the recruits and continued to read. 3rd, Drake. When this name was out, all recruits turned silent. Not only Drake himself, all the recruits looked stunned. Drake is just 3rd place. Drake didn't use all of his strength, but even so, to be in the 3rd place is out of his expectations. Hey, is this a joke? Isn't there a mistake? The recruits rioted. For them, Drake was already recognized as the strongest, and not just the 5th group strongest but all the ordinary camp groups. And now that Drake is ranked 3rd. This is simply a joke. In the crowd, only one person wasn't surprised. It was Hina, with her eyes flashing, and took a deep breath. Only when she did that did she guess what happened. Silence. The Rear Admiral saw that the situation was going out of control, frowned and yelled loudly. His voice was like a thunderbolt which instantly made all the recruits shut up. Still, some had a look of suspicion in their eyes and couldn't believe those results. The Rear Admiral, facing those eyes, he smiled a bit in his heart, although he looked serious. In fact, when he first looked at the result he also couldn't calm down. 2nd, Hina. After this declaration, all the recruit had eyes were full of surprise and couldn't believe this. Hina scored more than Drake. Although Hina is strong. More than Drake. This is not possible, right? Many recruits had an incredible look on their faces. However, in the 5th group other than Drake there is also Hina, and her scoring more than Drake was still a possibility. Just. Who was in the first place then? All the recruits had a name that came to their mind which wasn't on the list and wasn't announced either, but then rejected the idea. Be quiet. The Rear Admiral said again with a serious look on his face, and silence returned again. The first place. Roja. Silence. Dead silence. It was silent that if you dropped a pin you could hear it touch the floor. All the recruits looked at each other. They all suspected that they didn't hear right and wanted to confirm. Then in the next moment, the square finally broke out and couldn't be suppressed. This is a Fu*King joke. What is this ranking? First place is Roja, the weakest rookie. Even if he's the nephew of Vice Admiral Garp, this is just unauthorized tampering with the results. It's too much. This is just too much. All the recruit almost were outraged. Roja used his relationships and getting hold of the third or fourth, even the second place is still considered, but getting the first place like that is a bit too much. Did they take the recruits for idiots? Roja was always last in any exercise and in this assessment he ranked first. Give me quiet. This ranking doesn't have any problem. Be quiet now. The rear admiral already expected this but still snapped at them. But this time many recruits under anger began to contradict him. Who is it that put him in the first place? This Roja relied on his relationship with Vice Admiral Garp to get that place, and you could only open an eye and close the other like you didn't see a thing. You want us to shut up? Hearing those words, the rear admiral became angry and yelled. All the square shook like an earthquake and all the recruits had their eardrums humming. Finally, the scene calmed a bit. Is that what you say to your superior? Those people who just talked come out now. Cass * looked angrily at the group of recruits, but this time no one answered. Everyone looked at each other and no one stood up. Note, Cass is the rear admiral. Finally we know his name. I wouldn't have to repeat the rear admiral anymore. Although they were angry, they knew that standing up now would lead to unforeseen consequences. Cass saw that no one stood up. He wasn't going to interrogate them. So he said loudly, you doubt the authenticity of this ranking, right? No one spoke, but their eyes spoke in their stead. Well. Then let me inform you, because of some unexpected reasons, this time assessments will not lead to the promotion to the elite camp, but a month later there will be a competition. The selection into the elite camp is after that competition. This was a war-based assessment, so there wasn't any favoritism in the result, as it wouldn't lead to anything. So prepare well for next month. After Cass said all this, the recruits finally calmed down a little. Drake frowned, but his face once again regained its calmness. A competition-based assessment. Since it's people against people and they all could watch, there won't be any behind-the-scene operations. Who is the strongest we will know in that competition. Have you calmed down now? So now go break a sweat and come to train tomorrow. After that, seeing the recruits staying quiet, Cass turned around to leave. After Cass left, the square continued to be quiet for a moment and all the recruits gave each other a glance and finally relaxed. I did not expect that a month later we will hold a competition. It is estimated that this time someone tempered too much with the result, so they couldn't help but organize a competition. Since it's a competition-based assessment, it's certainly possible, and even more, that guy couldn't possibly get the first rank without them tampering with the results. Recruits continued talking to each other while sneering. Hina listening to those talking. She didn't get angry, but her mouth raised slightly to form a smile and in her eyes light flashed. A competition-based assessment would be interesting. Until that day, Hina is looking forward to it. In her mind, Roja flashed with his flames, and behind him is that monstrous sea of flames, while she couldn't help forming a smile on her lips. After the end of the assessment, Roja directly returned to the courtyard. He is not interested in the result or the ranking. It's not that he is completely indifferent about fame and fortune like a saint, but he could guess the ranking already. Moreover, this is just a common camp ranking test. There wasn't anything worthy to care about. At this time, Roja was sitting cross-legged with Hanonosuke on his knees. This time in the assessment he was unstoppable and killed most of the monsters, but he didn't let all this get into his head. Also, he was able to show that much because the environment was suitable for his ability. If it was an open place with his current power, he can't do much. Of course, those things didn't make him feel bad, but in his heart, he was more concerned about his battle power. For example, he didn't have a special move and his swordsmanship depended only on his flames. All he could do is swing the sword around. Ordinary pirates are no problem, but if he faced a strong foe he would easily avoid the flames. A special move is very important. My current powers reside in the flames and I only have 2 techniques. Roja recalled the assessment and concluded. Create. The most basic swing that will produce flames. Fire sword, torch. This trick half attack half defense move. It will produce flames around him and block the enemy from escaping or from attacking. The simple explanation is that the cremate is had high DMG output but was simple to evade, and the torch was strong ability to block but the output isn't that strong, so both have merit and demerit. And the other moves can be seen as an extension of those 2, like the flame bomb and so on. In addition to those 2 technique using his flames ability, there isn't any other technique as he is a complete beginner at using the sword. This is the forest environment. I took advantage of that and killed as many monsters as I found, but still fighting techniques are a must and I have to learn some quickly. That month of training was used to improve his physical strength and Garp didn't show him any fighting techniques. But now he no longer had to use all his time in physical training but can take some to sharpen his fighting power and swordplay. But then a thought emerged in his mind and he became helpless. If I need to train, then I will have to fight against someone, and that someone would be Garp, but he probably can't control his strength. The more he thought about it, the more black lines appear over his head. Think. Roja tried to think of a way that would spare him that abuse, and suddenly his room was opened. Garp, please don't barge in without knocking on the door. Roja looked at Garp, who just entered without knocking, with more black line appearing over his head. It's best to learn as soon as possible. His heart helpless, Roja looked at Garp and asked, what is it? What's so important? Garp crossed his hands on his chest and said, because I wanted to give you a surprise. Roja almost fell down. Fortunately, he was accustomed to Garp's way of doing things. Because your score was outrageous and your actions affected the whole assessment results and other things. So they will not judge all the recruits based on this assessment, so there won't be anyone getting into the elite camp after this assessment. Garp, standing in front of Roja, continued to say, so a month later a competition-based assessment will be held. Roja was already Z student anyway, as he was Garp nephew, so he didn't care much about the elite selection. After saying this, Garp suddenly caught his hair as if he forgot to mention something. What? Is there something else? As for Garp, he suddenly put his hand into his pocket and passed a book to Roja. This is for you. Roja was listening for a long time as he didn't care about the assessment or the selection, so he was about to lose interest. All of a sudden Garp threw a book at his. His eyes flashed with light. Roja caught the book hurriedly. Garp saw Roja hurrying to catch the book, so he smiled and turned away leave Roja's room. Roja took this unknown book. He thought about Garp saying he will give him a surprise. Could this book be the surprise? This is really a surprise. This book was compiled after looking at all the sword-related books in the marine and brought out the essence of swordplay. This kind of book probably is a secret book from the collection of the marine, and even strong swordsmen couldn't comprehend it, and look at the information within this was only a part of it. Garp himself wasn't proficient in using swords, but that didn't mean that he can't teach it. And with his position in the marine, he could access all kind of information. And this information is what Roja need right now. For Roja, the sooner he gets stronger and uses more power from the fire the better, and he will become more powerful in swordplay faster as he got the sword of the soul. This book was the essence of the sword. Although it is a summary, there are much more powerful things he can't use yet. Roja directly skipped what he know and went to the part where his need resides. Roja now can only be regarded as an average swordsman despite the additional fire damage, but still cannot be called a real swordmaster. The book pointed out the difference between a swordsman and a swordmaster. The swordmaster is a realm as well as a state of mind. That ordinary swordsman that want to become swordmasters has to comprehend the rhythm of everything state, which is the most basic state for a swordmaster. Being familiar with the original story, the rhythm of everything, which was shown when Zoro was fighting Das Bones, who had the Supa no Mi and could only defeat him through comprehending that state. For a swordmaster, using even a rusty iron sword would let him cut steel, which is impossible for an ordinary swordsman. It would be easy for Roja to remember the plot of the original story, but in order to figure out how to use the rhythm of everything, he would have to spend a lot of energy. However, this book contains the essence of the sword, and the rhythm of everything was explained clearly. The word rhythm of everything sound extremely complicated, but if we use another word to describe this state and make it simple, that would be focus. Yes, it's such a simple thing, but even if it sounds simple, it's still very difficult to learn. For ordinary people to completely concentrate without any distraction and focus on just a single object would be hard. But when they could do it, then that would give birth to a very different feeling. This is the so-called rhythm of everything. In a state of absolute focus on the sword and absolute focus on the object to cut would reveal a different kind of power from the same strike. Roja looked at the sword while remembering the word from the book. The book was compiled from all the books of the marine database. There must be numerous people who did read and found it easy to understand. But understanding it is something and executing it is something else, as it's hard to concentrate without getting distracted by anything. Many swordsmen after several years or even decade of continuous training could finally enter this state. This state will be enough to block the road of countless swordsmen. Focus. Roja looked at the content of the book and tried reading it again and closed his eyes after a moment and placed the book to the side. In general, most swordsmen will need to keep swinging the sword countless times until they can concentrate on it without any distractions. But Roja felt that doing it won't be necessary. A heart without distraction. Roja closed his eyes and murmured in his heart and began to adjust his breathing and thought. Roja was different than ordinary people. He died once and come to this world, and his soul could be said to be on a different level than ordinary souls. And with this power, he could approach that state really fast and could control his thought with force. In the beginning, Roja forced his line of thought but still encountered many difficulties as a lot of ideas kept jumping out in his mind and continued to interfere with him. But Roja little by little made those ideas disappear. Gradually, he didn't know when it started, but his heart begins to become focused. In silence, Roja opened his eyes. A pair of clear eyes could be seen. There wasn't even a trace of distraction. Everything between heaven and earth is silent. The only thing he could hear is his own heartbeat. This is a very strange state. This isn't state of a daze, because he could clearly observe his surroundings as he was fully conscious of what he's doing, but there wasn't any complicated thought jumping in his mind. This is the heart without distraction, the completely empty state. After entering this state, Roja's heart was filled with surprise, but he soon calmed down. This is not a normal, focused state but an ethereal state extended from the other. Roja began to try with his mind completely focused on the objects beside him. It seemed faint, but he was able to hear the table, chairs, cups and the ground breathing. Is this that state? Roja suddenly doubted, because this state and the description are somewhat similar. In his heart, an inexplicable feeling arose. This state is the realm of sword masters, and it seems really powerful. This state gives the user a domineering feeling to him. However, Roja couldn't get this feeling from Garp, but he knew that Garp knows this state. It shows that he glimpsed at the first level of the swordmaster realm. Focus. Roja's eyes looked at his sword. He gently pulled Hano no Suki and then picked up a piece of paper and threw it on the air. If I want the sword to cut something, then I cut it. If I don't want the sword to cut something, then it won't cut it. Try it. Roja's mind focused on the piece of paper sliding in the air while holding his sword in his hand. The next moment Roja suddenly waved and a sound burst out through the air with the sharp sword in his hands and hit the paper. The paper wasn't cut. Wanting to cut a plain paper is naturally a simple thing, but wanting to use a sword to hit a paper without cutting it, that was the realm is looking for. This is it. To see his own sword fall on the paper and did not damage it a bit. Roja's eye flashed with a ray of light and got out of the focus state. Is it this simple? He put his sword back into his scabbard. Roja looked at the piece of paper and suddenly shook his head. No, I was in a completely quiet place so I could enter that state. But it won't be easy to maintain this state while in battle. Thinking to hear, Roja's eyes cleared. Sure enough, his way to force out his thought through his soul power is feasible. Want to comprehend this state normally, you will have to train for days and days until you could gradually become one with the sword and finally comprehend and control this state. And another kind of method is this special method Roja used. This method was stated in the book, but most people couldn't use it. Roja was suitable to use that method. Then the next thing is to try and enter this state at will in any place, then it will be stable. It still feels too simple. Understanding what he had to do, he directly began to practice. Roja's practice this time is simple, both his hand on the sword like he was going to swing, but he didn't. He was trying to enter the focus state. Roja thought that he will fully control it a month's time, but to his surprise, his spiritual power was stronger than he imagined. To freely enter the focus state only took him 3 days. This time Garp didn't interfere with Roja's practice, as he knew that he need to choose the road he wants to walk, and after that, he would help him. At the sunset, Roja was holding Hano no Suki in his hand, standing at the end of the courtyard constantly swinging it. There seemed to be a faint glow on the edge of the sword passing through the air. This was the Tobuzangiki realm. Although his body was covered with sweat, Roja's eyes stayed as clear as water as if he didn't feel the muscular pain. At this moment Roja had complete control over his focus state. After waving a few more times he stopped. Now as long as I am willing I can enter and keep this state. Roja looked at his sword while it was deflected into his eyes and suddenly waved the sword, then said. Really, this is completely different. Entering that state brought such a huge difference. After staring at his sword Roja recovered and smiled. His eyes flashed with rays of light and then once again entered the focus state. Holding Hano no Suki in his right hand Roja turned to face the wall then. Wouch! 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 After waving his sword he put it down. Silence. Roja approached the wall. Impressively crisscrossing lines emerged on it. Boom. The same instant the side of the wall collapsed into a large number of stones and scattered into the courtyard. Here in the marine fort, the building material isn't normal stones but very hard stones. A hardness second only to steel and kairoseki, sea stones. And even with such hardness Roja's sword cut it like he was cutting tofu. This is certainly because Hano no Suki is one of the Owazamono sword series but also because Roja mastered the focus state. After all, ordinary people won't be able to cut it even with the best sword in the world. And Roja at this moment, if he encountered another brown back ape, he could break its defense easily. Looking at the collapsed wall, Roja's face showed a satisfied smile and gently put the sword back into its scabbard. At this moment a voice sounded. What's happening? Garp, who was waking up by the sound of the breaking wall, went into the courtyard. He was still sleepy but still got up to take a look. The next moment his sleepiness disappeared without a trace. Garp looked stunned at a large number of stone that was cut neatly by Roja's sword. Roja! What the hell did you do, brat? Just tried the sword. Roja completely mastered the focus state and his mood was rather good, so he looked at Garp with a smile while saying that. Tried the sword. Garp looked at Roja after saying this sentence and stared at him, then said again, you had to cut the wall to test your sword? Why didn't you use other things? Because it looked good. Roja said seriously. Puff. Garp staggered, almost falling, and was about to spit out blood. Mainly because he heard this sentence before, more like he was really familiar with it. Because when he used to fight all kind of destruction would happen, and when someone asked him why he destroyed everything he would say, because it looked good. He didn't expect this result and couldn't respond to Roja. If there is nothing then I am returning to my room. Roja then waved at Garp and then jumped directly to the second floor from the window in his room, then shut the window loudly. Leaving Garp alone in the courtyard. After a while, Garp clutched his head and said, really, this brat learned the wrong way from me. When did he see me destroy my own house? I always destroy other people's houses, why didn't he learn that? Garp said this sentence without shouting, but Roja still could hear him clearly. Puff. Roja, who was drinking water, couldn't help but spray all the water in his mouth. Roja knew that Garo will be angry at him if he destroyed the wall, but still did it. However, he didn't expect such an answer. Destroy someone else's house, what way of thinking was this? Roja didn't just know Garp for a day or two and he was accustomed to his unexpected personality. But he ignored that as Garp always solves the troubles he makes. Now that I mastered the focus state, I need to master the Tobuzangiki. Roja thoughtfully murmured, and all of a sudden he thought about something. Immediately with a thought the property bar appeared before him as he didn't look at it at all those 3 days. The last 3 days Roja focused on controlling the focus state and didn't look at the property bar until today when he could freely control that state did he remember to look at the property bar. Although for 3 days I practiced the focus state, my physical strength didn't fall behind and I should have gained some energy. Roja took a look at the property bar. The second stage, the ancient sword of the soul +7. Attribute, attack power +80, power +22. Special attributes, all things in the world, turn to ashes. Sword attack has additional fire damage, the evolutionary condition isn't met. Improved energy, 146/80. The above still didn't have any change, but when seeing the bottom of the property bar Roja was shocked. The energy not only full but it even had an overflow of more than 60 points. What the F ********? Roja was stunned while looking in a daze at the property bar. He thought about why he had so much energy. Roja thought that in those 3 days he would only get a little bit of energy as he didn't exercise, but to his shock, he got all that energy. Looking at the energy value Roja thought, then he gradually come to a conclusion. I see. So it's like that. He guessed before that the reason fighting increases the energy value faster because fighting help nurtures the potential of the soul. And in those past days, he fully mastered the focus state, which should be counted as a breakthrough in the power of his soul. Therefore the energy shot up as such. That's about it. Roja murmured after looking at the property bar and decided to strengthen the sword of the soul again. Golden light flashed and the property bar changed. The second stage, the ancient sword of the soul +8. Attribute, attack power +85, power +24. Special attributes, all things in the world, turn to ashes, sword attack has additional fire damage, the condition for the evolution isn't met. Energy, 60/90. It was really huge for an increase that happened in 3 days. Not only did he strengthen the sword to be +8 but also was very close to +9. In half a month I should be able to strengthen the sword into +10, but I think I will be like before. I need to meet some kind of condition to make it evolve into the third stage. Roja looked at the property bar and tilted his head with a little thought. Anyway, I still haven't reached it yet, so there is no need to consider it in advance. I will think about it when I reach +10. What's important now is to train and get stronger. After comprehending and controlling the state of focus, Roja strength soared, but he still had much to learn. Garp, the Yonko, the admirals, all of those are much stronger than himself. Roja knew in his head that the power he got now is simply nothing to be at the pinnacle of the sea. There is still a large distance to take, and if he evolves the sword to the third stage he will be a bit closer. Roja reached a threshold after the assessment. The road of swordsmanship is really full of thorns. A strong swordsman is respected. Roja now isn't that strong despite the state that he just learned, he can't be said to be a swordmaster. The power of swordsman is measured by the strength of his Tobu Zangiki and not the focus state. Between a swordsman and a swordmaster is a huge gap. And this strength represents the power of the Tobu Zangiki. Note, look for Tobu Zangiki in One Piece Wiki. A weak Tobu Zangiki can only cut a house. A strong Tobu Zangiki can be earth-shattering. Roja can release a little bit of pressure from his sword with the use of the focus state, but the distance is less than a foot compared to Mihawk, the best swordsman in the world that could cut an iceberg. That gap is not something that can be calculated. With the use of the focus state, he could swing his sword with speed and strength that produce a line of air pressure that is as sharp as sword, and that is Tobu Zangiki. And that line could get stronger with stronger and faster swings. The focus state isn't necessary to produce Tobu Zangiki. However, they are closely linked. If the strength and speed could get a number of 9 and the state of focus a number of 1, then the burst out power would be 9. But if the strength and speed are 5 and the understanding of the focus state is also 5, then the burst of power would be 25. In other words, the two complement each other. But if it's a big Tobu Zangiki, then the strength and speed more decisive factors. That realm is still to for right now. Roja couldn't help remembering the power of Mihawk and become fascinated by that power. Roja hurriedly returned to the book and continued reading from it. Strong swordsman in addition to the Tobu Zangiki also needs the power to produce thing with his swordplay. And that thing is different for every swordsman. The thing they will produce is determined by the path they seek. Some people use speed as the main power because they think that with speed they could defeat any strength-type swordsman. So my additional fire damage was mistaken for producing fire with a sword? Roja heard before that Garp said he is a natural-born warrior, so he also mistook it for a power of producing fire. In the book, many realms of swordsmanship were recorded, but that wasn't. For now, he needs to go at it one step at a time. The next step wasn't far from him. He needs to practice the Tobu Zangiki, and in the book the simplest way to practice it was recorded. That is chopping using weights. And when you reach a speed that ordinary men will know catch the chop with naked eyes, then you succeeded. It's the same way Zoro used to train. At that time the power of Tobu Zangiki will almost double. There is no need for special skills, simple chop and chop and chop again until I succeed. Looking at the sword practicing methods in the book, Roja nodded slightly as he always liked simple and crude methods. If a complex thing can't be simplified, then your road will be hard and complex too. This is Roja's way of thinking. After the courtyard was repaired, Roja began practicing the Tobu Zangiki. And that type of practice compared to the illusory practice of the focus state is more real. Roja chose the simplest way of training from the sword and started practicing. Although it's the simplest way, it's also the most tiring way, because he had to keep doing a single action for an unlimited number of times until his arms turn stiff, lose feeling in them and can't hold the sword anymore. For ordinary people this practice was hell, but for Roja, those people didn't know what hell really is. As he practiced under Garp for a month, this training was easy for him. 1,000 times. 2,000 times. 10,000 times. Roja tirelessly maintained such simple actions. The constant practice continued until he couldn't feel his arms anymore. Only then did he stop for a break, and after the break, he continued the same actions. After 3 days, his action gradually changed as if his muscles and bones chose the way to move. He didn't know when it started, but his body chose the way to exert power to execute a perfect swing and also the way to hold the sword. And every strike turned the exact same as the previous one. It seems that the first stage of sword training is completed, so now for the second stage. After feeling that he completed the first stage of practice that was recorded in the book, Roja murmured in his heart. After a short break, Roja began his second stage practice. In the courtyard, Roja was still swinging his sword. The sword moved very fast, it was almost not possible to see it with naked eyes, and every time he swings there seemed to be 2 swords. Although he only completed the first phase of the training, but the Tobu Zangiki began to take shape already. The range and strength are already incomparable with before. Like Mihawks who could compress air to release a Tobu Zangiki strike that could split an island. That compressed air becomes like real swords. Although Roja could use the Tobu Zangiki now, the compressed air isn't dense enough to be as sharp as Mihawk strikes, and it would dissipate in the air. Wouch! Wouch! As he swung his sword, 2 strikes condensed from the tip of the sword and began to fly. 2 deep cracks appeared in the wall in front of him. Did I do it? Roja's eyes flashed and tried another time. If the sword and the air integrated, then the strength and speed of the strike would also increase. At the beginning, it will be hard. Roja didn't think of it as a one-try success. After all, this practice is about the fundamentals for a swordsman, and understanding of it would require to take it step by step. Wouch! Wouch! And now another 2 strikes cut through the air and make it into the wall and made a slightly more than a moderate deep crack. They integrated for a bit. Wouch! Wouch! Still not enough, again. Roja's courtyard was filled with sword marks. The whole courtyard turned to pieces as if a plowed field. Garp knew about this but still let Roja practice as he liked. He saw Roja was serious about his practice, so he didn't mind. In this way more than half a month passed and only a few days were left for the competition. In the courtyard, Roja was still practicing the same way as before. But Roja's sword strike seemed different somehow. Even if they looked the same way as before, the pressure released every strike was somehow stronger. Roja suddenly heard a sound as the sword in his hand hit something. In the air, a sliver-like energy was projected from the tip of the sword. Suddenly the floor 5 meters away exploded. So I can compress the air 3 times easily, but the 4th time seemed to have flaws. Roja looked at the deep crack that appeared on the floor 5 meters away and nodded slightly. In fact, this practice was just an appearance. The real goal is to strengthen the sword of the soul, as he already reached the 3rd stage. Yes. Roja's soul sword already reached the 3rd stage and crossed the 2nd stage without any difficulties. When Roja strengthened the sword to +10 and then strengthened again after reaching the full value of the energy, he didn't encounter any obstacles. But directly strengthened to the 3rd stage. And the property bar looked like this. The third stage, Smart Sword of the Soul plus 0. Attribute, Attack Power plus 135, Power plus 40, Agility plus 40. Special attributes, all things in the world, turn to ashes, sword attack has additional fire damage, the condition of the evolution is not met. Special attributes, Getsuga Tenshō, can release an arc-shaped red energy attack. Energy, 34/120. Evolving to the third stage brought immense improvement for Roja. Not only did the basic attribute got stronger, there is even a new green one, the agility, and also there is the new blue special attribute, Tenshō Senjutsu. As he strengthened like before, he got the chance to extract a special attribute. When he saw that he got a blue attribute, he got a little bit disappointed, but he didn't think this blue ability would be Getsuga Tenshō. As Ichigo only got this skill from the start to the finish of the series. Seeing this attribute color was blue, he couldn't understand and thought that maybe because this ability wasn't as complex as the other one. He didn't have to use a Shurkai or a Bankai to use Getsuga Tenshō, not like Yamamoto's power. After all, this power is strong without a doubt. Roja quietly tested this ability. When using it, his Tobu Zangiki would be 3 to 4 times more powerful. But the only problem that it uses much energy for every use, so if he executed it several times repeatedly, then he would feel physical and mental fatigue. And other than that, there wasn't a limit. In addition to that, Roja's fire damage range increased by 10 meters. Now Roja's strength is more than double the time when he participated in the assessment. This was a huge change. Roja glanced at the property bar and an idea comes to his mind. I have to continue to compress the air 4 times and master it then 5 times and so on, only then could I have a little bit of strength compared to the strongest of the world. While Roja was ready to continue his practice, he heard the sound of the door being opened. Roja turned around and saw Garp entering the courtyard. Roja, after practicing for about a month, how do you feel? Garp had a finger digging into his nose while his eyes glanced at the ground and saw the deep cracks in the floor. He nodded slightly without letting Roja notice him. After training Roja for a month, Garp didn't stay with him every day. He just returned from a trip. I feel that with this I can plow the arable land with very high efficiency. Roja said this while holding his chin. Cough. Cough. Even if Garp was accustomed to Roja's way of talking, he almost choked after hearing this. Using Tobu Zangiki to plow the land, what the hell is this? Give me a break, Roja. This month's practice yielded good results for you, but don't be proud. In the assessment, you might encounter a few devil fruit users, so you have to be careful when fighting. This month Garp didn't watch Roja practice, but looking at the scars in the ground he could calculate Roja's power, and even with his fire added there would be some strong people in the elite camp that could contend against him. Even in the ordinary camp there should be some who could defeat him. Even so, seeing his power now, Roja's place in the elite camp is already booked. The purpose of the competition isn't to see the strongest of the camp, but it's for Z to be more clear about the power of the recruits and see who is really eligible to enter the elite camp. And after that, he would personally guide them. Devil fruit users. Hearing Garp saying this, Roja looked at him with interest. Although Roja is very familiar with many of the devil fruit's ability, he still didn't see it in front of him after so long from coming to this world. And talking about devil fruit, Roja couldn't help thinking about hockey. So he directly asked Garp. Can you teach me hockey then? Garp thought for a moment then said, well, you do have the basic qualifications to practice hockey, but you will have to enter the elite camp and Z will teach you that. Because there were only a few days from the competition and that obviously not enough for Roja to learn hockey. Even more, Garp said he only had the qualification to learn. So Garp felt that there is no need to force the practice of hockey in those 3 days. Okay. Roja also knew that practicing hockey can't be done in just a day or two. Well, I will adjust myself to the new power in those 3 days then. Garp nodded, then turned around and left the courtyard, leaving Roja alone there. After some time Roja continued his practice. He could compress the air 4 times now, so he will try compressing it 5 times. This kind of training will be harder the more progress you make. If he could compress the air 15 times he will be one of the top swordmen. After a few days. A ray of dawn from the horizon comes over like a golden ripple, it instantly spread through the sky. Roja woke up long ago and was already in the courtyard. Wouch. His hands suddenly waved and a few swords appeared as if fusing together. Whiz. The next moment a silver-white energy burst out from the tip of Roja's sword and made its way to the floor. Reaching the floor, it instantly exploded and made a nearly 7-meter-long crack. So compressing the air 5 times is still somewhat difficult, but now I can perfectly compress the air 4 times. And with this, I can rely on the Tobu Zangiki to cut steel. After seeing the crack caused by the last sword strike, he nodded slightly and returned the sword into its scabbard. Then said to himself, I should probably go, the competition is about to begin. The headquarters training camp contains different types of tests like power testing, speed test, shooting test, and so on. The assessment like the one before is held every quarter or half hour. However, under normal circumstances, the war would be assessed by the instructors, but in a competition-based assessment, they will need more than just the instructors. And also because the recruits will duel against each other, then time for the assessment would take longer too. This type of assessment wasn't held for a long time now. And the elite camp wasn't involved at only the 10 group of the ordinary camp. When Roja came to the camp where the assessment will be held, a large number of recruits were there already. Some were eager, some were in high spirit. Recruits gathered around the square from 3 directions. The fourth one was where the instructors and also the former Admiral Z standing. The Marineford camp didn't train soldiers but trained individuals. The training didn't pay any attention to groups. Z come to observe and select the few that could enter the elite camp from the ordinary camp. And also he is here so he could see the fighting style of each one of those selected, so he could guide them perfectly when they enter the elite camp. The assessment will be held in the square probably. Roja arrived there without drawing attention to himself. Seeing the recruits arrived and were standing in front of the instructors, he slightly nodded then said. It's time, quiet down. Z's voice wasn't that loud, but it sounded in the ears of everyone present there with majesty. So all people looked up. The battle assessment you experienced before is different from before. This time you can challenge anyone who is above you in the ranking from before. Z looked at the audience of recruits and described the assessment rule briefly. Every half a year at least there would be an assessment held. No matter what type of assessment, be it like this one or like the one before it. But this one depended on the assessment before it. As you can challenge anyone above you in the ranking. If the challenger loses, then his ranking will remain the same, but if the challenger wins he will take the loser's place. In this way, if the recruits stop challenging each other then the assessment will end. The restriction is that recruits weren't allowed to use firearms. And the higher ranked recruits can't challenge anyone lower than them in the ranking. The challenger can't be avoided or refused only if the challenged is injured and can't continue fighting. This competition-based assessment is the actual assessment and will depend on the last one. All of you should remember your ranking but will still show the ranking of the whole camp. Now Z ordered someone by the side to project the ranking. The rear general nodded and projected the ranking on the wall of the marine fort. This was the previous ranking and many now want to see exactly who will come first for real this time. As most of the recruit think that the previous assessment results were arranged. The ranking goes like this. First place. Roja. Second place. Hina. Third place. Drake. Fourth place. Kase or Kazan. Roja. Who's that? How did he get first place? Monkey.d. Roja. Monkey.d. The first name is somewhat familiar. Isn't that the same name as Marine Hero Vice Admiral Garp? Seeing this many recruits showed a surprised look. Roja wasn't that famous. He arrived before 3 months. 1 month was spent on the training camp with other recruits and the other 2 months he spent them in his courtyard, so naturally other groups didn't know who Roja was. However, even if those recruits didn't know about him, the recruits from his group were different. Roja can't be ranked first in the whole camp, he can't even rank first in the group. What a joke. That result is too much, the whole camp first, do they think we're blind or something? More and more recruits sneered after looking at the result. This time most of them could only secretly sneer. No one asked any question regarding the assessment, so they immediately started. And many thought that this tempering will be exposed easily. In addition to the ranking of Roja and Hina, there is also a strange thing in the overall ranking, and that is the 5th group had the top 3 rankings but the 4th from that same group was ranked in the 50s. Other than Roja and Hina and Drake, all the other recruits from the same group were outrageously low. I didn't expect my ranking in the camp would be so low. My ranking is also very low. It seemed that the forest fire caused serious damage on our results. Fortunately the fire didn't continue to expand. The instructors should have interfered or else it would have turned much worse. I am still curious to why was there a fire in the forest. After remembering the fire, most of the 5th group showed fear. Even the other groups had heard about this. Noting the 5th group overall performance, they couldn't help but start to gossip. In the crowd, Roja looked at the assessment ranking while holding his chin. It seems some of my score had gone to Hina as she was with me. But even so, I didn't expect Drake to be 3rd place. It seemed that Luffy in the future will have to work hard to be part of the 11 Supernova. In the whole camp Drake was second only to him and Hina even after that slaughter he made. Still, for the entire camp to not stay that far behind made Roja surprised. It seemed that this assessment won't be boring. The ranking from the last assessment has been displayed, so then. Let the competition now begin. Z voice drew the attention of the recruits. And almost as Z finished taking, another voice sounded. Moss, challenge Roja. Someone rushed to challenge Roja. Hearing this, all recruits were stunned for a moment. Because there was no challenge limit and the challenge could not be refused or avoided, you can wait for other people to start the challenge and then challenge them. That will give them the advantage as they challenge someone with less stamina and energy. And now Moss challenged someone just after Z announced the beginning. That was rare. Moreover, he challenged the first ranked in the whole camp. Which made many recruits feel strange because this Moss ranked in the 200s. A 200 ranker challenging the first ranker. So that was really strange. Although the challenge was unreasonable, but it still complied with the rules of this competition. So the rear admiral directly said. The first feel it, Moss and Roja go up. The crowd opened a road for both of them from which they came out. Moss has been thinking of exposing the tempering that happened to make Roja the first ranked recruit. So he directly went and challenged Roja just after Z finished speaking. In fact, he had a little regret after making this decision because even if he won against Roja he can't stay for long on first position. But after getting so far there is no escape already. As long as he could expose Roja then it's fine. Moss and Roja were in the same group, so he knew about Roja's physical strength. I am first to go. The other side of the crowd. Roja stretched lazily. He actually predicted this. And he already guessed as to why Moss challenged him. Since it's like this. It's time to improve my reputation a bit. Out of the crowd Roja come out and stood about 20 meters about from Moss. Someone in the 200s rank challenging the first ranked. Can someone tell me why? Some of the recruits looked at this scene with a strange expression on their faces. They couldn't help rush to ask others. Hey, you don't know. Don't know what? It's like this. Roja got his first rank. As several recruits held Roja in contempt, they couldn't help but expose the truth to others. So the news quickly spread through the crowd. Most of the recruits showed surprise. No wonder there was such a strange situation here. So Roja relied on his relationship and tempered with the result to get first place. This kind of thing even Z couldn't control. But carefully thinking, isn't Garp and Z friends since decades? Is that why he didn't say anything? In any case, many people looked at Roja with disdain now. Although most recruit didn't bother much about it, but some recruit believed it and looked at him with strange eyes. On the arena. Moss looked at Roja and remembered that he couldn't keep up with the group even while running. So he looked at Roja and said with low voice, I advise you directly throw the towel or else. After hearing his word, Roja didn't get angry but looked at him with a smile and said, otherwise what? Humph. Moss said loudly, don't expect me to show mercy. After the instructor announced the beginning, Moss pushed directly at Roja. Moss' weapon was the marine standard sword. Wielding his sword he rooshed at Roja and his suddenly strike fiercely. In the air sharp sound come out it seemed that he will be cut under the sword. However, in front of this attack Roja standed motionlessly, he didn't roosh ahead, didn't retreat and didn't avoid. He only held the hilt of Hano no Suki gently. Silence. In the next moment countless people just saw a red light appear in the hand of Roja like red silk floating in the air. Roja's sword collided with Ma's sword. Roja used only his hand, other than that he didn't move anything else. It was a casual swing like he was playing around. Wouch. From left to right his hand formed a semicircle, and even after meeting Ma's sword his Hano no Suki didn't stop like there was nothing in front of him. It was as if the sword become light and directly swept over. Ding. Half the marine sword was sent flying into the air and made a clatter as it fell to the ground. Ma's sword was directly cut into two. After that all the recruits on the field stayed quiet. With one of the Owazamono series an ordinary sword would seem like I bullied you. Roja glacéed at the broken sword on the floor and he couldn't help but chuckle a bit. Now even with a normal sword he can produce the same effect. This time Moss was at loss. He looked at his hand and saw the broken sword. He didn't expect such situation. He was at loss as he didn't know what to do. And the recruits watching this scene all exposed a stunned look. And asked themselves. What's going on here? Almost as soon as Roja drew his sword Moss's sword was cut in half. Z as well as most of the instructors exposed a look of surprise. Isn't this? One of the instructors looked amazed and couldn't help but murmur, didn't expect that in just 1 month and his swordplay would grow to this extent. Is this the power of a natural swordmaster? A month before at the actual assessment Roja although showing the power of his flame his swordplay was too rough. But now after a month Roja's one strike that cut Moss's sword in half already seemed like flowing water. Apparently he got the first glimpse of the essence of the sword way. On the arena. Roja looked at Moss who lost his sword and was standing there stunned. If your body is stronger than the sword you can continue. The question is, he is. Roja looked at Moss with a smile but coupled with such words suddenly made that smile turn evil. Moss didn't expect those results and couldn't accept them so he held the broken sword and raised it again. But. Not waiting for the sword to come down Roja placed his Hano no Suki on Moss's throat. Bang. The broken sword fell to the ground. Feeling the sword on his throat. Moss' heart tuned cold and didn't dare to move. Finally he completely fell over with his eyes showing surprise. Looking at this scene the instructor directly announced the result after shaking his head. Roja wins. Seeing that the instructor announced the result Roja retracted his sword and returned it into its scabbard also using only one arm while going down from the arena. And those dazed recruits finally woke up now. Moss's sword was directly cut off. If I am not wrong then Roja's sword isn't a normal sword. Even if it's not a normal sword can anyone just cut a steel sword? Many recruits were surprised and looked at half the sword that was on the arena. The cut was very neat, like a mirror it reflected the sun. This wasn't steel against steel this was more like steel equals cut in wood. Even some strong recruit like Drake looking at this scene couldn't help but reveal a surprised look too. Some people remembered what they saw and suddenly murmured. That guy, seeing that he used just one arm. Using two hand would bring more power but still Roja used one and cut Moss's sword in half. What if used two hands? Would he cut Moss into two as well? Many people looked at Roja and saw his dignified eyes, they couldn't help but recognize his strength even if he can't be first place. Those rumors were just nonsense all along. In addition the strong recruits. The most choked and most frightened were the people from the same group as Roja. They just spread that Roja was at the bottom of the fifth group and retaliation came directly to slap their faces. Moss's sword. How can this be? Those who were familiar with Roja's strength had their eyes pop out from the shock. Although Roja didn't come to the training for 2 months but 2 months ago he couldn't complete the most common run and would always be last. 2 months later he could easily defeat Moss. The Roja from now and the one from past have a gap of strength heavens apart. On the other side the recruits who just heard about him from the fifth group sneered. Interesting. So he is at the bottom of the fifth group right? What nonsense. Even if he wasn't first his strength is above most of the recruits. The fifth group are really something to just spread those rumors. Or is it that? Every one of your group is stronger than him. Recruits sneered at the fifth group that spread rumors about Roja and made their faces burn with anger. Some looked with strange eyes and couldn't help but bite the bullet and said, "His not great, it's just his sword is too sharp." Hano no Suki one of the 21 Owazamono series, but even so he just cut a steel sword, not some rotten wood. Next someone recognized Roja's sword and that sentence made the one that talked before stiff. This time it was difficult to step down so he just shouted, "I, Dars, challenge Roja. If he can win against Roja everything will alright." Although Roja's sword is sharp, but as long as he don't face it directly he can win. Because his has more power and more speed than Roja. Even if he has became powerful in those 2 months. I won't be that much different. Yes, that's it. Thinking to hear Dars directly went up to the arena. The recruits didn't think that someone else would challenge Roja just after he finished the fist match. And the challenger although his results are slightly better but his is in the hundreds ranks. Well, the challenges can't be rejected as long as they meet the rules. But if you are challenged consecutively you can choose to rest for 10 minutes before starting the fight. Roja didn't use any force and obviously didn't need to rest. But as the responsible for stating the rules to the recruits the instructor turned his head to Roja and said. Roja, because you were challenged consecutively you have the right to rest for 10 minutes. I don't need to, you can directly start. Roja shrugged his shoulders and went up the arena to play. Seeing this the instructor directly started the match. Roja vs Dars, begin. With the instructor announcing the beginning of the match in the blink of an eye, a sword clash sounded and half a sword flew into the air and then gently came down. Different people but the same outcome. Dars wanted to avoid Roja's sword and strike back but that was his wishful thinking. Would Roja allow him to have the chance? He readied his sword and forced Dars to block his strike then directly cut Dars's sword in half. Next. Roja standing with his sword shouted while still on the arena. For Roja, recruits like Moss and Dars now don't even have the qualification to be practice partner with him. Those two didn't make Roja excited but more like itchy for more action. So Roja didn't retreat from the arena but stayed there holding his sword and waited for the next challenger. At this time, all the recruits that heard Roja say who's next are getting dizzy. What does this mean? Waiting for his next opponent. Although Roja defeated Moss and Dars, those two were in the 200s and 100s ranks. And in the whole camp they weren't strong people at all. Hey, this is interesting. He learned how to cut steel. Isn't there a challenger? Recruits on the strongest side watched Roja but weren't angered, instead they were a bit interested. What, no one want to compete? Or is it, you want to attack together? Roja stood on the arena while glancing at all recruits. This time he decided to test his 1 month's training result. Roja never set his goal in this small marine headquarters. Especially since he have that soul system and still can get more powerful as time pass and as long he can make to the Hei stage of the Sword of the Soul. The Shichibukai, the Yonko, and the Admirals. The strongest in the sea is the road Roja's looking to go. From where he is now there is still a long distance to go, but even if the road is long, step by step he would reach his goal, and this camp in the marine fort is his first step toward that goal. Since he decided on this, he won't sit around and wait to be challenged, but he will make it his way. The recruits at the square heard Roja who's next and some were tempted, and after his scond word they were angry. This is completely not putting them in his eyes. Roja is not Drake, the people recognize that is strong, and although they didn't know how he got into the first rank, but even so with just the power to cut steel he doesn't need to be that arrogant. I challenge you. Immediately there are recruits unable to control their anger and challenged him. This was rare. As the rules state that although people could challenge the same person, that person has the right to rest for 10 minutes, but this Roja didn't need that rest, and this reminded most of the marine here of the time of Garp. It was similar to that time. The instructors had their eyes shining. Third battle. Responsible for hosting the names, the rear admiral with great interest announced the beginning of the match. The third challenger's name is Lohan. He wasn't like the before him as he didn't use the marine sword but a great axe. Since Roja could cut the steel sword, he chose the axe so he can counter Roja and thought he will certainly obtain the advantage. Here I come. This recruit didn't say much nonsense. After saying this he directly raised his axe and waved fiercely. Facing this attack, Roja still didn't retreat or avoid it but gently swept his sword horizontally. This guy. The recruits that saw Roja swing his sword to counter the great axe couldn't help but reveal a touch of shock. Is he crazy? One-handed sword against a great axe. Will he be able to counter? However, instantly all the recruits' face reveal horror and fear on their faces as Roja really did counter the great axe with one-handed sword. Ding! After the sword and the axe crossed and sound of iron hitting iron resounded through the square. Roja didn't cut the axe but the axe flew out of Lohan's hand and was embedded into the floor. And the most important thing is that Roja didn't use any other thing than his hand and put that much pressure that the recruit couldn't continue to hold the axe. This. Does he have that much power? This scene made almost all recruits stare at the same time. And even the other strong recruit like Drake are shocked, especially those who were in the same group as Roja. The expression was somewhat funny. Is this the worst one who couldn't keep up with any recruit? Using one-handed sword to counter and even make a great axe flew out of its wielder's hands. Are you surprised? Roja, still holding his sword, looked at Lohan, who revealed the same expression as the others and couldn't help but smile at him. At this time that smile made most of the recruits shudder as if they were seeing the devil's smile. Wouch! Roja's sword suddenly moved and made the recruit started and Lohan retreated a few steps. This is the strength of Roja. Following the month of practice with Garp of constantly breaking the limit of his body, Roja's strength changed greatly. If that still couldn't match the recruits, then in the second month Roja's arm strength were enhanced by many times, and with the strengthening from the Sword of the Soul. His strength couldn't be small. All those factors made Roja even in terms of strength in the leading position. The people who had more strength than him weren't much. After the recruit retreated, Roja took a step forward and swept his sword. The recruit wasn't awakened from the horror, so when he subconsciously waved his axe to meet Roja's sword. Boom! Sword and axe clashed. The sound wasn't that of metal hitting metal but a very heavy roar. Almost at the same time the recruit holding the axe couldn't hold on anymore and was sent flying. Until now many recruits could understand why Roja cut the sword of Moss and Dars. His arm strength is so powerful and coupled with Hano no Suki cutting steel is completely normal. Before, Moss and Dars had their sword cut off directly so they didn't feel his power, but this recruit was sent flying and finally realized Roja's power. After that he felt his whole arm turn numb. I admit defeat. Understanding the huge gap between their strength, he could no longer continue to fight with Roja and directly through the towel. Third challenge, Roja once again won with that the square caught in a strange silence. That recruit ranking was below 100 but still Roja still made him roll without any resistance. His was strong. Hundreds of recruit who had thought of fighting Roja had their heart turn ice cold and a bucket of cold water was poured over their heads. After a few breaths. I challenge Roja. Finally someone challenged him again. The fourth challenge for Roja, this one's ranking is also below the hundreds but against Roja he still experienced a crushing defeat. 5th, 6th, 7th. Gradually those challenging Roja were in the 50th rank. The recruits used many strategies and weapon. Sword, chain, axe, bat. And even with this variety of weapon appearing, no matter what kind of weapon in the face of Roja's sword didn't have the slightest advantage. Even if they withstood 1 or 2 strikes from him they will still be defeated by Roja, and no one could make Roja use 2 hands. The reason he is using 1 hand to wield the sword is simply because he could. Why would he use 2 hands when he can easily win with only 1? At this time no one was paying attention to other challenges, all their attention was on Roja. Roja didn't need to use his right for a rest and his challengers were rolling one after the other. One sword ko. At this time the recruits, including those from the same group, had an idea flash into their mind. When did he get so strong? Until a while ago they thought that when someone from the 50th rank challenged him he would be easily defeated. But now most people in the camp had their hair rising with when thinking about challenging Roja. About 30 recruits lost with just a few moves from Roja. Even if there is a rear admirale as a referee, but recruits could have been cut and hauled many times under Roja's sword. But there wasn't a single drop of blood after those many fights. Using a single hand to control the sword to such degree. After a swing, a silver-white energy-like thing shot out from the tip of his sword and suddenly a crack opened on the floor. All the recruits turned silent. Eyes are wide open and about to pop out. Tobu Zangiki. Although they are only recruits, but after all there are the headquarters recruits, so knowing something like Tobu Zangiki is normal. And to show such strength they thought that Roja was a monster. Is he a monster? In the ordinary camp of the headquarters, the so-called monster is more powerful than other recruits, so strong that he could just defeat them one with or two strike, and such people are certainly going to enter the elite camp. And how Roja got this powerful, no one, even Hina, knew how he did it in a 2 months' time. Even those at the top 30 couldn't do a thing to him and were defeated with a sword strike. Probably only those in the top 10 could face such a monster. Unfortunately, if not for Drake being here, he would probably be the first in the entire camp. Many people muttered while being choked. At the same time, the marine instructors also exposed a look of shock. How could this be? This much of progress. We underestimated him, just a month and he progressed so much and achieved such a level. And even Z couldn't help but reveal a shocked expression. Before, he already felt that Roja's swordplay has already progressed, but he underestimated him to some extent. Roja's swordplay from a month ago was too rough, but with the fire and the natural terrain he crushed the assessment and came first, but Roja now with a simple swing made one in the top 30 admit defeat. This Roja. He changed so much in 2 months. In the other side, Drake looked at Roja choked. Before, Drake wasn't concerned about Roja, be it in this competition or in the previous assessment. And when Roja cut steel, although paid a little attention to him but not that much. But when Roja defeated all the challengers easily with his sword and even the top 30 were defeated by a simple swing from him, Drake could no longer underestimate Roja. What Drake felt choked about is Roja's growth rate. Just in 2 months' time he turned upside down. This growth rate made even Drake feel horrified. Fortunately his swordmanship and strength are only this much, it won't be much to fear. Drake measured Roja's strength and said in his heart. When Roja defeated the top 30 with a single swing, all the swear fell into a long silence. The top 30 recruits had such a huge gap between them and Roja, so the top 20 also felt that they couldn't do a thing to Roja. For some time no one actually come forward to challenge Roja. What Roja said before seemed really arrogant at first, but they all thought that it's confidence, absolute confidence in his strength. Roja stood in the arena and no one issued a challenge and the square stayed in silence. In the assessment there is no rule that state that they had to face Roja, so the recruit could avoid going against him. Some recruits thought about challenging other people, but others still wanted to see how the situation will develop. Under normal circumstances this kind of battle will start with the weak going against each other, then the strong ones. The middle may appear sometimes, but they won't change that much. However, this competition started with a strange direction from the start because of Roja. At this time the top 10 recruits finally could not continue to watch as Roja swept everyone in the assessment. So you want to start the top 10 battle now? Why not? At last, after the long silence, the battles began again. With one of the sides still being Roja, the other side is the third group strongest, the one ranked 9th, a monster level recruit. Can be ranked in the top 10 even if below Drake. A monster is a monster and also was known in the camp and had a very high popularity. When the recruits saw him they all become excited. It's him. The third group strongest. 9th in the ranking. If Roja want to win then it will be very hard. Yes, although Roja is strong, his opponent this time is one of the top 10. All of the recruits looked excited and were looking forward to this battle. And compared to the recruits, the marine instructors with Z understood Roja more deeply. Those recruits didn't know about Roja's power, they didn't know about the flame sword. And that power wasn't exposed yet. Roja's swordmanship is deep, probably other than Drake there is no one who could be his opponent. I wonder if he could win against Drake. Probably not, even if Roja still got his flame sword. Drake didn't use his full strength either. With their strength they would be in the top of the elite camp already. Several instructors looked at the arena and began their talk. And now Roja looked at his opponent's sword and noticed that it's not one of the marine standard sword but probably one of the Ryu Wazamono, or like his one of the O Wazamono sword series. Roja and that recruit crossed sword and the collision issued a crisp metallic sound and bursts of spark produced by the collision of the two. This is the first time Roja faced someone using a sword and didn't cut or damage his sword in the first. This weapon wasn't made by ordinary materials. Roja could tell this after the first glimpse. Finally a decent opponent. Facing this Roja didn't feel fear, instead he smiled and become excited. Sword sweep. At this time Roja found it different to attack a moving opponent with Tobu Zangiki, as it's harder than the practice. And that's because in the practice he attack a fixed unmovable target, but in a real battle the enemy will not stand there to be living target. So his strength isn't as strong as when practiced. In fact Roja wasn't surprised because of that. A fight is different than practice. A fight would let him truly master his power. Wouch. A for a sword swing, a half-moon shaped energy shot out horizontally. In the face of this the recruit looked calm and he also swinged his sword, which also produced a weak invisible energy. The two energies collided in the air and a friction sound with the air then exploded and some energy hit the surrounding area. The recruit's new clothes had some paces cut by the energy. While Roja was standing there without a scratch. Come again. Roja used simple swordplay and didn't create any move. So his swordplay didn't have any special move, just straightforward swordsmanship. Ding. Two sword energy collided again and this time waves of strong wind hit the crowd in all directions. Under Roja's sword strike, although he could receive them, still his hands are numb. He didn't expect Roja's strength to have reached this extent. In this type of swordsmanship, strength is the key for winning. Like how Zoro trained his arm strength from an early age from the beginning of the plot. He could lift a house full of people using his arm strength. So even when he didn't use the focus state his strength was much more powerful. Now Roja's strength maybe didn't reach that level yet, but he did comprehend the focus state. Ding ding ding. Roja's swordplay was extremely simple. There wasn't any fancy moves, all he got are simple sword swings. And even so his opponent couldn't continue to receive his strike and wanted to avoid them now. But contrary to his expectation, Roja's sword speed was also very fast. There was no chance for him to avoid and was forced into direct confrontation. With continuous fighting, Roja gradually adapted to real combat and his swings become more and more powerful and neared the power he exerted when practicing. Ding ding ding. Roja used more and more energy strike. That recruit was unable to stand still, and with every sword he was forced to retreat while Roja stepped forward. Ding. Finally, after this last strike, the man could no longer hold his sword as his hands became completely numb and Roja directly made his sword fly directly to the side. I lost. This recruit didn't think much and directly admitted his defeat and turned down and got out of the arena. This scene made all recruit feel numb. Roja's continuous victory made them feel numb. After a moment someone reacted. Even the one ranked 9th is defeated. Moreover, he was thoroughly defeated. In the whole fight he failed to counterattack even once and lastly was defeated. Although he didn't win with just a swing, but anyone can see how obvious the gap between them was. Isn't this guy's strength close to Drake? Another one from the top 10 recruits looked at the arena calmly, took a deep breath and decided to fight. As the fight began, the two of them exchanged about 10 blows, then the new recruit was defeated. That was the 7th ranked in the whole camp. At their level, most recruits are arrogant. Even if Roja is stronger than them and they can't win against him, they will still challenge him to a fight. As not being able to win is one thing and being afraid of fight is another thing. The results is naturally all of them were defeated by Roja. Some of them revealed the power of devil fruit but still got defeated under Roja's sword. Many recruits were shocked. Roja from beginning to here didn't have any rest, but he seemed tireless as he continuously took all challenges and still won all of them. Strong. He was too strong. Is this still Roja? Who else? Roja, after defeating another recruit, held his sword while standing on the field and said. Obviously very arrogant word, but saying those words now didn't seem a bit arrogant, but all of them felt that this is normal. The audience stayed silent. At this moment Roja, while standing on the arena, seemed to have invisible power. All the recruits, when their eyes meet with Roja's, they all would bow their head down. Now no one questioned Roja's strength, and while looking at Roja's eyes it brings in them a sense of fear. In this world the strong are respected, so Roja exposing his power, all people will respect him. Some people were looking at another position as if waiting for something. Those people were looking at Drake. Roja, last challenger, was the 4th ranked recruit. So only 2 people left, Drake and Hina. Most people didn't consider Hina's power and didn't think that she's stronger than Drake. So the only fight left is Roja versus Drake. Gradually almost all recruits' eyes were looking at Drake. Even the marine instructors were looking at him too. At this moment, Drake and Roja become the center of attention of everyone present there. All the recruits saw that Drake didn't have any idea to avoid the fight as he took his weapon and started to walk to the arena. When the recruits saw this, they made way for him. Looking at this scene, most took a deep breath. Didn't expect that the person qualified to challenge Drake would be Roja. Roja and Drake were from the 5th group. Watching the scene where Roja and Drake faced each other, they couldn't believe that Roja would be able to reach this step. There is no doubt that Roja defeated almost everyone from the ordinary camp and was the only one qualified to challenge Drake. At this time an idea emerged in someone's mind. Will Drake also be defeated? This idea appeared in the minds of many people and they couldn't help but pinch themselves. Although Roja was strong enough to defeat most of the ordinary camp, but compared to Drake there is still a gap between their strength. But although those recruits comforted themselves with saying that Roja will not win against Drake, but this idea kept flashing on their minds. Roja sweeping the entire camp made a strong impression in their mind without them knowing. You're strong. Drake come into the arena. Standing in front of Roja and calmly said, your growth speed is fastest growth I have ever seen, and if this keep up in a few months you will be able to exceed me. Oh. When Roja heard Drake's word, he looked at him with a smile and said, so your meaning is? Drake shook his head and said, let's say that it's useless to fight against me. Roja swept through the entire camp today, so Drake didn't think that his words would make Roja throw in the towel. The actual assessment isn't about winning, but all of it was so that the instructor could observe the power of the recruits, especially who are soon to be in the elite camp. Now with Roja's new power, Drake thought that Roja would be a suitable opponent for him. Hearing those words, Roja was calm. Suddenly waved his hand and an energy in the shape of a crescent moon shot out toward Drake. Wouch! Drake, who was in front of Roja, used 2 weapons, and they were a one-handed sword and strange-looking 4-edged axe. ZZ. In the face of Roja's sword energy, Drake put his sword and axe calmly in front of himself, and that energy collided with Drake's weapon as he staggered, which made a metal friction sound, and finally the energy collapsed away. This is really shocking, no wonder they couldn't stop it. After catching Roja's strike, Drake said calmly as he could only roughly determine Roja's strength, but he didn't think it was this strong. But although it was strong, he thought that it's only to this degree, not much. Drake secretly shook his head. Suddenly his head lowered down a little, and while holding his weapon tightly he rushed toward Roja directly. His weapon directly waved at Roja. Try defending this. Seeing Drake easily defend against his full power strike and also launched a counterattack toward him. Roja was calm as if he expected this already. Ding. Ding. Drake used his weapon to attack Roja without a rest. He attacked continuously without leaving Roja New York time to breath. Roja's hand holding his sword while defending against Drake suddenly stepped back and a silver crescent moon-shaped energy shot out again. Whiz. This time Drake didn't directly defend against, but he stepped sideways and continued his attack. Ding ding. The sound of metal hitting metal sounded endlessly. From time to time a sharp silver energy would be released and meet the ground, drawing a deep crack into it. After fighting a little, the battle as if reached its most intense moment. All the recruits were dazzled. I didn't expect Roja to be evenly matched with Drake. No, Roja should be weaker. He can't attack as much as Drake, he can only defend. Roja again brought surprise to all recruit in the camp, but they also showed a slight regret. For Roja's strength is still lower than Drake, although he is very admirable, but unfortunately the one to lose probably would be Roja. They could only curse his fate. In the arena, Roja was holding his sword. In the face of Drake's storm-like attacks, Roja simply parried those attacks and attacked with his own Tobu Zangiki, releasing compressed air sharp as a sword that is Tobu Zangiki. Ding! Drake didn't care in the face of Roja's trick, placed his sword and his axe together in front of him, then Roja's sword collided with Drake's weapons. Sparks scattered and in Drake's sword and four-edged axe cracks began to appear, but they weren't large. His sword and four-edged axe still could hang on. Looking at the cracks appearing, Drake's eye flashed but shook his head. It's a good swordplay, but it's a pity. Although these 2 months you did grow stronger. But the gap between me and you is still too big. 2 months are short, although you closed this gap a little, but still not enough to defeat me. While talking, Drake waved his weapons forward. Whiz! Roja used his sword to parry and retreated a few steps. While looking at Drake, Roja suddenly said with a tone made all the recruits puzzled, "Is 2 months' time really short?" Drake's brows slightly furrowed as he didn't know what Roja meant. In his view, if Roja was given another 2 months and he could maintain his growth speed, then Roja may reach his level, or maybe he would be stronger than Drake himself. Looking at Drake, Roja suddenly chuckled a bit and in his mouth raised a light smile that said, "Do you know, why was I ranked first in the previous assessment? In the previous assessment, if Roja had this kind of power, then he may be able to get better score than Drake, but Roja didn't have this power a month ago, so he simply couldn't. Even if back then he had this strength and was really able to do it. Then how can Hina's be ranked second on the assessment?" This made Drake puzzled. Why? Watching the frown on Drake's face, Roja made an evil smile and didn't speak. He placed Hino no Suki in front of him, then said, "Because of this." After Roja said this, in his eyes golden flames suddenly ignited, which seemed to be derived from his soul. The flame seemed so strong that it could destroy the world. Sword flow, cremate. Boom. Golden flames suddenly came out of Roja's sword and surrounded it, then Roja waved his sword at Drake. Those golden flames condensed into a few meters and made a huge flame sword. At this moment the surrounding air turned hot and all people could feel the temperature rising. What? Drake took some time before he was surprised. The next moment, while watching the flame, his eyes flashed. Flames. He could produce flames. Do you mean that? In the previous assessment, that huge fire in the forest was. When thinking to hear, Drake reacted as the flame come in front of him. Even if he subconsciously wanted to back away, it was too late. The flame swept in front of him and spread out tens of meters around, almost all the arena was filled with flames. Drake could only struggle and try to scatter the flame with his weapon. When the flames appeared, all the recruits couldn't believe their eyes and they were suddenly horrified. Sword. Of flames? Even standing by the side they could feel the heat blowing, and those recruit who were standing near the arena suddenly backed away. Looking at the flame horrified. Suddenly some recruits thought about something and their eyes stared at the field of flame. No. It can't be. The fire in the forest. After the first recruit said this, almost all the recruit remembered the fire in the previous assessment a month ago that affected almost all the 5th group assessment. At this moment, almost like the fire in the forest was in front of them. And now it seems that the fire was caused by Roja. No wonder. No wonder that Roja could get first place in TE assessment. It wasn't tampering with the results or any luck of hunting monsters, he just lit up almost half the forest, killing so much monsters. Some recruit wanted to understand what's happening, but they seemed as if struck by lightning, their mind was blank. Other recruits, seeing the 5th team reaction, couldn't help but remember the accident in the 5th group assessment. The fire that emerged in the forest. All the recruits were stunned. All this time that seemed so long was only a few breaths' time, and on the field the flames gradually extinguished. Only a certain place was still burning. That place was naturally Drake's place. Suddenly a raging roar sounded from under the fire and a surge of air made the flames scatter around. At the same time a figure jumped and fell far away on the arena. This figure was Drake. At this time Drake's clothes were burned in several places and there was still a little bit of clothes that continued to burn while still on him. Now then, do you still think that 2 months' time is short? Roja said while standing and holding his sword. That sword had flames around its edge while Roja seemed like a god of fire. After getting out of the fire, Drake took a deep breath. Then he checked if there was anything on him that is still on fire. He couldn't help but reveal a lingering fear when thinking about the fire. Fortunately he isn't an ordinary person, or else this fire would have just burned him alive. But even he still had burns in several places. Looking at his clothes that burned, Drake just took them off and threw them on the ground. And now looking at Roja, there wasn't that calm and easygoing attitude from Drake anymore. As only shock was shown on his face. His able to produce fire while wielding the sword. Drake didn't expect Roja to have such a power. Roja was still standing on the arena with his sword in his hand. That sword was enveloped with flames, and then the sword again moved with hot flame projecting out again. Boom. The terrible flame like a red fire dragon once again crashed into Drake. A fearsome heat wave swept in all direction and the recruit couldn't help but retreat again. Whiz. Drake's mind was clear. He knew that he won't be able to counter this attack. Even if he could cut the flame, there was no meaning to it. Because even if he cut it, I will split then reconnect again and swallow him. So in the face of those flames he chose to avoid. However, once he avoided that, another one appeared before him, and as he avoided the second, a third one come at him. Can you release this fire without restriction? Watching every sword strike produce fire, Drake's eyes couldn't help but change. Boom. The next moment that third flame once again swallowed Drake completely. Fire started to stack together and even the marine veteran became scared. He achieved this level. This degree of flame is simply like a devil fruit's ability already. At this time even Z was shocked. If not for Garp telling him that Roja didn't have any fruit ability, he wouldn't have believed that. On the other side, the recruits looked as the flames swallowed Drake had long become shocked. Heat waves swept the audience. The air became hot and intolerable, but still the recruits' back were ice cold as if someone just poured a bucket of ice on top of them. Dra. Drake was swallowed by flames. What a terrifying power. Recruits couldn't help but murmur. Is it finished? Looking at the burning fire, they couldn't see Drake's figure as if he had evaporated due to the flames. However, the next moment. Roar. A loud earth-shattering roar bursted from within the flames and frightening momentum suddenly emerged. All the flame around were blown away. In the flames there was a huge monster. Drake, who transformed into a huge monster, directly came out of the flames. All the people saw what this monster looked like. It was a dinosaur. Ancient Zoan fruit. Dinosaur species. I didn't intend to use this, really I didn't expect you to force me to use this power. From the flames Drake suddenly changed back to semi-human shape. The half-animalized Drake was still holding his weapon whole, his whole body was filled with a very ferocious atmosphere. Looked at Roja, since you forced me to use my devil fruit, this battle is over. Whiz. Drake figure suddenly come out, rushing out of the flame with a speed twice as fast as before. Sure enough, before joining the marine you already ate a devil fruit. Looking at the rushing Drake, Roja's face didn't panic but exposed a thoughtful expression instead. Boom. A huge red flame swept over while it seemed like it will reach the sky. Humph. Seeing the flames in front of him, Drake didn't even avoid it this time. He fiercely waved his weapon and produced a wind gale that torn at the flame. While Drake passed through the flame, some of it touched him, and even with his protection of the ancient dinosaur skin there was traces of burns. Drake suddenly rushed to the front of Roja and waved his axe with a huge force that was falling on Roja. Roja uses the Tobu Zangiki and his Hano no Suki to defend against Drake. Drake in the semi-animal form had tremendous increase in strength, so when the sword and the axe collided he had the advantage as he could withstand Roja's energy strike and flame. Useless when I am in this form, I am much more strong than before, even your flame has no effect on me. Drake once again was enveloped with flame, but even after that a slight burn trace could be seen, and that's all. Drake, who was in the semi-animal shape, uses his increase in attack and defense power to resist against Roja's flame and energy strike. Roja was sent flying, and only when was he in the air did he show an amazed look and couldn't help but exclaim out loud. Oh, Drake was a devil fruit user, and this form isn't that of an ordinary Zoan fruit. Of course not, it should be one of the rare ancient species Zoan fruit. In the half-animal state it brings so much power already. Countless recruits were shocked by Drake's devil fruit. He was already so strong, and now that he is using a devil fruit, how strong does he want to get? Drake hid his strength from the start. Hina looked at the arena while being stunned. She originally thought that with his fire Roja would win. But she didn't think that Drake possessed a devil fruit and once again reversed the situation. On the other side. When Drake used his devil fruit ability, all the marine instructors with Z amongst them did not reveal any shock from Drake transformation. It seems like they already know about his devil fruit. In the Marineford camps not just anyone can enter and mix in. Each and every recruit would have a background check and have a detailed report about him before entering. Finally used. It's really a very rare fruit ability. Even Roja won't be able to resist Drake's strength now. Drake can even use brute force that now are comparable to Roja's strikes. A marine instructor who was looking at the arena commented with a tone that had a bit of praise for Drake and little bit of pity toward Roja. If the battle assessment could be delayed for just a month, then it would have been something else. Now Roja's strength isn't enough as he can't beat Drake with it, also his fire can't hurt Drake that much, so the first one to fall would be certainly Roja. It looked that the result is already obvious. Roja's potential is way stronger, but Drake's strength now in way more powerful than the former. All the people beside him nodded, even Z nodded his head slightly. On the arena. Drake, who is half transformed, had double or more of his strength, so when he waved his sword a strong wind would shoot at the flames and tear them apart. The original 20 or so meter that were made to be an arena now turned to 40 or 50 as all the recruits retreated back fearful of the fire. If it was in a forest you may have won, but in an environment like this it's impossible for you to defeat me. So admit defeat. Drake fiercely wielded his sword at the same time Roja also used his Tobu Zangiki, and when the two collided, Roja's strike was nullified. If this continued, Roja may get seriously injured, and continuing this has no meaning as this is just an assessment, not a life and death battle. No one could understand Roja as he obviously lost the battle but still continued to be Drake's opponent. Some people thought that he didn't want to admit defeat, and some others thought that he would throw the towel soon as there is no meaning to risk his life for a mere test. But in fact, Roja continued because his energy rised faster and faster while he was battling against Drake. In a short while the energy rise by tens of point more than the energy he gained after fighting against all the other recruits together. This ancient species really is something more than double the strength with just half the transformation. Well, time to end this as my arms are already number. Well, it was worth it. I hope there will be more places to increase the energy this fast. Thinking of this while shaking some numbness from his arm, Roja took a deep breath, then his expression became more relaxed while looking at Drake, then said, "Yeah, you're right, it's about to end." When his voice fell, Roja was holding the Hano no Suki and used the most common position to swing a sword. The last blow. Watching this, Drake slightly shook his head as he thought this wasn't necessary as Roja can't really fight against his strength. But he didn't say a thing and put his sword and axe in front of him, then charged at Roja like a storm. He was very fast, almost instantly come to the front of Roja. Looking at Drake in front of him, Roja didn't move, he gently raised his sword and made the most simple and most common swing. A normal action didn't have any profound meaning to it. But when Roja's sword was still up there was a deep quiet, like if all the souls had gathered in his sword, and when the sword come down it was like all those souls were unleashed. Getsuga. Tenshō. Huum. When Roja's sword come down a huge sword energy was shot out. It was of the highest level and in a moment it came in front of Drake. Isn't this sword energy compared to Roja's previous strike is more than double the strength? And it came so fast that instantly it was in front of him, Drake couldn't avoid anymore. What? Seeing the energy about to hit him, his heart suddenly jumped and his eyes revealed a touch of horror. He was more shocked than before about Roja's strength. He didn't know how did Roja use such a terrifying strike, and seeing that he can't dodge he could only grit his teeth and try to face this strike. But the power of Getsuga Tenshō is more than what Drake could imagine. Not just the size of the strike is bigger, even the solidification level as well as the degree of sharpness. It was incomparable to the strikes from before. The sword strike swept everything in its path. Drake in his semi-animal state still couldn't resist this power and his weapons were cut off. After cutting his sword and axe, Getsuga Tenshō still didn't disappear and continued to strike toward Drake. Unstoppable. Drake's eyes revealed his fear. He didn't think that Roja could unleash such a fearsome strike which was more than double of the strike before it. He thought those things in just a short instant, but this moment, the energy already struck his defense with irresistible power and finally defeated his defense and swept him away. A sudden pain spread throughout Drake's body. Am I going to die? At this moment that's all that Drake could think of. He didn't think that a mere battle in the Marineford test would even make him so close to death. Seeing Drake's skin that was as hard as steel or harder couldn't resist Roja's strike and Drake's body was about to be chopped in half. A silhouette appeared beside Drake like it was teleported, then pulled Drake out of the way of Getsuga Tenshō, then used his hand to seize the Getsuga Tenshō and pinched. Wouch! Getsuga Tenshō suddenly bursted into pieces and the energy scattered in all directions which made the ground have many crisscrossing cracks. The silhouette that appeared suddenly was none other than the former admiral of the marine and the new recruit's instructor Z. Z looked at the ground in silence. And then looked at Roja deeply and said. Roja win. Z said that with a deep tone, then turned away to leave the arena. The audience were still in silence. From Roja using his Getsuga Tenshō to when Drake was hit by it and Z saving Drake only took a moment to happen. Many recruit didn't know what happened. In front of them the scene just suddenly changed. But even if they didn't know the details, but the huge energy strike was imprinted in their mind. When Z announced Roja's victory, the recruits were still in shock. Even now they're still absent-minded. Roja was still on the arena observing the deep crack made by his last strike and those numerous cracks which were made by the bursting Getsuga Tenshō due to Z. Drake's weapons were scattered and cut in half. And Drake himself still had blood satins appeared despite Z saving him. While looking at the blood dripping slowly, he made an amazed face. Looking at this scene after a long time, someone woke up from the shock and said. That last strike. Is that his real strength? Drake was very strong and he used a devil fruit which doubled his strength, but he still was beaten by Roja. Not only ordinary recruits, even those in the top 10 had dry mouths. At this time no one knew what to say and no one needed to say a thing as Roja's strength and status was determined without a doubt now. He is the camp's strongest. No one will question the ranking and no one will question the strength of Roja. There's some people who felt fear. Fear that Roja will get them for what they said about him. At the same time Roja defeated Drake above the huge for test 2 lazy figure were standing. One of them showed his interest when he looked at Roja. Mr. Garp's nephew is very good. The one who's speaking was impressively one of the highest figure in the marine. One of the 3 admirals which just praised Roja, Kuzan, also named Aokiji. And standing beside him was another one of the 3. Sakazuki, also known as Akainu. Compared to people great admiration of Garp. Those 2 did hold that much admiration cause of Garp's son who made revolutionary army to go against the marine. Garp's character was easygoing and everyone knew that, and now it seems that Roja also had that same character. And this character was really hated by Akainu. Because maybe someday Roja will betray the marine and then become like Dragon and join his revolutionary army. What is that flame ability? I hope you don't betray the marine, otherwise even if it's one of Garp's family members, I will see it to the end and will not let it go as we did with Dragon. Akaino's face was as cold as ice while looking at Roja, then he turned around and entered his room. Seeing the Akiji eyes slightly flashed but didn't say a thing, he just turned around, shrugged and also entered into his room. When Akainu looked coldly at Roja. He could feel that look and looked up, but he only saw the magnificent tall headquarters fortress. Is it my imagination? Roja slightly shook his head and didn't think more about it as he came down from the arena. Roja's soul is much stronger than ordinary people. So he was very sensitive to a lot of things. Especially the momentum and the will of things such as hostility. Just in that moment Roja could feel some kind of hostility against him. But whether was it an illusion or not he didn't know. As Garp's nephew and Dragon's cousin, many people wanted to deal with him for this matter. And he couldn't think of them one by one. As long as he strengthened his soul sword to the 5th stage, then he could use Yamamoto's Shirkai, and with that he wouldn't fear most people of this world. After leaving the arena, Roja casually went to a corner and with a thought the property bar projected in front of him. The 3rd stage, Smart Sword of the Soul plus 0. Attribute, Attack Power plus 135, Power plus 40, Agility plus 40. Special attributes, all things in the world, turn to ashes, sword attack have additional fire damage, the Kantai-on for evolution isn't met. Special attributes, Getsuga Tenshō, can release a arc-shaped red energy attack. Energy, 82/120. Today's fight had increased the energy by more than 20 point. Seeing that the energy value reached 82 not that far from the next strengthening, Roja nodded. He closed his eyes to recall all the thing he did in today's fights. The bad moves he made that needed him to be careful about. Today's fights made Roja not only improve the energy value but also to get used to real combat and made him able to use the same amount of strength that he used in his training. After Roja came down, the recruits continued the assessment. As to get a better ranking, all recruits started fighting and challenging. Hina didn't keep her 2nd place but was pushed to the 12th rank. Her strength isn't weak, she is the strongest in Group 5 after Roja and Drake. After all the recruits finished their challenge, the assessment was over. In fact, it ended sooner than most of the instructors expected. In those battle there wasn't anyone who had major injuries beside Drake, who couldn't face Roja's Getsuga Tenshō and could have died if not for Z. Seeing that no one is still challenging, Z nodded and announced the end of the assessment, and in accordance with the ranking and performance the top 15 were called. Those 15 recruits would join the elite camp. Roja was first from those 15, followed by Drake and the others. Hina also was one of those 15 recruits. Those that heard their name are to be promoted to the elite camp. Now follow me. Z, after reading the list of the 15 recruit, directly made all of the 15 follow him out of the square. The elite camp training ground and the ordinary camp training ground are completely separate. After joining the elite camp the difference would be huge as they would be training under Z, which might be even better than training under the current admirals themselves. Those who weren't chosen glanced enviously at Roja and the others leaving, and after that under the command of the instructor they dispersed. Z took the 15 recruits all the way into the huge fortress of the Marine Fort. The top level of this huge fortress is the place for the captain commander of all the Marines office, as well as where all those admirals reside, and also the highest level conference room. And all the way down there is the intelligence agencies and so on. In the second floor of the fortress is the Late camp training ground and also Z's office. Roja wasn't here for the first time. He is after all Garp's nephew. He came here several times and even entered the captain commander's office once. Perhaps because Roja's soul is much stronger than ordinary people in front of the fortress didn't feel any kind of oppression. At first Roja could feel a sense of pression coming from Garp, but later on that sense seemed to gradually weaken. The killing intent and oppression from anyone seems useless against him. He didn't know whether he could withstand the Haushiku no Haki or not. All the way to the second floor of the fortress, whenever someone sees Z they will salute him out of respect. Through a few corridors came a wide hall, and this very hall is the famous elite camp. The practice and even the spar are in completely different level from before. As Z entered the hall all the elite recruits stopped what they were doing and saluted Z respectfully. I will probably see familiar faces more than before here. Roja glanced a little at the camp and his eyes flashed with a look of interest. He saw many familiar faces such as Smoker, Ein, and others. There are some that he didn't have impression for, but still found them familiar. Like how Roja and the others were looking at the elite camp members were observing them too. Well, finally newcomers. Teacher Z brought them over, so they should be the newcomers. Some people looked at Roja and the others and chuckled. Another person smiled suddenly and said, don't underestimate them. This time I heard there is some recruit called Drake and he is really strong, not necessarily any of us could win against him. Are you joking? I can't win against a newcomer. Maybe if they all come together. Some recruits in the elite camp smiled, shaking their heads as they didn't believe. Here is where all of you will stay. The things you used to have are all brought here, and from now on you call me Teacher Z. Z turned to the veterans of the elite camp and nodded to them, indicating for them to resume practice. Then he turned to Roja and the others and said. The elite camp is different from the ordinary camp. Here you are the elite of the Marine, although you are still recruits you have officially graduated from the Marine. So there won't only be my special training but also real combat mission. Not training or assessment but a real fight against pirates. These words were very awe-inspiring but also made the atmosphere around them turn serious. After a while Z finally talked again with a bit lower voice and introduced the differences between the elite camp and the ordinary camp, and especially focused on the elite camp's graduation rules. The graduation rules are completely different from the ordinary camp. This graduation isn't made from certain time, but it's an applicable graduation. Whenever you want to graduate you can apply for it. In general. After applying for the graduation there will be an assessment, and as long as they have the strength of a lieutenant commander there won't be a problem. Then they would be ranked based on their graduation assessment. And as long as they pass the assessment, even if did it poorly, they will get the rank of ensign, and if he did a good job then he will be ranked higher, and the highest is lieutenant commander. When to apply for a graduation is up to you, but it can't be more than 3 years. If you have not applied for graduation by then or didn't pass the assessment then you will be forced to graduate and won't be granted any rank, you will just be a normal soldier. Z paused a little and then said lightly. However, from the beginning my elite camp so far never has a case when one became an ordinary soldier, and I hope no one would appear within you. In addition to the difference in the graduation rules and missions, the elite camp has more freedom. So joining the training or not, Z will only care about results. Well, after I briefly introduced the rules of the elite camp to you, I will let you get familiar with the place, and after a while I will call you one by one to give you the type of training suitable for you now. At the same time you could ask me about any problem you had before in your training. After that Z directly left the square and entered a room, leaving behind a row of people. Almost as soon as Z left and Roja and the others were about to walk around and get familiar with the place, they suddenly heard a voice. Hey newcomers. Along the sound a veteran with the name Op Very Good come out in front of them and said. Which one of you is named Drake? Hearing such a voice Drake suddenly frowned but still replied calmly, I am. Is there something you want? Very Good turned to see Drake and looked at him twice, then suddenly chuckled a bit with a bit of provocation, said, you are the strongest in the ordinary camp. So what if you are? Very Good was dissatisfied as some of his friends said that it's possible for them to lose against Drake and came to provoke them. Moreover, in his view Roja and the other didn't receive Teacher Z guidance like him. So how could any one of them be his opponent? Okay. Hearing Very Good saying that, Drake's face was a little bit sorry but also indifferent, then he said, sorry, I am not the strongest. Drake was injured by Roja's Getsuga Tenshō. Although he didn't receive a major injury due to Z saving him, but still his body was wrapped in bondage. When Very Good saw Drake's bondage he frowned a little, then said, you're not the strongest. Then who is it? This sentence was more serious than Drake's provocation. As if he's saying you're not the strongest, then go away, I will find the strongest. Even with Drake's tolerance his face couldn't help but get cold. Still he came here today, so he didn't want to have a conflict with those veterans in his first day. So he didn't say a thing. However, this sentence didn't just provoke Drake but also everyone beside him. Someone could endure and said. Are you looking down on us? Oh, don't misunderstand. I am only looking for the strongest amongst you for a contest, so if you're not, step aside. Very Good laughed and his eyes exposed his contempt. As the elite camp veterans followed Z training program and had experienced real combat and personally killed pirates. So when facing those greenhorns Very Good will naturally have some contempt. You are too arrogant. Very Good said this sentence and someone beside Drake couldn't endure anymore. Even if it's not Drake or Roja, he's still one of the strongest in the ordinary camp. So the recruit under his anger directed a blow to Very Good. Bang! Surprisingly in the face of the recruit fist, Very Good just waved his hand casually, then with his palm catched that fist. Do you call this strength? Are you still drinking your mother's milk? Very good scorned then also punched the recruit. In the elite camp he could be classified in the mid-ranking veterans. Some veterans thought that those newcomers should not make Very Good get serious or it will be trouble. Boom. Under Very Good's fist the recruit was sent flying even after he tried to block. The power gap was too big. This scene suddenly made the newcomers horrified. As they thought that other than Drake and Roja no one among them could match up against Very Good. A casual person from the elite camp had such extraordinary power. I know that you are the top figure of the ordinary camp, even some call you monsters. But don't forget this, everyone here is in fact a monster too. And we have long been under Teacher Z's special training and experienced a number of bloody real life and death battles. So don't compare yourself to us. You bunch are just rookies. Very Good continued talking for some time and many from the elite camp gathered around. Yo, Very Good started bullying newcomers. Don't do it too much or teacher will get angry. The veterans were laughing and joking around with lively looks. Very Good exposed his power and made most recruit horrified and Drake was looking coldly at him. This guy's power and the power he had when using his devil fruit ability are almost the same. Well, who was the one that said these little rookies can defeat us? I will beat you until your face turn into a pig face. Very Good pointer at someone in the crowd then turned around again to Roja and the others and said, hey, in the end who is the strongest among you? Originally the recruits were very angry at his provocation but when they heard his sentence this time they couldn't help but subconsciously turn around and look at Roja. Although Very Good didn't know Roja but seeing all the recruits looking at him he knew that Roja's is the strongest here so he said, you're the strongest. Well, you don't have to worry if you don't dare to fight with me I am not going to embarrass you. Are you sure you want to play with me? Roja was too lazy to care about his provocation. In fact in face of any provocation he could stay calm like a saint. If he said all that then. Let's beat him up. I will let you have 3 strike without me striking back. Very Good grunted looking down at Roja at the same time indicated to the people around him to leave. However as the veterans were retreating a cold sound was heard. Very good, I make you stronger and that how you use that power. Z. Teacher Z. If you have so much strength then return to your practice. Yes yes. Before a moment he was extremely arrogant like a proud cock but when he saw Z Very Good became like a chicken nodding submissively. On the other side Roja who was ready to pull out his sword shrugged then he took his hand away from the hilt of his sword. But. Challenges in the elite camp is a normal thing and anyone can challenge others at any time. So Z didn't punish Very Good but turned toward the new recruits and said. The first one Roja come with me. Yes. Roja had long wanted practice hockey and that now was possible as Z will guide him in that aspect. Roja had long been urgent to learn hockey. After nodding Roja directly followed behind Z. Z with Roja entered a small looking practice field at the side of the square and closed the door. Watching Z and Roja entering the room and disappearing from sight, Very Good was relieved and immediately there was someone who jokingly said to him. Very good, even if you can bully newcomer you have to watch out for teacher as he will surely reprimand you. I still didn't expect that Drake wasn't the strongest but that Roja was. Before I heard that Drake was definitively the strongest in the ordinary camp. The one taking looked at Very Good and said while laughing, fortunately that Roja didn't fight with you. If you did maybe you wouldn't be his opponent. Nonsense. Very Good grunted and said with disdain, just coming to our elite camp and want win against me. Do you think is that Smoker? Hearing Very Good mention Smoker all of them smiled as like he said Smoker swept his way just as he entered the elite camp until he was the strongest in the camp. In fact most of those veterans thought the same way as Very Good. They didn't think that Roja could win against Very Good. After all Very Good wasn't at the bottom of the camp but was in the middle and those new recruits are too tender to fight against him. In the small room. There was only 2 people present, Roja and Z. Garp should have taught you a lot like breaking the limit of the body to dig the potential of the human body. Standing in front of Roja, Z smiled while talking. Hearing his words Roja nodded slightly. Don't think that with what Garp teached you don't have anything more to learn. Well don't compare my training with that old lady's training, Z looked at Roja with a hee-hee smile. Compared to Garp's training Z training was truly more powerful. After all the current admirals are his disciples. And Roja still remembered some of Garp's words, the original training of Luffy like pushing down a cliff, tied in a balloon and rose to the sky and more. Fortunately Roja didn't experience that. Z-Way is simply breaking the body limit to dig the hidden potential of the body using various methods that were more directed to the essence. It's not that Garp's methods are wrong but Z's methods are more in order and had much more simple explanation that Roja could understand clearly. As a result Z have to simply point some advice to Roja to practice more perfectly. Even so those advice won't be a small matter to Roja's practice. After Z finished his advice Roja talked with him about various things that he remembered, then he took the initiative to talk about hockey. In fact Roja already know what is hockey but he didn't know how to practice it. In this world there was 3 types of hockey. Kanbunchaku hockey, which grants users a 6th sense of the world around them and limited precognitive abilities. Busashoku hockey, which allows the user to use their spirit as armor to defend against attacks or to make their own attacks more potent, and finally Houshiku hockey, a rare type of hockey only 1 in a million can use which grants the user the ability to overpower the will of others. Hearing Roja mentioning hockey, Z's eyes flashed. In his view Roja was qualified to learn hockey already. So Z would simply tell Roja the methods of training in hockey. Of course. Hockey practice isn't something one can learn instantly. He will need to train step by step with Z's personal guidance. Roja is talented and moreover he is Garp's nephew so Z didn't mind spending some time and energy to guide him. After talking a bit about hockey, Z paused a bit so that Roja could remember and understand what he said then continued to speak. Before learning hockey I suggest you learn about the Marine 6 powers. Even if you will focus on swordsmanship Soru and Rankyaku will help you greatly for example. After Z said that which made Roja thought about it deeply, Soru was a high-speed movement technique and he could use it to step on the air. Almost all people can practice this in the elite camp. Moreover, the 6 powers of the marine are not for ordinary people. It was almost like practicing hockey. The two need an unhuman physical strength. At this time Roja was qualified to practice the two. With his current power Roja thought that at least he have a lieutenant strength right now. The division of strength in this world is chaotic, and in order for Roja to measure his strength clearly he will just follow the marine ranks as a standard. Those below the rank of lieutenant are of no significance. Even the difference between the marine lieutenants is large. There were many ranks in the marine like admiral, vice admiral, rear admiral. And the power gap between vice admiral and rear admiral is huge, like how the gap between vice admiral and admiral is, except for Garp of course. And the gap will shrink as the ranks becomes lower. There are some real powerful pirates like the 4 Yonko. Below them there is Marco of the Whitebeard Pirates, Big Mom's 4 stars, as well as many others. You can compare the marine admirals to the 4 Yonko. Roja thought some more about the story. For him it was hard to determine the strength of the 4 Yonko. Whatever if they could win against the admirals or not, Roja have to determine that himself. Roja threw this thought in the back of his head. That kind of power is still distant from the current him. But he should understand his place so he won't be arrogant. Although I'm talking simply so, with your talent you probably already understand it all, but if there is something you're not clear about you could ask. Z simplified the 6 powers of the marine and the way to practice. Seeing that Roja's face didn't seem to have any kind of confusion, Z slightly nodded. Roja did understand it. As someone who did watch One Piece in his previous world, and his soul is stranger as well, so his understanding ability is out of the ordinary, coupled with how Z simplified everything almost without thinking he could understand. Although he understood everything he still got some questions. These questions weren't about the 6 powers but were about the practice details. He already asked Garp before but Garp's answer was vague. Z heard Roja's question and after a little though he answered him clearly, which made Roja's eyes flash from time to time. After answering his question Z watched Roja without revealing any impatient look and continued to ask. Do you still have any more questions? I don't for the time being. Thanks teacher. Roja got every answer to the questions that Garp answered vaguely from Z, and those answers were very clear, so saying this Roja was really sincere in his thanks. It's my duty as your teacher. You don't have to thank me. Z naturally discerned Roja's sincere tone, so he directed a smile at Roja and said, well, since there is no more problems then you go first and call Drake over. Yes. Roja nodded his head and left the small practice room. And just when he came out to the hall, Roja could see that the veterans of the elite camp and Drake and the others were together. It seemed that after Z left some people still wanted to beat the newcomers. In fact, in the elite camp this was normal. Every newcomer from the ordinary camp are mostly arrogant, so the veteran will teach them a lesson. This kind of lesson was necessary after all the elite camp had real missions and real pirates to fight. If they think they are all high and mighty they will just die. So for the provocation of Very Good, Z only reprimanded him verbally and didn't give him any punishment. When Roja went to the crowd gathered place he saw that Very Good provoked Drake after he left with Z, which led to a battle to break out. However, Roja wasn't interested. Roja learned the way to practice the 6 power of the marine and also the way to practice the hockey, so he was very eager to find a place to try and practice them. Drake, teacher Z called you. Then the fight that was about to start was completely destroyed. Drake looked coldly at Very Good, grunted, then directly turned around and left. What, really, that was fast. Very Good, after seeing that Roja came he was helpless. But he couldn't say a thing as he didn't dare to block Drake, who was summoned by Z. After finished what he came for, Roja turned around ready to leave. At this time, Very Good suddenly took a few steps forward and stood in front of Roja. Hey. Why are you leaving? Not only did you escape but also took my opponent, don't you think you should fight me now? Don't block my way. Roja looked at him calmly then continued to walk forward. Seeing this Very Good suddenly smiled. Hey, I will still block the way, what can you do about it? Roja looked up to see Very Good's smiling face then said. Do you really want to know what I can do? This time there should be a fight. Seeing this the veteran stepped back so the two could fight. He said that he's the ordinary camp first ranked, right? So how many moves will he be able to take from Very Good? I bet he could only take 10 moves. No, even if he's a newcomer he's the number 1 in the ordinary camp, so I think he should be able to make it until the 30 moves. The veterans looked at the two with lively expressions. Between Roja and Very Good there seemed to be a gap. Roja is tall and his body was proportional, although he isn't thin, but Very Good was taller than him and seemed stronger too. Roja didn't have that much of an impression on Very Good. All he remember is that Very Good has the Bari no Mi that would let him split up to ball-shaped part to avoid attacks. Very Good stood with a look of arrogance while saying to Roja, come on as you senpai, I will let you have 3 moves before I strike back. Sorry, I am in a hurry, 3 moves are too much trouble, move it. Roja looked faintly at Very Good then gently drew his sword. A red line suddenly ignited on the sword. Sword flow cremate. Boom. After Roja finished his swing a silver-white light flashed followed by flames. His swing was like a dragon coming out of its lair. Monstrous flame came crashing at Very Good, which was mixed with that silver-white energy which made that strike so much like dragon. Originally when they heard Roja's words the veterans were stunned for a moment and exposed a look of ridicule and laughed at Roja. But the next moment their eyes were staring with their mouth agape reaching the ground. Flames. What is this? Is it a devil fruit? Even those onlookers were stunned. Not only was there flames but also an incredible and sharp energy was with the flames, and all they could think about is how to avoid it. However, the speed of which the flames and energy was very fast. Even if Very Good tried his best to avoid it he will still be hit by it. Very Good was staring in horror while the flames were Katie's body. The scene made those veterans dumbfounded. Even Ain and Suddy were stunned to see the power of Roja. Their faces changed again and again. Boom. Very Good's body, which was under the flames bombardment, suddenly broke into countless round balls scattering in all direction to avoid the flames and the sword energy that was in it. This is devil fruit ability. And seeing this scene Roja didn't reveal any surprise to that, but a look of contempt showed on his face. Flames, whether a human or a ball doesn't matter. You will still be burned. Even if he split into so many balls, but those balls still catch fire and the flame will wrap around every ball. The balls began to roll on the ground. Hot. One of the largest balls was Very Good's head, which there wasn't any skin of arrogance anymore, but all he could do was yell in a strange way and his eyes revealed horror. This is simply incredible. Roja has the ability to use flames. This time everyone thought that Roja had the Fire Devil Fruit ability, which was stronger compared to Smoker's Smoke ability as a Logia, because even if Smoker could use his ability for offense, it's not as strong as fire. The balls couldn't get away from the flames. Seeing that he was going to burn alive, Very Good screamed. I admit defeat. Very Good couldn't help but throw the towel. After hearing him admit defeat, Roja returned his blade into the scabbard and all the burning flames were extinguished. Sword fire off. All the balls with a gulu gulu sound rolled at each other and reformed into Very Good's normal look. But he didn't have that arrogant look anymore, as his body was in a sorry state. Fortunately he wasn't burned by the flames for that long, otherwise he may not stand up again. Roja returned his sword and slightly shook his head and didn't look at Very Good but directly turned to leave. The newcomers knew about Roja's flame as they already witnessed it, but still they were shocked of how strong that was. Faced an elite veteran and still he won with a single strike. Is he really a newcomer? They were so shocked they couldn't help but mutter. If those who knew of his ability already are shocked, then what about those in the elite camp? Very Good wasn't an ordinary person. He has the ability the Devil Fruit Bari Bari no Mi and also trained in the elite camp and was ranked in the middle, and this Roja the newcomer only used one strike to defeat him. Too incredible. And what was that ability he used? It was Flame. Smoke sit as the strongest in the elite camp exactly for his Devil Fruit ability, but the Smoke doesn't have any strong offense, but what about Flames? This time the shocked veterans turned around to look at Smoker, who had 3 cigars in his mouth. He isn't a Devil Fruit user. Smoker looked at the back of Roja and after a moment of thought he recalled the scene that just occurred. His flame didn't come from his body but was issued from his sword, and many other details are different from a Logia Devil Fruit ability. Although I don't know where did that flame come from, but it's not a Devil Fruit ability. Smoke was Logia user himself and was very familiar with every details of it, so he could determine that what Roja used wasn't a Devil Fruit ability. Really, he isn't a Devil Fruit user? Well, if you looked at it with logic and compare it with a Logia type Devil Fruit, then you can see that there is nothing comparable. Hearing the words of Smoker, many veteran were relieved. So that single strike win is only a coincidence. That mean if Very Good avoided that line of flames and attacked, he wouldn't have lost. This is just Very Good underestimating his opponent. He was so scared that he was a Devil Fruit user that he threw in the towel. Some veterans said this, then looked at the charred body of Very Good. Although he wasn't injured, he was extremely embarrassed as they laughed at him. Then Very Good, who was stunned for a moment, had his face become black for a moment and he was extremely depressed. No, I will find that kid and fight with him again. Ha ha ha, you still didn't change your clothes. See there, Ein is extremely embarrassed to stay here. One of the veterans pointed at a hole in Very Good's clothes and laughed. Very Good, that was laughed at, had his face turn red, looked at the hole in his clothes and left the training square hurriedly. After returning his sword, Roja didn't care listening to those veteran talking and just turned around and directly left the square to his room. He didn't have to attend the training anymore, as the only thing he need to attend is the missions, other than that he got the freedom to do whatever he want. Roja was used to practicing alone. Garp wasn't home anyways and Roja has long since got used to this lifestyle. He rushed into the bath and then directly went to sleep. The next morning, Roja woke up early, washed up and directly went to the courtyard. The courtyard wasn't small and wasn't big either. After measuring for a moment, Roja found that the courtyard was enough for him to practice Soru. Soru, a high movement technique. Jeppo, a movement technique which let you step on the air. Let's first start learning Soru. Roja came to the side of the courtyard and carefully remembered the things Z pointed to him. Soru practice is in fact very simple. As long as he masters some of the details, he could turn it into his personal move. The reason why most people think it's hard is because it need an almost non-human strength. As long the body strength could reach the standard, then the practice would be simple. Bang! Recalling the way to practice Soru from Z's word, Roja suddenly kicked the ground and cracks appearing while he sprang forward. No, the power wasn't concentrated in one spot but was scattered all over. Again. Bang! The ground once again cracked after Roja's kick. Roja's figure sprang forward again, but it seemed a little better than before, but still far from the standard Soru. Again. Roja didn't think he'd be able to learn Soru directly. So he continued to practice without feeling down at all. Soru consumption of stamina is far from what Roja could imagine. He thought that no wonder not anyone could learn the 6 powers of the marine. Not only does someone need non-human physical strength, he also need tremendous stamina above all. Practicing Soru for a moment, Roja's legs turned completely numb. He almost can't feel them anymore. After feeling that, Roja's face changed to excitement. You should know that Roja now could do more than 1,000 squat and wouldn't feel anything, as he can't reach the limit anymore using that method. But practicing Soru for a moment made him reach his limit again in a moment. Reaching the limit wasn't a bad thing, instead it's a good thing because that would let him develop his potential more. So the Marine's 6 power are also good tools to tap the potential of the body. It really was a masterpiece movement technique. Roja now will focus on breaking his body limit, as originally breaking the limit for him was too difficult now, so this was a huge opportunity for him to become stronger. Half a month quickly passed. In this half a month, Roja practiced Soru and Jeppo to break the limit in his legs and practiced the sword like usual for his upper body practice. For normal people, breaking the limit times after time would make them reach a mental breakdown. But here comes the role of his soul that is far stronger than ordinary people. This half a month Roja's strength leaped and he successfully could use Soru, but he couldn't control it yet. Roja could directly turn into a shadowy figure as he used Soru now, but he still couldn't control the distance after using it. Using a target, Roja sometimes get behind the target or in front of it. Practicing is simple but mastering is harder. Once again he used Soru. He flashed and appeared in the courtyard on the other side. He shook his head as he almost hit the wall. Purely mastering Soru and the other 6 power of the marine will be enough to make you a master in the seas like Z and Garp. They mastered the 6 power to superb level. After motoring I will practice Jeppo or moonwalk. In addition to Soru, Roja wanted to practice Jeppo, but he still had a long way to go as he didn't master kicking the ground, let alone master kicking the air. After practicing Jeppo, Roja almost could reach the second floor's window. After doing that, a little bit of wind made him lose his balance and fall. After that, Roja wasn't ambitious anymore as he decided to master Soru, then he could practice Jeppo. In fact, the elite camp did have a separate rooms to help individual practice, but Roja didn't choose to practice there. Even if he could practice Soru there, he won't be able to practice Jeppo. Roja wanted to use half a month to master Soru and Jeppo, and then he wanted to start the practice of hockey. But as a result of him not being able to master them in half a month, the hockey practice needs to be delayed. Well, this result wasn't bad either. As hockey practice also needed strength, and the practice of Soru and Jeppo will help him improve his strength by breaking the limit of the body. So after he masters Soru and Jeppo, the hockey practice would be much easier. In addition, Roja could compress the air 5 times when he swings his sword. And trying to practice compressing the air for the 6th time, he could tell that it was harder than all of the previous together. In addition to that, in this half a month Roja's soul sword strengthened once. The third stage, Smart Sword of the Soul +1. Attribute, Attack Power +150, Power +45, Agility +45. Special attribute, All things in the world, turn to ashes, sword attack have additional fire damage, evolution's condition isn't met. Special attributes, Getsuga Tenshō, can release a arc-shaped red energy attack. Energy, 47/130. After entering the third stage, the basic attribute strengthened much more than before. In the fourth and fifth stage later, for every +1 the basic attribute will increase more. Energy is necessary for every strengthening, and that will increase every time, so it's normal for the basic attribute to increase accordingly. Suddenly Roja thought of something. Half a month later there will be mission, so I will have to kill some pirates. Thinking to hear, Roja's mouth made a slight smile and said, another half a month should be enough for me to master Soru. The elite camp has missions but not training. They need to go and suppress real pirates as official marines. The only difference is that they were led by Z personally. But unless it's a life and death situation, Z wouldn't interfere. After all, if he was to help them in every problem, they wouldn't be able to spread their wings. Half a month. I have to seize this opportunity. Roja took a deep breath and murmured, and then again began to practice Soru. Soru. His foot made a crack on the ground and Roja figure suddenly disappeared. Still Ase to improve my precision. Whiz. Again with the ground cracking, Roja's figure flashed. Precise enough, but the speed isn't enough. I still need to continue. Sweat dripping from the sits of his cheeks. His eyes stared at his target in the courtyard. Almost all of his soul was concentrated on his body, on his legs, focused so he can make precise strength judgment and analyzing each point of his failure so he can achieve the perfect Soru. 10 times. Dozens of times. Hundreds of times. The ground under Roja was truly broken. You could even say that the entire courtyard was lower than before by half a foot. Roja trained until his legs were numb, then trained with the sword until his arms were numb, and this continued for half a month. In the courtyard, Roja was standing at one of the corners. His eyes were sharp as his sight was focused in front of him. Soru. The courtyard floor has long since been destroyed and trampled by Roja. The next moment Roja's figure suddenly flashed, turned into a blur, and instantly appeared to his target exactly. Roja was satisfied as he nodded as he said, I have been able to control the distance, and out of 100 point I shall get 90. After using Soru and evaluated it. He suddenly looked at the sky and his foot stepped hard. Jeppo. Whiz. Roja's figure floated as he seemed to be pedaling as he continued to get higher. Jeppo is equivalent to using Soru continuously. The difficulty is slightly higher. And the consumption of stamina is also great. I shall get 60 point out of 100 as I can't stay in the air for long. Well, it's enough for now. Back in the courtyard, Roja stretched his body while his face showed how satisfied he was. His original goal was evaluating his Soru as 80 point, and as long as he could use Jeppo then it's fine, but now it seemed that his final result after a month training is more than he expected. At the same time he mastered the 5 air compressing with the sword. Alt-hot the 6th is somewhat rough, but it's still pretty powerful. The 6th air compression seemed like a barrier, although Roja excel in the 5th, but it's nearly 5% from the 6th. In addition, Roja's soul sword had turned +2 in this half a month. The third stage, Smart Sword of the Soul +2. Attribute, Attack Power +165, Power +50, Agility +50. Special attribute, All things in the world, turn to ashes, sword attack have additional fire damage, evolution's condition isn't met. Special attributes, Getsuga Tenshō, can release a arc-shaped red energy attack. Energy, 8/140. In a month he strengthened the soul sword 2 times. In addition, the basic energy increased and the range of his fire is greater. Looking at the property barrier, Roja slightly pondered. Now I shouldn't be any weaker than a rear admiral, I may even be slightly better in some aspects, and after practicing Soru and Jeppo my speed increased a lot. But my defense isn't as good as my attack. Roja has long been clear about his strength, as he is not only a sword master but also have his fire damage. So he didn't really care much about defense. The best defense is offense. As long as his attack are strong enough he wouldn't need any defense. A month ago Roja's strength was at a Commodore level, and now he touched the standard of rear admirals and even was superior in some aspects. If Roja learned the 2 normal types of hockey he will be too powerful. And in fact if he had good luck he may eat a strong devil fruit ability. But to a certain extent his improvement will be much slower and much more difficult than before. The 7 Shichibukai, Marco and others may stand against the admirals. But wanting to stand at their level or even surpassing them is extremely difficult. Roja is different from the people of this world as he have the soul system and the soul sword. The so-called bottleneck, he can directly ignore such a thing. Tomorrow the actual mission will start. So this is enough training for today. Roja took a deep breath and then returned into his room. After drinking some water he directly went to rest. The month of hell training has ended. Roja in that month didn't get much rest as he sleep late and wake early to train, so this could be the first time in a month that he rested. Which is a test of strength to not only his body but also his soul. If it was someone else without the help of the soul sword, then he won't be able to continue this month of hell practice. The strength will improve as long as you put the effort. Those recruits only had a day or two in a month as hell practice, which can't be compared to Roja's practice at all. He didn't do a thing in his break, directly sleeping for the afternoon and evening. He completely relaxed until the next morning. Roja woke up while feeling a kind of unspeakable comfort. This comfort seemed not only from his body but also from his soul. Not only did his soul get stronger, but even his whole body was more concise and strong. As every strengthen will add 10 point to his strength. If he relaxed every day and didn't make so much effort, he wouldn't get stronger and the energy bar increase. So after a month of practice, his soul and will was tempered, nourished and improved. The soul is improving every time Roja improve. He didn't imagine that the soul system is so strange. Or is it something else? He temporarily threw this idea aside. As long as he knew the sword of the soul and how he can improve it, that's enough. Marine headquarters. Here in front of the huge fortress a large number of warships were docked. The view was like they were preparing for war. Many marine soldiers were busy carrying a variety of items. Ready for the upcoming departure. This day is the day of the mission. And now the elite camp members were boarding the ships as they will be going for the mission. In addition to those from the elite camp, the other marine officers and soldier are dealing with navigation and other necessity as they will not participate in this mission. Roja this time didn't board the warship late like last time, but he arrived early and was on board already. This world is very big while I come here for so long, and this will be the first time I will go to an actual island. Watching the vast sea while clenching his fist as he murmured, what a scenery. I wonder when will I be able to look at this world from above. Oh, that tone didn't have any confidence. Roja saw a beautiful blue-haired girl that went beside him, and as she heard his murmur she smiled and said, I can see that you want to look at this world from above like an admiral. Roja turned his head and glanced at her, recognizing her immediately. Ein. The user of the motto no Mi, Z's disciple and a member of the elite camp. When Z was attacked, she was one of the survivors. Now Z wasn't attacked and incident didn't occur, so probably she didn't eat the devil fruit yet. Maybe. Roja smiled casually. Ein was surprised. Unlike before, he had so much self-confidence which let her feel that Roja had a hard to figure out character. In fact, the real goal of Roja isn't just overlooking the sea, but he will not say it as goals or something to do not to say. Strange guy. Thinking about Roja's sword strike and the flames that were produced which stunned all onlookers. Defeating very good with single strike. Ein's eyes couldn't help but flash while her face looked at him strangely. Ein was curious about Roja and wanted to satisfy her curiosity, but suddenly Z boarded the warship. Teacher Z. Teacher Z. All those boarded on the warship saluted Z. Z looked at the marine navigator and asked. How is the preparation? Still need to carry to barrel of water and we'll be good to go. That's good. After nodding his head, Z glanced at the veterans of the elite camp and then his eyes fell on Roja, Drake and the others. As newcomers had joined the elite camp, this mission will be less difficult than before. The goal is to travel to the South Blue and destroy a pirates that built a stronghold there. That pirate group has entered the red line, but I don't know why did they come back and started controlling everything there. The captain's reward is 63 million berry. Hearing the simple introduction of Z, Smoker and the other veterans looked calm, but Hina and the other newcomers were surprised. A reward of 63 million berry. Such a guy who returned from the red line, which will let him become a small celebrity. They didn't expect that the first combat will be such a character. But from Z words, this wasn't that hard of a mission. The Marines elites and those ordinary ones are completely different. Z looked positively at the recruits. For those who entered the elite camp, this is their first confrontation with a pirates group. So Z was very concerned about the performance of the new recruits. Especially Roja. Roja's first assessment and second assessment were very eye-catching, but after all that was just training and in Thai face of blood, a real fight is completely different. Those that experienced blood baptism before joining the Marine are a few of a few. Many recruits will get used to blood after the 7th or 8th battle, and at first their hand will be shaking and they won't be able to fight normally. Using 70% of his strength is good, but using 100% very few will be able to do that. This is a real battle. There can be death at any time. The first battle will hold the most casualties among newcomers. Although I will interfere when there is a life threat, but I don't want to encounter such situation. Understand? Z said. Yes. Almost all newcomers, listening to the words of Z, their faces exposed how tense they were before responding. The tension they were feeling is very different compared to the veterans. Roja's I didn't have a slight bit of tension, all you could see is in fact, desire. The soul sword inside of him was excited that a fight about to start, and Roja didn't resist such a feeling. Introduced the mission briefly while the warships left the dock. Do not fear, the more you show fear the more your performance will worsen. Do not worry, the veterans will protect the newcomers. It's really scary to fight against the pirates. After Z left, the elite camp veterans looked at Roja and the other and said one after the other. Some talking seriously, some joking and some half joking. Isn't it just fighting pirates? There are some who couldn't help but laugh. Still, their eyes contained tension that they couldn't conceal. It seems simple, but they will be fighting pirates for real this time after all. Be brave. Very good, who was forced to throw in the towel against looking at the newcomers, said jokingly, you people followed Teacher Z training for a month. Have some courage. You probably have the strength for the job. Talking to hear very good, saw Roja within the crowd and his face turned black. Roja's identity as Garp's nephew wasn't a secret and it spread in the elite camp. But most of the elite recruits, including very good, didn't think much about it, as many of them are relatives of some marine elder. But the identity of Garp was somewhat special. Very good complained to himself about how he lost to Roja. Even if Roja could use flame, if he escaped and counterattacked, he would have been fine. Even if he lost, it wouldn't be a one-hit defeat for him. At least he can challenge him again. Roja wasn't a devil fruit user, so his flame is limited, probably could only use it one at a time. Him losing with just one strike made him a laughing stock. This month Very Good tried to find Roja to challenge him again. He wanted to wash the shame, but unfortunately for him, Roja didn't appear for the entire month, and now the mission is about to start, so he can no longer challenge Roja until the mission is over. If Roja didn't do good in the assessment or made Z save him, Very Good will feel pain as he was defeated with one strike from Roja. So when he looked at Roja he was gloomy. In his view, Roja's ability had a strong attack, but it's not a devil fruit ability, and probably he has no experience in a sword fight. Roja didn't care about Very Good's gloomy eyes. This time he needs to consider how to use this mission to get stronger. Especially how to train his haki. Roja found some problems, so he directly looked for Z in the cabin. In half of the route to the South Blue, there won't be any pirates as all the pirates around here are at Shabandi Island. Very few pirates are willing to fight in this sea as this is too close to Marineford. So anyone trying to fight will be courting death. On top of the warship. In a very wide room, two people stood there. You mastered Soru and can even use Moonwalk in a month's time. Z looked at Roja in shock. Just now he checked the result of Roja's practice. He didn't believe at first as he looked at Roja to determine if that brat was drunk. But Roja really was skilled in Soru and could even use the Moonwalk. Z did tell Roja to practice Soru and Moonwalk before, but he thought that Roja would finish in 3 months or maybe 4, and to his surprise, Roja took a month to master it. This made Z extremely shocked. Soru will make its user able to multiply his speed as it's a pure movement technique. To learn this technique one didn't need talent, but all he needed is the effort. A month time and he already learned Soru completely and could use Moonwalk. That only means that the last month Roja experienced a desperate practice from hell. Only with what would he be able to master Soru in a month? Prior to this Z didn't understand the way Roja practiced and didn't bother to ask Garp. But this time Z understood. Roja could get stronger so fast wasn't just due to his talent, but Roja's effort surpassed everyone else's effort. Even the most powerful people from the Marine, the admirals who were Z's disciple, didn't get to where they are now just relying on their talent. For example, Kizaru, although he relies too much on his fruit, his effort to get there is inseparable. No matter how good the talent is, without hard work and effort there wouldn't be any effect, and if the effort was added to talent the result would be amazing. It now appears that Roja's growth rate isn't simply due to his talent. Proposing to practice Soru and Moonwalk to Roja was like a test from Z. Roja was strong enough to practice haki before, but still, he just reached the standard to practice it. Which in Z's view was very weak. With stronger power, the haki will be stronger. That's why Z made Roja practice Soru. Z made Roja practice Soru and Moonwalk so he can get stronger physic and make the haki practice more appropriate. Add if Roja didn't listen to him and wanted to put the cart before the horse and waste 3 or 4 months. Z would have reprimanded Roja mercilessly because that would make Roja's practice twist and go astray. But did not expect Roja not only would listen to what he said but also master it completely, which he didn't expect at all. Did not expect you to master Soru so soon. I thought it would take you at least 2 months and after that I would teach you haki, but you blew my expectation away. Z smiled. It was hard to describe how happy and pleased he was. After so long he finally found such a good student again. His heart was firm. He must carve this rough diamond into the most perfect form. After calming his thoughts, Z answered Roja about every question he raised in details. Listening to the explanation of Z, Roja sometime revealed a thinking face and sometime an enlightened one. And as someone from another world his thought process differed from people here. So many questions Z didn't need to finish explaining as Roja would have already understand it. Finally the last question was answered. Thank you very much, teacher. Is there any other question? Roja shook his head and said, no. Z nodded at Roja. If you have any more question don't hesitate to ask me. In fact Z would like to teach Roja how to use haki, but he can't right now as they were in the middle of a mission. But his heart have already decided, after the end of the mission he will personally teach Roja the haki. Okay. Roja nodded his head, then together with Z left the cabin. Just after coming out of the cabin, while Z seemed to be ready to go downstairs back to his room, the next moment his face turned around suddenly to look at the other direction. Oh. Seeing Z's expression, Roja subconsciously looked to where Z was looking, but he couldn't see any disturbing thing, only the sea. While staying like that for a moment Roja's face slightly moved. While the warship continued to move to a direction where 2 huge shadows could be seen. Ripples and waves began to appear at the originally windless area of the sea. White the warship getting closer, there was impressively 2 huge monsters fighting. Sea Kings. Oki. This is great. The emergence of 2 giant Sea Kings alerted all the people boarding the warship as they come to the deck. The 2 Sea Kings continued their battle while stirring the whole sea and sending huge waves to all directions. Witnessing this power everyone were in shock. This part of the sea was supposed to be windless, but the giant Sea King fight produced wind. To the people on the warship this was an opportunity to witness such a fight. Even Roja was watching. Mr. Z, we must make a detour. Seeing those huge waves the Marine's navigator said while looking at Z. Z looked at the 2 giant Sea King and suddenly looked at Roja. He went to the deck where most recruits gathered, then shook his head. No need. In the world many people used the devil fruit ability and forgot about the strength in their bodies. Z's voice despite the waves was clear in the ears of each elite. Those who were still watching the Sea King's fight turned their heads toward him. Z looked away from the 2 Sea King and continued to say. Whether you have a fruit or not, you should pay attention to practicing the body. Even without a devil fruit you can become strong. So you do not have to be obsessed with the devil fruit ability and wanting to obtain a strong devil fruit. Physical strength is not any less powerful than those devil fruits. Speaking to here, Z looked at Roja and slowly raised his hand. Seems he's doing this so all the recruits could see. But Roja knew that he is doing this to show him. So he observed Z every action seriously and directly went into the focus state. When Z made a fist, a strange atmosphere suddenly wrapped around his fist and suddenly his fist turned black like ink and was shiny. Busashoku, hardening. Whiz. The next moment Z figure suddenly flashed out from the warship. He was faster than Roja as he was walking on air. He directly appeared beside the two Sea Kings. This scene suddenly shocked all those that were in the warship, and even the two Sea King were surprised by the appearance of Z beside them. Z punched one of the Sea Kings with a boom, then turned over to the other one and hit another punch. And with that the two Sea Kings fell down. Z didn't stay there and walked over in the air to the warship. Bang! After that the two Sea Kings fell and made a huge waves all over the place. The warship was about to be overturned. After that most people didn't know when did Z return to the deck. At last. The sea gradually calmed down. All the people watching were shocked and awed by the display of power from Z. This is teacher's strength. The giant Sea King were blown by a punch. This power is too incredible. Some people's eyes exposed their hope. If I can half the strength of teacher. After this person talked, someone was mocking him already. Half his power? You must be joking. Teacher Z is a former Marine Admiral. Even half of his power is enough to turn the seas upside down. The other side. Even after the scene have passed, Roja couldn't help but feel amazed. Although he already saw scenes more amazing than this, but after all he didn't see them himself, but this was the first time he witnessed this kind of shocking strength. But Roja's idea and the other's idea are very different. In addition to remembering the Busoshoku release process, Roja had something else on his mind. If he could use the Shirkai, Ryūjin Jakka, which will display the temperature of the surface of the sun, would all the sea directly dry up. I hope this fight can improve my energy. Roja looked calmly down at the sea and murmured, then turned back to his room. Z demonstrated the Busoshoku haki while Roja was in his focus state, so he saw everything clearly. What's more, Z's haki was too strong and he deliberately attacked slowly so that Roja can see. And after Z answered his questions, Roja thought that next time when he will practice haki he could learn it by himself without Z guiding him by the side. Nothing like that happened for the rest of the journey. This time's task is to pursue the pirates group Black Angel with a bounty of 63 million berry. That pirate group retreated from the red line and disappeared without a trace. Until some time ago the Marine found traces of them in the South Blue. After careful investigations they found them 6 months ago as they established a small power in the South Blue in a prosperous island. That island was a bustling commercial place. But the fact is those weren't merchant but a pirate group, and they were dealing with arms and slaves transactions. When the Marine headquarters learned of this, they were going to send some people there to exterminate them, but Z picked the mission up. At this moment, Roja and the others were standing at the deck of the warship, looking at their front where the island outline began to appear. When we land on the island, all of you will wear the Marine uniform, and if we encounter a pirate we need to block him from escaping. I don't need to teach you how to do that. Not only the captain has a 63 million bounty on his head, but many other members has bounties over their heads too. Z, standing at the front of the warship deck looking awe-inspiring, looked at TE Elite Camp's member and said that because each time they do the assessment for the elite camp only 10 to 20 people would be selected, and coupled with the many people who wouldn't stay for 3 years in the camp, the number of the elite camp counting Roja and the group of newcomers are about 40 people. But every one of them wasn't ordinary. The warship slowly sailed toward the island. There was a lookout on the island. Some of the observation posts saw a large warship sailing over. Their faces changed. That is. Warship. Is it just passing or? Anyway, please inform the boss. The people hurriedly went to inform their boss. The center of the island there was a large hotel. The appearance of the hotel was very luxurious, but in the hotel underground many slaves were imprisoned. Some of the slaves are dead, some are struggling to wail but often fought for their meal. Their voices couldn't pass from the underground. At this time, in the deepest room of the hotel 2 people sat face to face. One of them with golden curly hair. A young man, which was the goal of this mission. The captain Lucifer, while the other man was slightly old. This is the last one. At this time the golden-haired man smiled while glancing at the old man and nodded. At this time suddenly the golden-haired man frowned from his waist, took a den machi and asked. What happened? Boss Lucifer, bad news, the Marines are here. Hearing this sentence Lucifer's face changed and asked. Are they coming to us? Well, that's what it seemed to be. Did we get exposed so soon? Lucifer's face instantly became ugly, looked at the old man in front of him who was whispering, this is. If you're already exposed then go deal with those Marines as soon as possible. This matter is not your responsibility, so if we deal with them then Master may not blame us. Yes. Warship. Z figure disappeared. They didn't know if he returned to his room or was already on the island. All they knew is that he will be monitoring them. 40 elite camp trainee including Roja all descended on the island. They were soon surrounded by people pointing their guns to their faces. In such a short time they mobilized their forces to surround them. Obviously the real island and the information they got on it are completely different. It seemed that our intel are still wrong. Isn't a pirate group that is hidden in the island, but the whole island is disguised as normal commercial island. Everyone on this island are pirates. Looking at this scene the veteran's face was slightly flashed with a little surprise, but they didn't panic. They all had a smile ridicule on their faces. On the other hand those who were holding guns looked at Roja and the others in the elite camp had different weapons. Their formation is very loose and a few people only had firearms, which made them surprised. It's not like an official marine ship, and why is there only a few of them? That uniform, I have seen it before. It is, what a trainee wear. They have not seen the marine but only a group of people, and they even couldn't maintain a military formation. And what is more confusing is that this group is riding such a huge warship. It's weird. But we must defeat them. Destroy the marine. A leading person frowned and directly yelled and pulled his trigger. Bang. 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 With that person as the lead and under his orders suddenly all the guns were fired toward the Roja and his group. I hate this. Someone said this suddenly, as he was seeing those people using some supernatural abilities to dodge the bullets while Smoker just let the bullets pass through his body. Whiz. Almost at same time more than 10 people from the gunners group among the pirates were cut like melon and others were crushed. Blood splashed. It seemed that all this island people are pirate. Don't let their captain escape. Separate and capture him. That's a good plan. They didn't know who among the 40 elite said this, but the elite scattered into a group of 3 or 2. There is also some who had gone alone. On the street. Pirates are criminals. They burn and loot. Other may not perceive anything, but Roja's soul is very strong. He simply was different from normal people and could feel the atmosphere filled with resentment. He didn't to see, all he needed was to feel this resentment to know what kind of darkness this island hides. Luffy may be a pirate, but he do not act like the others. As he pursued the dream of obtaining the One Piece and wouldn't do thing that normal pirates do. In this world many variety of pirates exists. Roja felt that some people aren't that bad and didn't need to go to the extreme as Akainu does. And those kind of pirates Roja could recognize. Justice and evil for him didn't matter. Roja will only follow his own belief and won't be bound by any position. Whether he is a marine or pirate, Roja didn't care about those positions. Compared to Garp, he was more carefree. Roja, holding his Hano no Suki, took a step forward, walked through the bloody road, until he was standing in front of a stunned pirate. Excuse me, do you know where is Lucifer? In the Central Hotel. Okay. Sword flashed and blood scattered. Roja didn't have any trace of blood on his body. He looked at the center of the island where the hotel was, which is the highest building on this island. Roja indifferently stepped forward where many enemies were going to attack him and swept his sword. Sword flow, cremate. Boom. The flames swept through the pirates, which were horrified watching the flames before them. The flame rose till the sky that you could see them from any position on the island. That guy used his special technique so fast. In a corner of the street, very good, blow a pirate and killed him, and after seeing the flames his mouth twitched. So soon he was forced to use that ability. He isn't powerful at all. However, on the other side of the street, flames come crushing from the sky. Boom. 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 The golden flame swept all directions and was unstoppable along the street. Roja made a flame road that will lead him directly to the Central Hotel. Very good looked at the sky, which was red, and his chin almost reached the ground with his mouth wide open. This is too exaggerated. Isn't this a devil fruit ability? I am afraid it is. Although Roja was weak as he heard about his power, but seeing it is very different. He felt that if he could avoid Roja's flame he would have no fear of him and wouldn't lose so miserably, but now his idea seems like a joke. The flame stretched into a few streets, everyone who was caught in the flames probably burned with remains. Hey, that flame is terrifying. This is really exaggerated. Is this truly his ability without any devil fruit ability? Even Smoker's power isn't that exaggerating. Not only very good, even the other elite camp veterans looking at the fire sweeping through the streets. They couldn't help but reveal a look of shock. On the other side, Drake and the other newcomers were looking at this scene with an expression difficult to describe. And Hannah's mouth is constantly twitching, she couldn't help but clutching her forehead. Does this guy intend to repeat the same thing as the first assessment? At this moment. On top of the Central Hotel, Z was there overlooking the entire situation. No one noticed him. Looking at the fire, Z couldn't help but have a slight headache. Did he start messing around again? Roja, this kid is causing chaos again, although he is causing slightly less chaos than Garp. Z captured many pirates but didn't kill any of them. He didn't expect that the entire island would be a base of pirates. Using 6 months to make something like this. This is definitively not the Black Angel pirate group only, even if they retreated from the Red Line. This is likely a pirate gathering place for more than 6 months, and the Marine couldn't find this place. And the arrival of the Black Angel led to their base being discovered by the Marine. But after pondering a bit, Z shook his head. He will no longer deal with those kind of things, and his only job is to teach the recruits. They are here only to destroy the Black Angel, which is the mission, and at the end of the task he will leave with the elite camp. Anything else will be dealt by the other Marines. Under the Central Hotel. Almost in the location below Z, a group of people. They are the Black Angel pirates' most powerful group. Such exaggerated use of flame. Are they ordinary Marine? The Marine in the South Blue can't have such an ability. They are most likely Marines from the Red Line and seem to be directed at us. The people said this with a bit of a dignified tone, as they were people who set foot on the Red Line before. Their bounty was at least 10 million. So they weren't afraid. And at this time Lucifer came out from behind them and coldly said. Just half a year and we're already exposed. Whatever the reason, we need to eliminate these Marine quickly and then change our location, otherwise the Marine will send more powerful people to us and will be doomed. From the word of Lucifer they couldn't stay idle. Lucifer glanced at the window with sneer and said, although they are Marine from the Red Lines, but they are only dozen of people and were not some ordinary pirates. They couldn't fight in the Red Line and were beaten, which made them return to the South Blue and retreat from the Red Line. Go and kill them. Yes. The pirates took a deep breath and their eyes flashed while they followed Lucifer out of the hotel. On the street monstrous flames swept in all directions, numerous houses were raging in fire. Pirates were burned to ashes. Bang. With a huge outbreak the glass on a certain house shattered while the whole house was lit up, and red flame continued to burn everything on its way. In the flames Roja calmly moved forward while the flames made way for him and didn't affect him, even his hair was no affected. Killing those minions is so annoying, I could kill them without any effort. Roja used his sword to project a red flame vertically and horizontally that spread for 20 meters away, and once again the fire swept another group of pirates. Most of those pirates are ordinary people that depend on the use of firearms. There are some strong ones once in a while, but unfortunately in front of Roja's flames they just lit up and die. Roja walked to a place without blood, only the bodies remained. If he can use the Shirkai, then all of this place will turn to ashes. Well, that's the name of his special attribute, all thing in the world, turn to ashes. So he pushed toward the hotel with ease on his way, and finally in front of Roja appeared the Central Hotel. After coming there Roja stopped his pace. Glanced at the rear that was still burning due to his flames. Roja lightly waved his Hano no Suki at the ground and suddenly a crisp sound was heard. Hum. The flames on the sword which Roja waved instantly extinguished. At the same time all the flames that were on the street suddenly extinguished and quickly disappeared, leaving only piece of broken and charred building. Hope this won't affect the others or teachers. He might blame me. Roja glanced at his rear, then returned his gaze to the front and said lightly. While saying this, Roja moved forward. After a few steps he stopped. In front of Roja a silhouette appeared, a young man with a golden hair, and his face was the same as the poster with the reward of 63 million berry Lucifer. Sure enough, I attracted the most attention, and now the boss himself came to me. In the face of a reward of 63 million berry, Roja wasn't calm anymore as he revealed an expression of a hunter looking at his prey. Your ability isn't a devil fruit. Lucifer seemed well informed as he went in front of Roja, then looked lightly at him and said, the ability of a devil fruit is far more powerful than your flames. If I am not wrong, this should be a special swordsmanship. Guess you're deserving your reward. Roja said while looking at Lucifer, and waved his sword lightly. Boom. A vertical slash of few meters of flames formed a curtain of fire and suddenly attacked Lucifer. That curtain not only contained flames but also a silver-white energy. Seeing this, Lucifer's face changed. He didn't hesitate and jumped to avoid the dangerous-looking flames. The flames swept through the street and finally dissipated in the distance while some debris was caught on flames. Despite avoiding the flames, but the hot air swept through and still burned some of Lucifer's hair. His curly golden hair now was deformed. This guy. Do you think this is the Marines' headquarters to be this presumptuous? After his hair was burned, Lucifer's face turned ugly, looked up and his eyes flashed with a sharp killing intent, and his tone was full of cold murderous intent. The next moment Lucifer suddenly took out his weapon, which were two short daggers. He directly rushed toward Roja. Wouch! Facing Lucifer, who was rushing toward him, Roja swung his sword and flames rushed toward Lucifer. But this time Lucifer completely avoided his flames while he continued moving forward. An assassin type. Roja didn't know much about Lucifer. After all, half a year ago he wasn't here, and if he wanted the information he might suffer a loss. Moreover, Roja didn't like the calculative way of fighting. Ding! Lucifer, two daggers suddenly come across the air with two sharp lines, and their direction was Roja's heart. Roja stopped his attack using his sword. The two daggers were extraordinarily good, and even the strength of Lucifer wasn't any weaker. Humph! I can't hide my attacks from him. Lucifer saw that Roja blocked his attacks. His eyes suddenly flashed and his speed doubled, and with a flash he appeared behind Roja. His dagger directly went to stab Roja's heart. Sorrow. Roja's expression didn't change while his body turned into a blur and instantly avoided Lucifer's attack. Lucifer was shocked as Roja's speed after using sorrow is faster than his own. Who the hell are you in the end? Lucifer finally put away his contempt with his eyes, revealing shock. Originally he wanted to rely on his speed to avoid Roja's flames and directly kill him, but he didn't expect that Roja's speed would be faster than his. Speed isn't my weakness. The mastery of sorrow come in handy, which made Roja's mood quite good. His made a slightly mocking face. The strength of Lucifer, if he doesn't have any other ability, would be as strong as a lieutenant commander, no more. Whiz. The next moment Roja's face once again flashed, but this time he used sorrow to attack. He rushed toward Lucifer while the latter felt like he will be split in two. Not good. Lucifer's heart turned cold, but fortunately his speed is his strong point. Even if Roja was faster he could react to him and dodge while attacking with his daggers. Ding! This collision and the last one are completely different, as this time one of Lucifer's daggers was directly cut in half, which made Lucifer open his mouth wide. Damn! What the hell? He got the strength, the speed, and the skill, and some trick. Where the hell did the Marine got their hand on such monster? Lucifer's face was black as he attacked Roja with the other dagger, but Roja avoided his dagger and countered with flames, energy, and swing strength. Various forces were used by Roja constantly. Lucifer was swallowed under Roja's offense power and couldn't help but thinking about retreat and be embarrassed to escape and find a place to hide. Roja suppressed the 63 million berries bounty holder. Ding! Roja swung his sword again and Lucifer couldn't dodge again, and using the dagger's half to receive the strike, and with a ringing that dagger crumbled as it couldn't bear the beating. At this time Lucifer was extremely embarrassed as some of his clothes and hair was burned even though he avoided the flames. Lucifer turned desperate. What's strange is that he suddenly calmed down and his eyes were full of killing intent while looking at Roja. Do you think you can win this? Oh, still hiding some ability? Roja was standing about 10 meters away from Lucifer holding his sword and standing there, and after taking his sword waved and flames burst out again. Lucifer again avoided the flame, but he didn't pay any attention to his clothes and waved his dagger toward Roja. Ding! The original two daggers could withstand Roja's sword, but one cannot withstand his strike. Even if it didn't get cut in half, Lucifer couldn't help but fly away. However, this time Lucifer exposed an evil smile while looking at Roja, then he said. Goodbye, Marines. Crush. Almost at the same time as he talked under Roja's foot, the ground suddenly made a creepy sound as if it would turn into liquid. Roja will directly be crashed under the earth. Seeing this, Lucifer's eyes flashed with contempt. With slight mockery while seeing Roja disappearing from his place. The ground was restored as Lucifer said, you forced me to this extent, you're really good. But if you want to take my head, you're not qualified. His strength wasn't just speed and two daggers, as he got a devil fruit ability which let him turn any place he want while touching it into a pit that will trap anyone he wants. With a depth of 10 meters no one could breath. Lucifer didn't think that someone could survive that and thought that this will be Roja's grave. However, when he was about to leave and look for the other Marines and kill them one after the other, he heard a sound coming from underground. Is this you, card? What a boring ability. Getsuga. Tenshō. Wouch. A red crescent-like energy suddenly shot up from underground and cut toward the surface, which was 10 meters away. Lucifer felt horrified. This energy busted out from under his feet. Even if he wanted to dodge, he still couldn't. Ridiculous. Blood splashed as Lucifer tried to avoid the attack. Half his leg still got caught. The whole person fell down on the ground. Lucifer seemed like he didn't feel the pain as he looked pale with shock on his face. He simply couldn't believe that Roja, who was 10 meters underground, could use a sword strike to get out from underground and cut a ground with a 10 meters of thickness. Bang! From the big crack a sound came out with an explosion. Roja's figure jumped out from the hole and landed on the side. Do you still have any other ability? His hand still holding the Hano no Suki while he calmly looked down toward Lucifer. Lucifer looked at Roja as fear invaded his heart. He wanted to escape, but he only got one leg. Now he can't escape. His fruit ability is just useful to arrange a trap and he couldn't use it to escape through the ground. Seeing this, Roja shook his head slightly and went next to Lucifer with the tip of his sword pointing at him, who is the one behind this island. Hearing this, Lucifer's body suddenly shook and it seemed as he was afraid. What are you talking about? I don't understand what you're saying. This is my island. Sword flashed and blood scattered. This is the last time I am gonna ask. Roja put his sword gently on Lucifer's neck. That cold and indifferent eyes made Lucifer's doubt vanish and thought that if he really didn't answer, Roja will kill him without any hesitation. At this time Roja was emitting a very terrible atmosphere that seemed to be derived from his soul, which let Lucifer forget about his pain and start talking while trembling. Yes. It's the Don Quixote family. Don Quixote? Hearing this familiar name, Roja's brow slightly frowned and thought about one person as his eyes flashed. Don Quixote family. Originally was big noble family, one of the celestial dragons and one of strongest, their holy land named Mariehua, which was the capital of the world government, but because they were siding with the commoners, the other celestial dragons didn't help them and condemned the entire family as traitors. So they vowed to destroy the world and every one of the Ds. In this period Doflamingo isn't a Shichibukai yet and the Shichibukai system wasn't put forward either. So it's him. Roja clearly knew and wasn't surprised. Doflamingo was originally the world's best underworld broker as he was controlling slaves trade, arms trade and other dark side of business. Him having this kind of island in the South Blue is normal. Seeing that this island had such fragile defense, Roja thought that there should be more than one island. Roja thought that the mission this time didn't seem like a coincidence. Moreover, if it was his delusion, then does this mean that Doflamingo is afraid? No way, he won't be afraid even fighting against one of the Yonko or even against an admiral. Lucifer was in panic as he exposed his master. Cold sweat poured from his forehead and fear was apparent on his eyes. He can't be saved anymore. Even if he could escape from the marine, then his master won't give him that opportunity. Damn marine. Let's die together. Suddenly Lucifer roared and launched his ability with his own location as the center, a radius of 10 meters, suddenly turned into a pit. His ability is only a production of a trap. So if he was to fall down he will also die, but he didn't care as he wanted to kill Roja with him. Almost at the same time as Lucifer used his ability, Roja made a soft step and walked on the air as if there was an invisible ladder under his foot. Moonwalk. Watching Lucifer falling in his own trap alone, Roja's eyes flashed as he said, "The same trick won't work on me twice." Roja didn't know if Lucifer could escape through the ground or not and was too lazy to check that out. So looking at Lucifer sinking in the ground, he directly swung his sword. Getsuga Tenshō. Wouch. The energy opened the ground and formed a deep crack, and at the bottom blood splashed. Roja returned his sword into its scabbard. Lucifer, the holder of 63 million berry bounty of the Black Angels pirates, had some power, but all other aspects are inferior to Roja, which formed a level gap. Even using his devil fruit he couldn't change the outcome of the battle. Although his ability is somewhat strong, but that's only against weak individuals. For example, if this ability was used on Garp and he sank into 100-meter underground, he would smash his way to the surface easily. There is no absolute things in this world, especially when there is the haki and the devil fruits. If Roja learned the Kenbunchaku haki, he could easily avoid that attack of Lucifer. After returning, I have to painstakingly train in haki. Roja murmured, then with a thought the property bar appeared. There was no change in the attribute, but after his fight with Lucifer his energy increased by nearly 20, which was slightly out of Roja's expectations. I killed the captain, but this island is really full of pirates, so there should be some strong ones. Roja's mouth raised slightly into a smile while holding his sword. He rushed toward the nearest street. On the island. The people which Lucifer dispatched will soon encounter the elite camp's people. The war didn't go as the pirates would expect. It was a one-sided massacre. And someone like Smoker had an absolute advantage in such a war. Although some of the pirates are good, but they didn't learn haki, so they could do nothing against Smoker. And some of the newcomers, because of seeing so much blood, they could only use 10% of their strength only. And if they were to face one of the strong pirates, they will die instantly. Even so, not all the veteran were in advantage. For example, Very Good. At this time Very Good was covered in blood while looking at his opponent. In front of him the pirate body was also dripping with blood, but that blood wasn't his. It's Very Good's blood. Is this all you've got? Marine. The pirate looked at Very Good in contempt. Damned bastard. Very Good was furious and his heart went crazy. He got the fruit that will make him turn into a ball to avoid any damage, but unfortunately his opponent had the ability to turn any part of his body into a spike. No matter how much he split into balls, he will be stabbed. It's simple, the counter of his fruit. Also Very Good isn't using any weapon because his weapons are his fists. The pirate looked at Very Good, who was angry to the extreme and didn't rush toward him. He looked at him in contempt as he took the initiative to rush toward Very Good. Damn. Very Good was having a headache dealing with this kind of opponent. He could only embarrassingly escape. Fortunately the speed of the pirate wasn't as good as Very Good. Even if Very Good didn't use Sora, the pirate couldn't catch up to him. Seeing that he couldn't catch up, the pirate said, "You will only escape." Lowly Marine. Hearing this, Very Good was about to spit out blood. The Marine was the one that always chased the pirate, it was never the opposite. Very Good was going crazy and couldn't help but turn at the pirate desperately. But eventually he calmed down. This is a mission, not a 1 versus 1. As long as they can catch or destroy the pirate, it's their victory. In the island, in addition to him, there was 39 more people. He had to casually reach anyone and get help. And almost as Very Good finished his line of thinking, there was a figure at the end of the street holding a sword. And from far he could tell that he's wearing a trainee Marine uniform. Come and help. Very Good didn't say help me, which will ruin his image, but made a command to the other person. The silhouette heard the call of Very Good, did not stop and didn't come. He looked from afar at this scene and his mouth revealed a slight smile. What is he going to do? The figure holding the sword was Roja. Even if Roja used his Getsuga Tenshō 2 times in the same day, which will consume a lot of his physical strength and stamina, no one could stop him. Roja turned to see two figures, one chasing after the other with a close look. The one being chased was Very Good. This time Very Good rushed toward Roja, and when he saw his appearance, he stopped and didn't take another step forward, and his face turned rigid. The atmosphere turned somewhat strange. And the next moment a sneer broke that strange atmosphere. Finally, you won't run anymore. Oh, you met with a companion. The pirate that followed Very Good saw the latter in front of a marine and didn't reveal any panic, but his eyes flashed with a sneer. He was very confident in his ability, which will turn every part of his body into a spike as hard as steel. As he was difficult to cut off. As long as the enemy wasn't using firearms, then one or two won't make a difference. I heard that you have dozen of people. Let me clean the two of you, then I will move for the rest. The pirate ignored Roja and continued to rush toward Very Good as he stretched his hand, which in turn transformed into numerous spikes fiercely poking at the back of Very Good. Bad. Because it's Roja that appeared. Very Good paused his action, and when he come back to it was too late to escape. He could only said in his heart, bad. Although he got the fruit to turn into balls, but if he received this strike he will get seriously injured. But almost as the hand was about to touch his back, Roja's figure suddenly disappeared and appeared in front of the pirate. Wouch! A sword was swung and blood scattered. Those steel-hard spikes under Roja's sword were as easy to cut as dead wood. The pirate was cut together with his hand, and because the speed of the strike was so fast he didn't feel any pain. Roja thought about why did Very Good, who had the ability to turn into balls, would run away, and that pirate even after seeing him still ignored him, as he not only attacked Very Good, he even thought that he could deal with the two of them together. First clean the two of us, what gave you this much confidence? The pirate in front of Roja didn't react until he felt the pain on his arm. He was trembling and his forehead covered with sweat. That's not possible. My arm was actually... The pirate was in panic while looking at Roja with horror and eyes full of fear. Escape. 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 This was the only idea in his mind. He turned around while clutching his arm as he fled. But this time Roja didn't chase after him with sorrow, he only swung his sword, which made hot flames directly catch up to that pirate. He was completely swallowed by the flames. Screams could be heard. After a while Roja directly put back his sword into the scabbard, which made the flames extinguish directly. Then Roja didn't look behind him and directly left for the next street. Behind Roja, Very Good was looking blankly on the ground. The place Roja was on, before using sorrow, was broken. He was thinking neither about Roja's swordplay nor about his flames. What he was thinking about was Roja's speed. This is sorrow. Moreover, this degree of proficiency of sorrow, whether the speed or the accuracy, both reached a very high level. After a month's time he learned sorrow. No. More like mastered it. Very Good was staring blankly while showing an awestruck face. He was the last recruit to come from last year's newcomers, and 3 months ago he reached the standard to practice the Rokushiki, 6 powers of the marine, but until now he could barely use it, let alone be proficient in it. Roja was someone from another world. His concentration was very high, and coupled with the focus state it was easy for him to adjust his body into the perfect position for every move. Also he was stronger than Very Good as he practiced with Garp, a month of hell, and also the last month was the same which led to him mastering sorrow. But Very Good didn't know that which made Roja's feat incredible in his eyes. Roja joined the elite camp for only a month's time and already practiced sorrow to the mastery. Very Good couldn't believe that this is something a human can do. Proficient in sorrow. Can release flames without any limit. Sword energy sharp enough to cut steel. So many factors were in the same person. Very Good couldn't help but know that. Now in the elite camp, who can win against Roja? Probably only Smoker. Another street. Ain was slightly in a disadvantage while fighting with 2 guns against the pirates, as she didn't have her devil fruit yet. Some pirate can avoid bullets, which made Ain be completely suppressed. Also the ammo was about to run out too. If not for them eyeing her pearl-like beautiful look and perfect body, so they could sell her as a slave and didn't want to ruin her looks, then she would have been defeated already. Bang. 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 Ain seized the opportunity to shoot again but still couldn't shoot the pirates. She immediately tried to charge her weapon, but, finally she run out of ammo. This is bad. Ain's expression suddenly changed. Z was monitoring the fight, so being caught was not possible, but if she was helped by Z and not one of the others in the elite camp, she will fail in this mission. The island is big. Ain was fighting for quite a while but no one from the camp passed by. When the pirate noticed that she had no more bullets, one of them made an evil smile and said, "Are you willing to surrender and give up resistance?" After saying this the pirate moved toward her. And at this time from the end of the street suddenly a voice come over. "Do you need help?" Roja was leaning against the wall. He didn't want to interfere in Ain's fight, but he discovered that she didn't have her fruit ability, so he said that. Ain finally saw Roja, but listening to Roja's word her forehead had black lines. "Need help? Do you even need to ask that?" The pirates also found Roja, which made their face change. They hurried their steps, ready to capture Ain then deal with Roja. But this time Roja stood straight while pulling his sword gently. Since she doesn't have a devil fruit, then she wouldn't be able to beat them. So he will, for the role of the hero who saved the princess. Whiz. At this moment Roja turned into a blur and suddenly appeared next to Ain, and with a swing, the pirate before him used his sword to defend. Ding. A crisp sound was heard after the collision. That pirate was also a swordsman. He was holding a strange-looking sword which came out without any harm after the collision. However, without waiting for the pirate to determine his level, Roja's sword directly projected flames. Hell. The pirate was stupefied and couldn't react in time, and by the time he wanted to dodge it was too late. The flames swallowed him. All this had happened in a blink of an eye. When the others reacted, that man turned into a fireman and kept screaming and rolling on the ground. One strike. This is sorrow. Surprised, I'm beautiful face was in awe. She looked at him with a questioning gaze. Roja smiled and said, your guess is right. But there won't be a prize. This guy. Ain looked at Roja and thought back about the time when they were on the deck. Look at the world from above like an admiral. Ain didn't think that Roja could do it. But it's clear that he mastered Soro, plus he got that horrifying flames of his, so he could probably look at the entire camp from above now. What was unbelievable was that Roja is just a young man who just joined the elite camp for just a month. After taking a deep breath and expression returned to normal looking at the struggling fire becoming weak, that guy was burned to death. Roja directly returned his sword into the scabbard and turned around while saying, the rest is up to you. Seeing this, I wanted to stop him and say thank you, but Roja had already left. And more importantly, she didn't have any more bullets and was planning to tag along with Roja, but he left already, and if she took the initiative to catch up and go together she will feel a little strange. This guy is strange. He is definitively strange. Ain remembered her chat with Hina about the assessment and couldn't help but recognize what Hina said while muttering.
Hello everyone! As we wrap up this video, I want to share a quick note. I have a Patreon account. If you'd like to support me and enjoy on-demand audiobooks, you can become a Patreon member. Alternatively, you can check out my Google Drive link, which has 500+ novel audiobooks available through my Ko-fi or Patreon shop. I appreciate your support.